Hey everyone. Welcome back for the fourth part of Kurama the Conqueror. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the rest of the story is already out over there for you guys, along with about 50 other different stories you can enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Raikage's entourage, 6 p.m., Konoha Gates. I pulled up with his group to see the massive gates of Konoha. It was a cool sight, but he preferred his village that was proudly displayed on a mountain. Of course, they were hidden by clouds on most days, but he still always took pride in standing tall. He looked over Daru, Yugito, Samui, Karu, and Omi. Daru's Jinan team was his best, and Samui had agreed to play her part in all of this. She was a beautiful young woman that was 15. Her short-cut blonde hair, narrow blue eyes, massive rack and lithe form made her a kunoichi that was difficult not to look at. Karu was just a fiery bundle of kick-ass and kenjutsu. Her amber eyes were unique, and he tousled red hair was nothing special. Omoi was a younger version of Daru, except instead of laziness his quirk was paranoia. Despite that, he was a good tactician and a talent worth nurturing. I looked back to the gates and saw that a greeting party was waiting for him. He idly noticed that the Hyuga clan head wasn't there, which made I smirk internally in victory. He had invested in that young Hyuga girl for 10 long years, and he wasn't going to ruin that now. He saw his bolt-on boo come out of the shadows and form up behind their Raikage. "Welcome to Konoha, I don't know. It is good to see you again," Hiruzen said in a friendly, grandfatherly manner. I grunted because he hated playing the fake, political game. "Let us get this over with. I need to return to my village, and I came all this way to meet this Kurama Uzumaki." Everyone in the Konoha greeting party looked side-eyed at Kurama, who then caught the Raikage's attention. "Well then, Raikage Dono, you have accomplished your task. It is a pleasure to meet you." Kurama offered a small bow with his greeting. He let I take his form in and made sure to project just enough aura to let I know that he wasn't a pushover. I immediately did this, and he knew that Kurama was hiding the bulk of his potential. Despite that, I was surprised when Kurama held a hand out in greeting. That was an audacious statement. A handshake by way of greeting implied that the two parties were of a similar rank and status. The brat may be strong, but he wasn't on the same level as I. I grunted and turned his head away at the insult to his status. "Looks like your elders have yet to teach you manners, boy." I snipped snidely. Kurama retracted his hand and growled, "Well, I simply didn't take you for a man that stood on pomp and ceremony. It looks like I was wrong." Hiruzen cleared his throat. "That is enough, Kurama-kun. Raikage-sama, we have prepared a dinner and a meeting room in the Hokage Tower. Shall we head there?" Another grunt from I was the answer, and the group made their way through Konoha to the Hokage Tower. Unlike the normally warm environment, the atmosphere chilled when people saw the Kumo contingent. Nobody in Konoha had forgotten what Kumo did 10 years ago. Nobody wanted the deceitful monkeys in their village. After the tense walk, I had his bolt post up outside the meeting room. Team Daru, Yugito and himself went into the meeting room with Kurama, Hiruzen and the elders. The walk through Konoha didn't help the talks, and things were pretty tense as everyone sat down. An assortment of meats and sushi were laid out on the table, and there were jugs of water and sake prepared for the banquet. The opposing parties sat down on the opposite sides of the table, and then the talks began. "So, when are you going to tell me who the brat truly is?" I asked, and Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. I chuckled and spoke again. "Let me take a guess then. This is Kurama Uzumaki Namikaze. Kushina and Minato's brat, am I right?" I knew he was right based on the small facial movements of the party. Hiruzen chuckled good-naturedly. "We thought we did a good job keeping that under wraps." "What gave it away?" "The name and the hair. Then, the brat goes and disappears for 6 years after being beaten for most of his life. Which tells me that he is also the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Is that why your eyes are like that, boy?" I said with a victorious smirk on his face. Kurama suppressed his anger, and Naruto soothed Kushina within the mindscape. The 3-in-1 really didn't like this man. "You have some good spies, Raikage Dono." My upbringing was slightly less than pleasant. Exposure to a potent amount of the Kyubi's chakra changed my eyes. "Now, old man, should you wish to continue belittling me, then I will show you what Kurama Uzumaki Senju can do." "Senju?" I said incredulously. "Kurama," Hiruzen said stiffly in a warning tone. Kurama shrugged. He has already figured it out. "My pops was Minato Senju, the Kiroi Senko. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the Red Death. Now you know my lineage, will you introduce me to your team?" Danzo stepped forward. Part of our agreement will be keeping this information to yourself until the exhibition match. His heritage has been kept secret and we wanted to make the most of the reveal. I looked at Danzo and nodded. To think that you are back in good health. The adversaries of the darkness of shinobi should be scared. Very well, I agree to that. I was really happy with the information gained already. He really wanted this young man now. It made his salivate at the thought of the Uzumaki and Senju bloodlines in Kumo. Our chosen champion is Yugito Ni, elite Jonin of Kumaga Corps. I won't hide that she is the Nibi Jinchuriki since you are the Kyubi Jinchuriki. Kurama shrugged. I sensed Nibi from over a mile out. He turned to Yugito and offered a smile. It is good to meet another like me. I hope we can have a good fight. Yugito looked impassively at Kurama and nodded, likewise. Kurama felt that something was off, and he was going to figure out what it was. It was likely some sort of control that was suppressing her personality. A loyalty seal would be the most likely thing, but Kurama couldn't figure out why Matatabi would allow that. Her potent chakra could break any such seal. This is Samui, our top Shinan and most promising of the new generation. These are her teammates Amoi and Kaoru. You should already know Daru, my right-hand man. I concluded the introductions. It is a pleasure to meet so many promising shinobi. I am looking forward to seeing your prowess in the upcoming exams, Hiruzen said while keeping the visage of the kindly grandfather on. Likewise. I have heard that the young generation has been trained by Kurama here, I said with a smirk at having the upper hand on the information battlefield. Hiruzen chuckled good-naturedly to show that the information didn't faze him. Indeed, the rookies have gone through an experimental training regime and the results have been exceptional. I look forward to seeing how they stack up to your experienced Shinan. I dismissed Hiruzen and kept his eyes on Kurama. Why did they dangle you out like fresh bait? Why are they so confident you will win this little match? Kurama met Ai's gaze and he saw the power that resided in the man. His body was a temple of human strength and resilience, and his chakra density was exceptional. He put a small smile on his face. I was simply recognized for my talents. In truth, the honor should go to Danzo-sama. I simply gave the rookies a watered-down version of the training I received. This made I and everyone else turn to Danzo. I addressed the elder man. Must have been good fortune to get a young talent like this to yourself. Besting a swordsman of the mist at 14 is an accomplishment. Danzo gave nothing away but gave the smallest of bows in gratitude for the compliment. It was good fortune indeed. I am proud of my apprentice. I smirked because now was the time to make his move, and I am proud of Yugito. We can all appreciate a good match, but I didn't come here to play games. What do you say we put some stakes on the match? Hiruzen was the only one who could reply in such a situation. Isn't the betting for the daimyo and other nobles? I let out a boisterous laugh at that. Nah, I have something that will be intriguing for you. Hiruzen decided to play along. I will hear you out. I smirked confidently. I propose a wager. If Yugito wins, then Kurama will marry Samui. I know you will not give him up, but we will have rights to the first two offspring. No, Kurama answered with a growl. You can play with me, and I will bet my life, but the lives of my children are not up for bartering. I decided to prod him. Are you not confident in your victory? Kurama knew the game at play. He knew that he would need to fake this. I agreed to this because it could mend relationships between Kumo and Konoha. I am not against a marriage proposal, but my children will never be outside of my care. This actually managed to make Samui blush. It was a powerful character statement from a strong man. Based on what she saw, Kurama was quite the specimen. She had agreed to play her part for Kumo and prepared herself mentally. Despite that reality, she couldn't fight the thought that she could do far worse than him. Am I unappealing to you? Samui spoke for the first time in the meeting. Kurama looked at her and the intensity in his eyes eased. It is not that. You are beautiful and it appears that you are talented. I simply value family too much to let it be wagered. Hiruzen had watched the exchange, and he was happy that Kurama had shot it down. That left him wondering where to go from here. I agree with Kurama-kun. The progeny cannot be wagered. I grunted and started to recalculate. He had predicted a refusal, but he didn't think it would be so blunt. Well then, we are at an impasse. I want my shot at this man, and I thought my offer was generous. We agreed to your little debut show, so why not make it worth something? Kurama met Ai's gaze once more and he allowed the fiery passion of Naruto and Kushina to flicker in his eyes. He was confident that he could beat Yugito, but he would never bet his kits. If you want me, then I agree to the marriage, and if Yugito wins then I will register with dual citizenship. I will take 5 missions on behalf of Kumo a year, Kurama said with confidence. I looked to Hiruzen, who had coughed up some of his sake. Do you agree to that? Hiruzen looked to Kurama with a furious look on his face. What could I request that is of equal value? He is our most promising shinobi. He was thinking of simply requesting the return of Hanabi, but that would be a political snafu of epic proportions. He was always inclined towards moving the shinobi world to peace. I shrugged. I am offering up a talented kunoichi. Is that not of equal value? Hiruzen eyed Samui and returned his gaze to I mean no disrespect to Samui, but Kurama-kun is exceptional. His bloodlines alone make him more valuable than any single kunoichi. Bloodlines? I asked while drooling at the thought. Hiruzen chuckled at gaining the upper hand once more. I cannot reveal his bloodlines at this time. You will see them in the match. I gave a pouty grunt at that. You tease. I maintain that is a good bet. Samui has the storm release bloodline. Danzo stepped in here. If marriage is part of the agreement, I am amenable as Kurama's guardian. That being said, he will be enrolled in the CRA, and he is already in relationships. Do you still wish to move forward? I looked to Samui, who gave him a slight nod. I see no issue with that. So, to clarify, we are agreed to marry, and the bet is as follows. Should Yugito lose, then Samui will reside in Konoha. Should Yugito win, then Kurama will become a dual citizen and take 5 missions a year on behalf of Kumaga Corps? Kurama interjected, if the marriage is to move forward, then I request permission to talk to my mates. I do not wish to disrespect them, and I wish for them to meet Samui. It will ultimately be their decision. Hiruzen and Danzo sighed simultaneously. Luckily, Hiruzen was a lifelong politician and adapted quickly. Let us get it on paper and we will finalize it upon your return for the exam finals. Should the ladies agree to it, of course. Is that agreeable? I shrugged. That is fine. Team Daru will stay for the duration of the exams. Will you be available to spend time with Samui-chan? It was obvious to everyone that I was dangling Samui as a prize to Kurama. Kurama nodded. I am proctoring part of the exam, but I will make time. During the intermission, I will even allow Team Daru to use my private training grounds. Danzo coughed at the improvisation. Training fields have been prepared for the Kumo team. Kurama gave Danzo a look that said he had things under control. I simply wished to avoid friction. The Hyuga clan is still quite agitated when it comes to anything Kumo related. Hiruzen, Danzo and Kurama had a private conversation with their eyes. It was clear that they didn't appreciate this, but now that it was offered, they were painted into a corner. I capitalized on the offer quickly. That is generous of you. We accept. The dinner proceeded quickly after that. I didn't want to give them a chance to back out. He also wanted to get Yugito back to Kumo and beat her into the ground again. He needed this win. If he could gain control over the Kyubi Jinchuriki, even if it were only partial, then it would greatly increase his combat power. Given enough time and opportunity, he could have the boy under his control. Even if it failed, he would still recover Samui, and the children given enough time. As the meeting came to a close, Kurama stepped forward and extended his hand to I once more. This time, I took his hand and returned the handshake. It was clear to I that this young man would stand on equal footing with him soon enough. He was sure to grow into a true monster. A true monster that he would have on his side, one way or another. I released the handshake and began the formalities with the elders. Throughout the whole meeting, Kurama had been probing Yugito lightly with his chakra. He had felt Matatabi twitch in response and he was excited to feel that. He had encased Yugito's body in a light amount of Shinjutsu chakra and determined that his was a control seal. It would be a bitch to get to as well. A control seal in between the shoulder blades. He would have to figure a way around that. Before he did that, he needed to talk with Matatabi and figure out what was going on. Naruto didn't know how to enter the joint mindscape of the Bijou yet, but he could do it if he had direct physical contact. He needed that mindscape because time passed so much slower there and he had been coaching him internally. After the kit said he was ready, Kurama made his play. After shaking the Reikage's hand, Kurama turned to Yugito with a friendly smile and extended his hand. The kunoichi hesitated briefly, but she extended her own hand. As the two hands touched, Yugito closed her eyes as a brilliant flash of white light encompassed her vision. When she opened her eyes, she saw a massive room that was glowing golden and white all over. As she was taking in her surroundings, she was a pair of red eyes and heard Kurama whisper, "Sleep." Matatabi was surprised to be forcibly pulled to the mindscape and her hackles immediately rose when she saw that the boy had subjugated Yugito. She saw her consciousness crumple to the floor. She immediately moved to protect her. Everything froze when the human boy used her name. "Matatabi, Tabi-chan, please wait," Kurama said with sincerity saturating her tone. Matatabi froze in place. She hadn't been called Tabi-chan in over a century. She looked around frantically to look for Kurama when she saw the blonde kitsune. She immediately knew that something was wrong and looked down to the boy. She had seen him through Yugito's eyes and she had instantly identified the crimson eyes. She kept looking back and forth between Kurama and Naruto while waiting for an explanation. Phew, Rama. I thought she was going to claw your head off, Naruto said in a childish voice. Matatabi heard the kitsune speak, but she didn't know what it meant. Kurama, what happened to you? She was looking at Naruto because she believed that was still Kurama. Kurama hopped up onto Naruto's head and offered a foxy smile to Matatabi. Long time no see, Tabi-chan. Sorry I had to do that to your vessel. Kurama? She said in disbelief. The blonde boy nodded. Yup, some crazy things happened. We don't have that much time to talk about it now if we don't want to make Yugito's friends suspicious. Matatabi shook out her disbelief. You are a human now? What happened? Kurama sighed, offered a reflective smile. I knew you wouldn't be able to move past that. Long story short, the kid's life was so bad that I put him out of his misery when he was 8. After that, the seal did something crazy and swapped out souls. He is the QB now and I am human. Oh, wow, Matatabi said while looking at the beautiful blonde fur of the kitsune. Naruto yipped while laughing. Ha ha, I know it is crazy, right? Nice to meet you, Tabi-chan. I am Naruto. I feel like I already know you after reviewing Papa Rama's memories. Matatabi smiled at the kitsune and shrank into her human form. She was much more practiced with her chakra, and she could easily take a human form. It reflected Yugito, except her hair was a dark blue and her eyes were the same fiery, intense blue. She was stunningly beautiful, and Naruto's breath hitched. Even Kurama couldn't help his fond reminiscence. Nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. I am sure we will have plenty of time to get to know each other. Kurama interjected here. Tabi, what is going on with your vessel? Why are you allowing her to be subjugated by a loyalty seal? Tabi's good mood faded, her eyes turned fiery, and she growled lowly, because that Raikage is a despicable man. First, that seal is resistant to my chakra. Second, he threatened me with Yugito's life. Third, he has her mother as a sort of incentive. Kurama growled, that is worse than I thought. It doesn't affect you, does it? Tabi scoffed, no, he cannot control me. Why do you ask? Kurama's growl turned to a foxy smirk, because I'm going to free you and the rest of our brethren, sister. Tabi looked wide-eyed at Kurama's statement. What? How? Why? All in good time. When the time comes, I will break that seal during our exhibition match. I do not know how Yugito will react, but you will need to guide her. When I come for you, I will make sure everything is taken care of. Kurama answered. Tabi shot a pouty look at Kurama. No fair. Trust me, Tabi. Always. Good, Kurama said with a pleased grin. Now, before you go, do you know where the Hyuga girl is being kept? Tabi's visage turned defensive. Why? Because I am not going to allow a young girl to be raped and made into a breeding factory. You have enough decency to recognize that is evil. Kurama answered passionately. Tabi sighed. She is being kept in a highly secured facility. It is deep in Mountain 4, which is the mountain to the west of Kumagakure. Kurama beamed a smile at Tabi and embraced her in a hug. Thank you, Tabi-chan. We will come for you. You have my word. Tabi smiled over Kurama's shoulder and looked at the stunningly azure eyes of Naruto. It was nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. You too, Tabi-chan. Naruto answered excitedly before Tabi closed the connection. Yugito stumbled slightly with her hand still extended and she looked up completely confused. She looked into the strong, crimson eyes of Kurama and blushed slightly. Sorry about that, I don't know what came over me. It is quite all right, Kurama answered in a friendly manner. It was a pleasure to meet you and I look forward to our fight. Make sure to give it your all. The next day, front gates of Konoha, I was at the front gates with his Bolt escort team and Yugito. Last night had gone according to his expectations. He was a proud man, but he knew that the stupid treaty would be necessary. He felt the power emanating from Kurama, and he was more than a little intrigued about the bloodlines the kid possessed. Having a sure way to get into that family was his best bet for the enhancing the glory of Kumo. I started chuckling and drooling again at the thoughts of Kurama and his forces. He could set up a mission and find a way to drug Kurama. Then, he could turn him into a breeding stud without him even knowing about it. Or, he could have Samui collect and store some sperm samples. He would need to have his research team determine a way to preserve the sperm for long periods of time. His chuckling escalated as the devious schemes of strengthening Kumo filled his mind. As he was leaving, I noticed some recognizable figures from Iwa approaching the gates. He slowed down to exchange a few words. What are the son and granddaughter of the old fence-sitter doing here? Kyuchi had noticed I and knew that the Chunin exams were most likely the reason. He looked blankly at the Raikage who was smiling, which was an extremely creepy sight. This and that. Business, Yoo-hoo, how it is, Rakage Dono, I chuckled and waved over his shoulder, have fun with your business. After the Rakage was a safe distance away, Kurotsuchi turned to Kyuchi, what the hell was that about? Kyuchi frowned and looked back toward the Rakage, I don't know, but I don't think we will like the answer. The two Iwa representatives went into Konoha for the diplomatic prisoner retrieval. Normally, they would never be able to enter the gates, but Hiruzen made an exception because he wished for peace. Everyone knew that Hiruzen was a fool that wished for peace. He had done so after the 2 ND and 3 Road Shinobi Wars, and that was why Hai no Kuni and Konoha gained nothing from them. That was why Onoki was comfortable sending his family into the heart of Konoha. Morning of Chunin exams, Uzumaki compound, Kurama woke up with a smile on his face and his hands traced lightly down Hana's back. They had finally taken that next step in the relationship. Well, Hana said finally, while Kurama just said it was the right time. It was still strange for the former kitsune to think about how a mother insisted that her man go on a date with her daughter. The animalistic part of Kurama knew that this was in line with the natural order, while the newly emerged human part struggled to wrap its head around it. Despite all of that, Kurama found himself with a contented grin on his face as the early morning light lapped upon the crinkled sheets. Kurama closed his eyes and reflected on the date. Hana was beautiful in her blue dress, and she had gone out of her way to doll herself up. Her hair fell in beautiful curls and her dress hugged her shapely figure just right. She had surprised Kurama with her playful and flirtatious attitude during the date, and then again when she became ferocious upon returning home. Kurama could appreciate a direct woman, and he knew that Hana had gone out of her comfort zone to come at him. That made his smile widen. His smile turned foxy when he remembered how he turned the tables on her. In one move, he had taken the initiative and turned Hana into a submissive bitch. That instant conversion of fire to a self-conscious fragility that danced in her eyes was beautiful. The feel of her supple flesh and her tantalizing flavor invigorated Kurama. Then it became a test of endurance and lust, which the Inuzuka woman proved capable of passing. Kurama opened his eyes, leaned down and placed a kiss on Hana's forehead. He inspected the newly emerged mark on her right clavicle, and he knew that she was his for the rest of his life. That thought invigorated him, and Kurama slid out of bed to hop in the shower. He had a role to play today, and he wanted to see how the Jinan he spent the past 6 months training performed in the Chunin exams. Kurama was pleased when Hana joined him in the shower, and he was more than happy to bend her over. He laughed when Hana's shower turned into an impromptu bath because she became weak at the knees. He laid her gently in the tub and trusted her to close up the house on her way out. He adorned the short-sleeve crimson shirt, the custom black flak vest that he made, the white Onbu-style pants, the subdued gold utility belt and the crimson shinobi sandals. He secured his katana and wakizashi on his left hip and looked at himself in the mirror. The Yozushio insignia on his left shoulder and Konoha insignia on his right shined in the light. This was his public attire, and Kurama enjoyed the sincere compliments he got from Kushina and Naruto. With a final smirk in the mirror, Kurama grabbed some breakfast and headed out to join the other Jonin sensei at the front gate of the academy. They had agreed to meet and to see their Jinan off before the exam. Before Kurama's body flickered to the academy, he sensed Mai outside the gate. He walked out and embraced her in a hug. She walked with him towards the academy but pulled him into an alley before they got there. Kurama had already sensed Danzo, so he wasn't surprised by the act. Kurama greeted his partner with a wave and Danzo got right down to business. Kurama, today it all begins. Kurama nodded and waited for Danzo to get to the point. You will be part of the security detail in Phase 2. I do not need to mention how important it is to make sure others don't intervene. Kurama waved him off. Let O play with the kid and make sure that the other members of the detail don't find her. Got it, got it. Danzo nodded. Despite my insistence, O still entered her team, and her glasses will play as well. Glasses? Why is he still playing? Kurama asked as he wondered what purpose Kabuto would play in the exam. Danzo sighed. She said it was an extra security measure. Kurama growled, he better not draw attention to himself. What about our plans for Kumo? Danzo looked around before locking eyes with Kurama in an admonishing fashion. Let's not speak of this right now. You are booked up for this month. Especially since you invited them to use your training ground, Kurama sighed. Look, it was the best move to lower their guard. I didn't expect Tabi to know where our little lady was. Danzo put a comforting hand on Kurama's shoulder. Just focus on your role for now. I have faith in you. Be sure to keep an eye on the Tsunejin Churiki and make sure he keeps his cool. Kurama shook his head. If Shukaku senses me around, then he will likely act up even more. I am not scared of my little brother, but he would make quite the scene. Just get it done, Q. We cannot afford a deviation in the plans. Hi. I'll get it done, Kurama said as he turned around and waved over his shoulder. He loved messing with Danzo, and he knew how much the old man hated it when Kurama was the one to dismiss himself. Danzo smirked before calling out, "Oh, great job last night. It was quite the show from what I heard." He wasn't going to let Kurama walk away from him without taking a parting shot. Kurama tripped and stumbled mid-stride before muttering, "Damned pervy old bastard." Front gates of the academy, 11:30 am, yo, Kurama greeted Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy. "Kakashi still not here?" The three shook their heads and chuckled at the running joke. It was Asuma that retorted, "He was probably the whole reason you were appointed as a supplementary sensei." Guy nodded animatedly, "That is correct." Kakashi's unyouthful tardiness would have hindered his team, Guy exclaimed while two teams of Ame nins looked at him in disbelief before scurrying to enter the academy. Kurenai sighed, "Ease up on the flames of youth, Guy. There are many foreign teams present." Kurama's eyes locked onto the sand team composed of the Kazekage's children as the conversation continued. He could tell that they were strong, and they were definitely overconfident. He could see that the two older siblings were giving their little brother plenty of space. His crimson eyes locked onto Gaara's emerald orbs, and he saw the insanity stirring just below the surface. He shook his head at what his crazy little brother was doing to his human container. "So, Kurama, who do you think will make it through?" Kurenai asked after she noticed him spacing out. Kurama snapped himself back to the conversation, "I have faith in each of the rookies. I think they will each make it to the third phase of the exams." "So youthful," Guy exclaimed loudly with tears starting to form at the corner of his eyes. "To have such faith in our teams. Guy-sensei." An animated voice returned Guy's passionate cry before a miniature form of Guy crashed into him. "I still can't believe Guy cloned himself." Asuma muttered and conveyed what everyone was thinking. He looked up to see the rookies walking towards the academy together. "You guys ready?" "Sure thing, sensei." Ino chirped. Shikamaru glanced at Kurama and suppressed his natural tic to call things troublesome. "Yes, it will be a good test of our skills, sensei. What about you guys?" Kurama shot to Team 8, who was much quieter than the other teams. "I trust in our training and preparation." Shino answered for the team. Yakumo looked between Shino and Kurama and spoke uncertainly, "What he said, sensei." Kurenai walked up to her team with a proud smile on her face, "I know you will do great. Just do the best you can, and the rest will take care of itself." Kurama looked to Sasuke, who had a serious look on his face. "And what about you three?" Kiba puffed out his chest, "This exam is for chumps. The Inuzuka will have a new Chunin before the exams are over." Sakura dope slapped Kiba and adorned an apologetic look, "We will do what we can, sensei." "I believe our team is ready," Kurama chuckled, "Go easy on him, Sakura. I know you will do great." Kurama paused and looked meaningfully at Sasuke, "Anything to say?" Sasuke met Kurama's gaze, "I am coming for you, Kurama-sensei. Chunin or no, I will best you." Kurama laughed heartily and slapped Sasuke on the shoulder, "It is good to have dreams. Go show me what you are made of. And try not to get raped by the crazy snake lady." Naruto chirped through the mental link, which made Kushina and Kurama struggle to remain composed. Kushina struggled with the thoughts of Orochi raping Sasuke. She knew that sacrifices needed to be made, but it was definitely not the best solution in her minds. That being said, they needed Orochi's cooperation, and the plan was going to start getting very real soon. She would apologize to Miko-chan in the pure world, and she would even hold Kurama down so that she could extract her vengeance. That was the only thing that made Kushina accept the circumstances. "Don't joke about such things, Rudo-kun. I still don't like this," Kushina said sternly. "I don't like it either, Kushina. I will make sure he doesn't remember anything," Kurama replied in a calming manner. "Humph, Miko-chan will have your balls for this." Kushina shot back, "Let's just get it over with. I wonder if Orochi will just get it over with or draw it out." Naruto teased. He had grown up a lot through watching Kurama's memories and interactions. It created complicated feelings for Kushina, who was sad to see her Sochi lose his innocence so quickly. Externally, Kurama's shoulders were shaking from suppressed laughter, but that stopped when he saw the Kumo team entering the academy premises. He offered a soft smile to Samui, who blushed and nodded her head by way of greeting. He got a teasing wave from Kaoru and a tip of the sucker from Amoe. He returned their greetings before joining the Jonin sensei on their way to the viewing room. "That guy is so hot, Samui-chan," Kaoru whispered to Samui. "I just hope things don't go wrong. If Yugito sensei loses, and Kurama turns out to be a bad." "Ow," Amoe exclaimed as Kaoru was retracting her fist. "Stop it, you guys," Samui hissed. "I don't need you to make matters worse." Kaoru looped an arm over Samui's shoulder. "Aw, relax Samui-chan. You have a super hot hubby to be while I haven't even been on a date yet, Samui sighed. Let's just focus on the exams. The Raikage will submit us to the Iron Claw if we do not make it to the finals. That wouldn't be cool. Amoe shivered. It took B-sensei 10 minutes to get up from the last Iron Claw the Raikage gave him. I don't think we would survive. Kairo punched Amoe in the shoulder. These Jinan have nothing on us. Let's just get this over with. Jonin Sensei spectating room, 12:01 am. Daru was a lazy man at heart, but he had a mission of his own. He needed to get into Kurama's good graces and try to uncover more information about him. This was the first time he had seen him since the greeting dinner, so he slinked over to join the Konoha Jonin Sensei. He was easily able to feel how uneasy the Konoha shinobi were around anything to do with Kumo. It made him wonder why the Hokage agreed to the marriage proposal. Despite that, he pushed through and sat next to Kurama with a good view of the monitors. Hey, Kurama-san, how are you doing? Daru said in his usually lazy manner. He noticed how the other Jonin were surprised by this. Kurama glanced at Daru. Hey, Daru-san, I am just looking forward to seeing the results of my training. How are you? Daru looked around and shrugged. Kumo Jonin and Konoha. It's bothersome. This caused a couple of the Jonin to stiffen, but it also put the elephant in the room on full display. Kurama shrugged it off. Can you blame them? I am willing to move past it, but that isn't the common sentiment. Kurama was playing his part and trying to gain trust just as Daru was. His negative emotions sensing made him a terrifyingly capable information gatherer. Daru sighed. I understand how it looks. Kumo is just as upset about the failure in negotiations. Kurenai glared at Daru. Was that the propaganda they spewed? You're diplomat. Kurenai, Kurama cut her off forcefully with a serious look in his eye. Kurenai humped and Asuma took over. Looks like our kids are doing well. This brought everyone's attention to the monitors. If we can tell how they cheated from the monitors alone, why is Ibiki-san not calling them out on it? Daru asked as he saw mirrors being controlled on the ceiling and active dujutsu. Kakashi peeked over his orange book. We are Jonin and they are Jinan. If the methods they use would work in the field, then he will allow it to pass. Daru shrugged. I guess so. There goes another one. He commented as a Taki team was kicked out of the room. Just looking at another's test is pretty embarrassing. It is the environment Ibiki has set. For them to survive the mental games is even more important than how they gather information, Kurama said while watching the Kumo team use minute body gestures to convey the answers. Your kids are disciplined. That is an interesting way to communicate information, Daru sighed. Of course you could see that. It is important to not just rely on hand signals. So, why were you the one to train Jinan that are your age? Kurama glanced at Daru once again before turning back to the screen. Because I was the most familiar with the training regimen. He decided to answer simply. That is why each team has an experienced Jonin sensei with them. After a couple minutes passed and most of the Jinan were done, Daru pressed again. What do you think of Samui-chan? Kurama had stopped watching the monitors and gave his attention to Daru. She looks like a great kunoichi. Can't say much past that. Why do you care about that? Kurenai asked protectively. Daru looked at Kurama, who shook his head in the negative. There are ongoing negotiations between Kumo and Konoha. We may be mending bridges, but nothing is official yet. Asuma whistled lowly. And you're trying to do it through the kids? That's rather straightforward, Kurama sighed. We can't talk about it, guys. Just let it go. Kakashi started giggling perversely, Kurama-chan securing peace. Oh, I hope Jiraiya-sama puts that in his next book. Kurama growled, get yourself together. Nothing is official yet. Is that why the Raikage was here? Asuma asked cautiously with the unasked question of did the Hyuga approve of this? Kurama locked eyes with Asuma. Just wait and you will find out with the rest of Konoha. Do you think you are ready to fight against Yugito? She is touted as the third strongest in Kumo, you know. Daru pressed now getting to the heart of the matter. Kakashi spoke before Kurama could stop him. He will be fine. If he could catch me off guard. Daru's eyes widened. He bested you? Kakashi shrugged. He was a complete unknown back then. He put on a show and got the best of me. Daru's head snapped to Kurama. That is impressive. Kakashi is a world-renowned Jonin. Kurama shrugged and changed the subject. This is the real test. Ibiki is putting the pressure on now. A bit thinly veiled. Asuma commented. That is easy to say from here. Ibiki has a unique presence about him, Kurenai said with concern lacing her tone. Our kids will be fine, Kakashi blew it off. So, Daru-san, you admit that Yugito is stronger than you? You are quite renowned yourself. Daru shrugged. It is too bothersome to train that much. I have enough on my plate already. Well, time for me to go. I need to join the security detail for the second exam. See you all around. Good talking to you, Daru-san, Kurama said as he rose to exit the room. Chunin exams, Stage 2, Forest of Death, 3 p.m., Kurama appeared in a swirl of leaves next to the stage that Anko had set up. She wasn't here yet, but there were a number of Chunin that we assigned to help out. It didn't take Anko long to show up and she naturally locked onto Kurama. This made Kurama groan internally, and it didn't help that his kit was firing off innuendos left and right. "Hey Rama-kun, did you miss me?" Anko asked as she sauntered over to Kurama. "Nope," Kurama answered dismissively. "Where do you need me?" Anko shot a pouty and playful look at Kurama. It was clear that she hadn't taken him out of her sights. "That's no fun. I heard you took Hana-chan out on a date, what's one more?" Kurama sighed. "Should you really be trying to seduce your best friend's boyfriend?" Anko shrugged. She wouldn't care. "Let's just focus on completing our mission, Anko-san. Do you need me to do anything before they go into the forest to play?" Kurama blew off her line of attack once more. Anko pulled a pile of forms out of her cleavage and handed it to Kurama with a smirk on her lips. "After my little speech, you can hand these out." Kurama took the pile of papers without thinking twice. "Sure thing." Kurama watched the Genin arriving in their teams, and he knew that things would get interesting in the forest. Normally, fewer than 20 teams would make it into the Forest of Death, but there were 32 teams that qualified this year. He was naturally proud to see the rookies were all present. Even Team 6 made it through, and they were composed entirely of civilians. He smiled at Amy, who had just thrown a wink his way, but that interaction was cut off when Anko began her speech. "Alright, kiddos, the second stage of the Chunin exams will be a trip into my playground." Anko paused here as a loud roar came from the forest. "Hee, looks like my little pets are excited to say hello. The second stage will be a scroll battle that will last for the next 5 days." Anko held up 2 scrolls labeled Heaven and Earth. "You will each be given one of these scrolls and will need to collect the one you don't have. Once you have both scrolls, you can report into the central tower to pass this phase, or you can stay in the forest and play. Regardless, if you don't report into the tower by noon on the 5th day, then you fail. If you lose a member of your team, you fail. If you don't have any scrolls, you fail. If you open a scroll in the forest, you fail. If you die, you fail." Anko ended ominously. Shikamaru raised his hand and Anko nodded to him. "Is this a combat open exam? Is killing allowed?" Anko smirked evilly at Shikamaru. "The only rules are the ones I just gave you. That reminds me though, your whole team will need to sign some waivers. You will exchange those waivers for your team's scroll and gate assignment. So, we can kill as many teams as we want?" Gaara asked in a gravelly tone with a maniacal look in his face. Anko shrugged as her proctors were handing out the waivers. "Sure, but if you don't report into the tower then you fail." Anko shivered at the lunacy she saw dwelling just under the surface of Gaara. Kurama handed a waiver to Akusa Kunoichi, and he knew it was Orochi. She played with his hand a little bit and licked her lips. "Thank you, Proctor-kun," Kurama sighed and whispered. "Stay on track and don't lose your bearings, Kunoichi-san." Orochi giggled. Coo, so silly. "I will behave." Kurama noticed Anko's gaze on him and moved on. He definitely didn't want to draw Anko's attention to that particular Kunoichi. He just hoped Orochi wouldn't go out of her way to antagonize Anko. He passed out his stack of waivers and then went to get a peek at which gate Team 7 would be assigned. Gate 14 was a good gate, and he would be able to track them from there easy enough. "Alright, kiddos," Anko said boisterously after everyone got their scroll and gate assignment. "Have fun playing around in my backyard and try not to die. You have 20 minutes to get to your assigned gate. Go." As the Genin scattered, Anko called in the security detail. She looked around at the group composed of Tokubutsu Jonin and Chunin. "Alright, we are not allowed to intervene in the exams. You each have your assigned sectors. If those kids die, make sure their bodies are recovered if possible." "Is that crazy sand kid in my sector?" a Chunin asked with fear lacing his voice. "Gate 28, Anko answered. "I would expect a trail of corpses from that one." "Fuck." a Tokubutsu Jonin muttered under his breath. "The important thing is to not be seen. We will stay out of the forest for tonight and we will track them in bright and early tomorrow morning," Anko informed the group. Forest of Death, Suti's sector, 10 a.m. the following morning. Kurama just left the proctor's meeting and was heading in from Gate 12. He was glad he was able to get this sector because it was the closest to Sasuke's projected route. He was able to follow the scent of Team 7 easily. It was funny to him how easy it was to track an Inuzuka. They tracked by scent, but they never obscured their own scent. Must be the hunter mentality they had. Kurama saw a sign of a scuffle and Kurama stopped to investigate the battleground. It looked like the MA team that was tied up to a tree was still unable to get out of their bindings. He taught his kids well and this was proof that they were listening to his lessons. Kurama hopped down in front of the MA team and addressed them professionally. Do you wish to forfeit the exams? If so, I can untie you and escort you out of the forest? The tallest boy in the team scowled, as if Hanzo-sama didn't raise us to be quitters. Kurama looked at the other two. Is that your final decision? The kunoichi nodded. I couldn't face Hanzo-sama if I gave up so easily. The other boy mirrored her sentiment. Kurama shrugged. Very well, good luck. He dashed back off into the trees. He had flashbacks of his mission in Ame and his rescue of the Akatsuki. That made him think of Nagato and Honoka who were getting set up in Wave Country. Thoughts of family made him smile as he continued on the trail of Team 7. He felt a substantial flare of chakra that was well above Jinan level and he knew that Orochi was probably making her move now. He came up on the site of the battle 20 minutes later. He could have gone quicker, but he trusted Orochi not to take things too far. What he saw convinced him otherwise. There were multiple fires in the area around the forest, toppled trees and chaos seemed prevalent in this area of the forest. He was able to locate Sakura, Kiba and Akamaru easily enough. He breathed easy when he saw that they were stacked in a pile. He checked their vitals and applied just enough healing jutsu to aid in their recovery. He stood up and spread his senses. He sensed Sasuke and Orochi nearby and he felt that Orochi was supremely happy. He also felt something that wasn't part of the plan. He scowled as he moved forward. He heard pleased moans coming from a hollowed-out tree and he thought that it was time to intervene. He would regret that for quite a while to come. He entered the hollowed-out tree to see Orochi riding Sasuke in the cowgirl position. Before he could even speak, he saw Orochi shudder in ecstasy. She then turned to face him. Oh, Kurama-kun, are you disrupting my playtime already? Kurama scowled. You got what you came for. I can smell it. It is time for you to get out of here. Why so serious? Orochi asked as she pulled a test tube out to collect the splooge that was dripping out. Kurama turned his head away in disgust, but he spoke in a growl. I didn't help you with the mating mark so that you could use it on Sasuke. Orochi chuckled at that. Well, it wasn't part of the plan, but he put up such a good fight. He even wounded me. He is worthy of being my mate. That isn't the point. Kurama growled. That mark isn't something to play with. He didn't receive it willingly. He didn't reciprocate it. Orochi shrugged dismissively. So what? So, he will be unable to move on or find happiness. If he doesn't reciprocate the mark, then he will go crazy. If he does reciprocate the mark, then he is bound forever body and soul, Kurama shouted passionately. Orochi realized that she may have incited the Kyuubi's, or former Kyuubi's, rage. Oh. Kurama paced back and forth while Kushina shouted in his mind. Theoretically, if the mark isn't reciprocated, then he could possibly remove it. Once it is locked in though, there was nothing he could do about it. He stopped his pacing and glared at Orochi. He shouldn't have trusted the damn snake. Fucking hell, he said in exasperation as he saw the unapologetic look in Orochi's eyes. Is it so bad if he is mated to me? Orochi finally asked. I will care for him. Kurama snarled at this. Do you realize that I am in a relationship with his mother? Do you realize that I have started thinking of him as my own? Do you think I approve of this? Do you think Mikoto will ever approve? Orochi shrugged. He could do worse. I will give birth to a magnificent child. Kurama blurred forward and grabbed Orochi by the throat. That is beyond the point. He snarled with flickers of golden yellow chakra sparking off him. Naruto was getting upset and it didn't help that Kushina was raging. Orochi held her hands up in surrender and didn't look bothered by the fact that Kurama had her by the throat. Then just take the mark away. Ever since she found out his real identity, Orochi decided that it would be best to play nice. Her marking Sasuke was a spur-of-the-moment thing inspired by the recent discovery of the true demonic mating mark. She didn't expect it to be such a big deal and she really didn't apostrophe in number 39. Expect Kurama to react this way. I can't. Kurama snarled, not yet. Why not? Once marked, there is an acceptance period. Demons live long lives, so the typical period is a year. Most of the time, it is unnecessary, but in instances of rape it means that the victims go through a year of hell. You dumbass bitch. Kurama threw her through the tree and sent her tumbling into the small forest clearing. Orochi got back on her feet and brushed the dirt off her shoulders before she dipped her head. I apologize, Kurama-sama. I will leave this so that they can pass to the next stage of the exam. She held up an earth scroll and tossed it to Kurama. Get the fuck out of here, your use of chakra and my flare will draw attention. Kurama caught the scroll and snarled. And don't think for a second that this over. While Orochi scurried off, Kurama returned to Sasuke's side and analyzed the mark. How was he going to explain this? Fuck. Mikoto was going to have his balls for this. He removed his Fuinjutsu kit from his pouch and set to work. Before the containment seal was fully applied, he was joined in the clearing by Anko and a couple Tokubutsu Jonin. He stayed by Sasuke's side and focused on the seal. What happened here, Kurama? Anko asked with a snarl as she entered the tree. It was clear to Kurama that she had detected Orochimaru's presence. Kurama kept working on the containment seal. Orochimaru was in the forest and marked Sasuke. I chased him off and I am working to contain the seal that he applied to Sasuke. He needed to act as if Orochi was still a man. He was sincerely regretting working with the snake at this point. Which way did he go? Anko shouted urgently. Don't chase him, Anko. You are no match for him. Just go notify the Hokage and set up a cordon. Kurama replied before Anko grabbed him by the shoulder and he snarled. I am working on a containment seal. Let me go do your job. Anko removed her hand and quickly inspected the seal that Kurama was working on. Why does it look different than the one I had? And quat, because it is stronger. And quat, so, you can't just get rid of it? No. Sigh, fine, let's go you lot. I am going to set up the cordon. Daichi, go and notify the Hokage that we have a snake in the forest. Kurama, you can provide overwatch, but do not intervene in the exam once your counterseal is applied. Anko ordered before moving out in the direction of Orochimaru. Forest of Death, Northeast Sector, Day 2 to 2 p.m., we have 2 teams to our southwest. It looks like they are about to fight, Neji whispered to his teammates. There is also a team 400 meters to our east, but I can't tell what scroll they have. Let's go and fight the 2 teams, Lee said in an animated whisper. I wish to test my flames of youth. Tenten sighed, if we can remove 2 teams from the competition, that would be better than 1. Are they foreigners? Neji nodded, Suna and Taki. It isn't the crazy Suna team either. Tenten let out a sigh of relief at that. Let us go, Lee said before nearly shattering the branch by the force of his push-off. Neji sighed, he doesn't even know where they are. Tenten shrugged, that's just Lee. Not even Kurama-sensei could beat the flames of youth out of him. Team 9 caught up with Lee and Neji managed to reel him in. The fight between the Suna and Taki teams was well underway and Neji called out the plan. Lee pulled out a pair of nunchucks and Tenten pulled out a mace and bola. They wished to use non-lethal options if they could. Neji gave the hand sign and the group scattered to surround their opponents. Tito was having a bad day. He had led his team into an ambush and one of his teammates was already poisoned. Now he was down 2 canteens of water, and he hadn't even eliminated one of the Suna shinobi yet. One of them was a puppeteer and the other was using a battle fan. He couldn't get in range to neutralize them, and he had taken a couple of hits. He spit out a mouthful of blood and looked over to see how his teammate was doing. Yuri was engaged in a sword fight against her opponent. They were fairly even, and she was struggling to gain the upper hand. That was when she saw her opponent take an arrow to his leg. She was confused by the surprise and looked around for her new opponent. Then, she screamed in pain as the arrow struck her thigh. Before she knew what happened, a boy with white eyes was in front of her and her world went black. Lee saw Neji open up the attack and he couldn't suppress the excitement that was welling up within him. He wanted to hop out and challenge the enemy to a fair fight, but Kurama's lessons had culled that instinct. He knew that the advantage of surprise was a shinobi's greatest advantage. He used the moment of Neji's surprise attack to capitalize on the distracted Suna shinobi. He lashed out at the back of the puppet user's head with his nunchucks, and he winced at the cracking sound of the impact. Before the sound garnered the fan kunoichi's attention, Lee had already closed the distance. The kunoichi was able to raise her fan to block the first lash of the nunchuck, but the nunchuck's twin snapped around the side of the battle fan and caught her on the temple. She fell to the ground in a crumpled heap and her battle fan clanged loudly as it impacted the forest floor. Lee pocketed his nunchucks and secured his 2 unconscious opponents. He pulled them over into the small clearing where Neji and Tenten were securing their defeated adversaries. Tito's head snapped towards Yuri when he heard her scream. Perhaps that was why he missed the green blur that had completely decimated the Suna puppeteer and fan user. However, when he looked back towards the 2, he was unable to dodge the 3 bola that were flying through the air. His arms and legs were wrapped up tightly and he could do nothing to stop the butt of the mace that crashed into the back of his skull. Well, that was easy, Tenten said lightheartedly as she rifled through the pockets of the kunoichi. Her team was honorable enough that they always left the kunoichi to her. Neji scoffed, that is how a shinobi battle is supposed to be. Quick and decisive so long as you have the element of surprise. Lee pouted, I just wanted to test my flames of youth. Forest of Death, Easter Sector, day 2 to 5 p.m, Shika, this is boring. Ino complained in a whisper as they waited for the fellow Konoha team to fall into their trap. Shikamaru shrugged, this is the best solution. It keeps us out of trouble, and we will be able to neutralize them without inflicting severe damage. 5 minutes later, the Konoha Genin moved in a triangle formation on the forest floor. Shikamaru's easy-to-spot traps in the branches of the trees guided these shinobi to walk on the ground. Then, Shikamaru calculated the most likely path that they would take, and they applied a good trap there. As the Genin crossed the designated spot, Shikamaru activated the trap. One was fast enough to avoid the shuriken that came from behind, but the other two were too slow. The fast one jumped back and then hopped back once more to avoid the pitfall. That was when he was frozen in place, and he had to watch the fate of his two teammates. Mako, his Genin pal, was too slow and he took shuriken to his legs. That kept him in place long enough for him to be enclosed in a massive fist that was attached to Kuji. Mako was then crushed until he cried out a surrender. The female avoided most of the shuriken, but she still took one in the leg. She had dodged to the left and she forced herself into a ready position while bleeding from the leg. She was looking all over the forest in paranoia, and she was struggling not to panic as she saw her teammates captured. Suddenly, her head went slack, and her chin crashed into her chest. Just as suddenly, she looked up with a broad smile on her face. Mind transfer success, Shika, Ino said before she pulled out the shuriken that was shallowly embedded into the leg. Good job team, let's get them secured, Shika said loudly enough to be heard before he turned towards who he presumed was the leader. Look, we just want the scroll and don't want to hurt fellow shinobi. Could you tell us where it is? Tuppo, the leader, snarled, if you are too soft to hurt us then we will not give up the scroll. I got them, Shika. They had one of each. Ino called out through the female's mouth. Shikamaru smirked at Tuppo, too bad, buddy. Well, since you wanted to play it the hard way. Shikamaru smashed the butt of his kunai into the back of the guy's head. Kuji winced, ouch. That's what you get for messing with Kurama-sensei's students. Forest of Death, Central Sector, 2ND Day, 8 p.m, Hinata, are you sure you want to target these guys? Yakumo asked hesitantly as she followed Hinata. They were searching for the Kumo team and Hinata wouldn't hear them out. Hinata had an unnatural snarl on her face. She had torn through 3 teams already on her path for revenge. She was going to find out where her sister was even if it cost her life. We can do this, Yakumo. If the village won't act, then I will. Shino was a logical person, and he knew how much this meant to Hinata. Hinata-san, it is likely that the higher-ups have their own plan. Otherwise, Kumo would not have been invited to these exams. Hinata paused mid-stride and turned on Shino with her Byakugan active. She stomped up to him, if it were your family, would you sit idly by? She hissed. Shino didn't budge and maintained his neutral tone, I understand your feelings, Hinata-san. I believe that there is a reason Kurama-sensei invited Kumo here. My father informed me that he will be fighting against a Kumo Kunoichi to start the finals. Hinata paused longer this time. She needed to talk to Kurama-sensei. She took a deep breath and tried to think rationally, fine, let's get to the tower. I need to talk to Kurama-sensei. Team 8 moved through the thinning light and followed Hinata who was navigating with her Byakugan. Neither Shino nor Yakumo had ever seen Hinata like this. It was honestly scary to see the usually timid girl acting like this. Despite that, Shino managed to calm Hinata down and they made it to the tower by the end of the 2ND night. Hinata's Byakugan made it easy to move and avoid teams and she guided them to victory. Central Tower, Forest of Death, 1 a.m, Kurama was startled awake by a pounding on his door. He extended his senses and was confused by what he felt. He was proud of Team 8, but he wondered why they would be knocking on his door. It had already been a long day dealing with Orochi and informing Mikoto about her traitorous Sanin's attack on Sasuke. His only saving grace was that he told her the whole truth within the shelter of the seal. He then endured hours of the woman and Kushina beating the snot out of him. He groaned as he got up out of bed and opened the door. He looked down at Hinata to see a determination that thinly veiled the rage the Kunoichi was feeling. How can I help you guys? Hinata was in no mood to be polite. She pushed her way in and said, Sensei, we need to talk. Kurama watched in bewilderment as Team 8 entered his room and sat down on his bed. He closed the door and placed a privacy seal on it. He had a feeling this talk was going to be confidential in nature. I will ask again, what is going on? What made you wake me up at 1 a.m? Yakumo and Shino looked down, but Hinata refused to break eye contact. She spoke in a determined hiss, what are your plans for Kumo? Kurama scratched the back of his neck. Come again? Before Hinata could blow up, Shino took the lead. Sensei, Hinata-san has been agitated since she saw the Kumo team. She was determined to hunt them down until I told her there must be a reason that Hokage-sama invited them to the exams. I convinced her that there was a reason you will be fighting a Kumo Kunoichi before the finals start. Kurama nodded in understanding and his crimson eyes locked onto the determined lavender eyes of Hinata. You did well to stop her, Shino. What were you thinking, Hinata? I trained you better than that. Hinata didn't drop her gaze. She stared back into the crimson eyes of Kurama. I don't think so, Sensei. I think I have every right to figure out where my sister is. I have every right to punish Kumo shinobi. I could have incapacitated them and questioned them before I killed them. Enough, Kurama said in a stern whisper that carried an enormous amount of authority. For the first time since she entered the room, Hinata flinched and looked down. I understand your feelings on the matter, Hinata. I really do. Then. Hinata looked up with determination replaced with desperation. Kurama held up a hand. I will tell you this, Hinata. There are plans and your actions would have jeopardized them. CCA, can you please tell me? Hinata said as crystalline tears formed at the corners of Hinata's lavender orbs. Please. Kurama shook his head. Hinata, I can't have anyone knowing. Konoha can't have anyone that knows. Will you trust me? Hinata started crying and Yakumo took up a supportive position at her side. After a minute, she stifled her tears and looked up once more. The way the moonlight bounced off the teary Byakugan was truly entrancing. Will you bring her home? Will you be the one to do it? Kurama offered a sincere smile. I will try. Can you keep your feelings tucked in tight and be the kunoichi I know you can be? Hinata nodded weakly. Yes, sensei. Central Tower, day 3 to 4 p.m., Kurama was called into a meeting with the Hokage, Mikado, Anko, Kakashi and Team 7. He knew what it was about, but it was the first time that the group could get together. Kurama entered the room to see everyone was assembled and he offered a small bow to the Hokage. He took up a position on the wall and leaned against it. It was clear that Mikoto was still mad at him, and he knew that he would be in the doghouse for quite a while. Good thing Tsume and Hana lived in the doghouse. Tee-hee. Team 7, will you please explain your encounter in the forest? I do not know if you are aware, but you fought against Orochimaru of the Sannin, Hiruzen said while looking down on the teenagers. Hokage-sama, we fought against a kunoichi. Wasn't Orochimaru a man? Sakura asked. No, Sakura, when we caught her, or him, or whatever, with my flame attack, her or his face started peeling, Sasuke said while clearly frustrated. Mikado winced when she saw him rubbing the mark on his neck. Hiruzen nodded. Indeed, it is clear to me that Orochimaru was using a disguise. My former student is most definitely a man. This made Kurama and Mikoto sigh internally. If Mikado didn't despise Hiruzen so much, then she would have come clean as part of her duty to the village. Could you tell me about the battle or anything, he said? Do you know anything about that mark on your neck? Kiba, being naturally brash, spoke first. Me and Akamaru were swallowed by a damn snake. Thing was massive. Luckily, we had enough room to using a tunneling fang and we were able to break out of it. Sasuke picked up from there. Once Kiba was taken away, Sakura and I tried to fight. Sakura was knocked out almost immediately after we caught her with the flame attack, and that was when he or she started talking to me. What did he say to you, Sasuke-kun? Hiruzen asked while leaning forward in his seat. Sasuke shivered. Well, she said that she wanted me. She said that she wanted to test me. When we fought, every time I threw a surprise attack, she would start fighting harder. Once Sakura was gone, I was on the back foot, and I was fighting desperately. Kurama stepped in here. You comported yourself well and put up quite a fight. The battlefield was well above anything I would expect from a Jinan and most Chunin. Hold your head high. Hiruzen nodded and spoke in a grandfatherly tone. I took a look at it myself. I have to agree with Kurama-kun. Did he say anything else? Sasuke closed his eyes to review the interaction before he shivered. Hokage-sama, it doesn't make sense if Orochimaru is a man. It sounded. Sasuke stopped here to consider his wording. Once Mikoto grabbed his shoulder in support, he continued, it sounded like he wanted me. Hiruzen sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He couldn't tell these people that was probably the case. He couldn't expose the hidden past that he had fought to keep buried. He wanted to maintain his image as the Kami no Shinobi, god of shinobi. That mark is what he puts on those he wants as his subordinates. I admit that it is different, and it is beyond my expertise. Kurama-kun, could you explain it for us and tell us how you sealed it? Kurama shot an apologetic look at Mikoto before stepping forward. This mark has better protections than Anko's seal. I cannot remove it at this time. I have contained it and minimized its influence. What is its influence? Kakashi asked. Kurama sighed, I am fairly certain that this is a mating seal of some sort. He knew it was, but he wasn't going to proclaim his knowledge on demonic mating seals. You can expect an exchange of power, there is undoubtedly a loyalty aspect in the seal. It is integrating into his chakra network, but it seems incomplete. Incomplete how? Hiruzen pressed. The chakra hasn't been fully integrated. It is as if something is needed to cement it. Once cemented, it would become irremovable. Kurama answered honestly, if not vaguely. What would it take to complete it? Hiruzen asked with narrowed eyes. If his attention was not fully on Kurama, he would have seen Mikado put a hand over her own mating mark. The very mating mark that was probably the reason she hadn't killed Kurama outright for what happened to her son. Kurama shrugged, best guess is the two chakras would have to become one. As in, Sasuke would have to inject his chakra into Orochimaru. Sasuke shivered at the thought, why? Why in the hell would I do that? Mikoto and Sakura each put a supportive hand on his shoulder. Hiruzen waited for Kurama to answer, you will want to. Mating marks draw you to the other. They defy logic or reason. How can I mate with a man? Sasuke shouted out of frustration. Kiba had been listening in a stunned and apologetic silence this whole time. He nearly lost it at that exclamation. He added his hand to the support, don't worry, Suke. We will never let that happen. We have your back. Sakura was trickling tears, but she forced a smile and hugged Sasuke. Unlike her fangirl days, this was a genuinely supportive and selfless hug. What Kiba said. The adults watched the moving scene with sad, yet proud, smiles on their faces. Less than 6 months ago, these kids would never have become such a cohesive team. They never would have learned to trust and rely on each other so completely. Perhaps that was why it was so moving for them to see it. Perhaps that was why Hiruzen was smiling down, and perhaps that was why he was unable to see the connection between Orochimaru and Kurama. So, you're my fiancé? Kurama was waiting for the second round of the Chunin exams to end. He had been pulled from the security detail by Hiruzen and he was going to be the proctor for the preliminary rounds. Too many teams had made it to the tower already and it was obvious that the preliminaries would be needed. Thus, Kurama was cramped up in the tower for the past 2 days and he needed to relieve some stress. Kurama was sprinting back and forth across the gymnasium with his resistance seals cranked up. He skidded to a halt and started doing burpees. After burpees, Kurama ran up the wall and hung from the balcony with chakra. He started doing inverse sit-ups while holding a bar that weighed 100 pounds above his head. Sweat poured down his frame as he continued on his workout with single-minded determination. Samui was looking to get a morning workout in and the area the other students were using was occupied by teams 8 and 9. The glare she received from the Hyuga cousins was more than enough for Samui to get the message. She wasn't welcome in there. The frustrating part was that she really didn't know why. She knew that negotiations broke down between Kumo and Konoha, but that was what happens when their ambassador was killed. Sure, he killed the Hyuga member as well, but she didn't think her village was at fault. As her feet led her down to the gymnasium, she heard the sounds of someone working hard. She emerged on the balcony, and she saw the flash of golden hair first. After that, her eyes locked onto the godly body that resided below the sun-kissed blonde locks. She licked her lips subconsciously and found that she was happy to just watch this man work out. It didn't seem like he was going to stop just because she showed up. Kurama felt the presence, but his mind wasn't clear enough to deal with that right now. It made him throw himself even harder into his workout. It was strange for him to realize that he would have napped in the past rather than work so hard. When he was immortal, time and urgency were never considerations for him. Time only became relevant to him when he began recording his captivity. Mortality only became relevant for him when he was subjected to the whims of the gods, and he was turned human. Ever since then, Kurama has felt an urgency in his actions and a passion in his desires. Being productive filled him with a sense of accomplishment and it let him know that he was getting closer to fulfilling his objectives. Inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter, Kurama was willing to work for every bit of progress. Every bit of energy he spent he traded it for that sense of accomplishment. That sense of accomplishment and the effort he spent to earn it was his apology to his kit that was now trapped within him. Finally, Kurama came to a halt and walked over to a bench that had a nutrient bar and energy drink. The energy drink was something that the Akimichi came up with through their studies in nutrition. The electrolytes the body expended couldn't be replaced by drinking water, and once that was discovered, Kurama switched to the energy drinks. As he was squeezing down a couple gulps, Kurama felt the blonde Kunoichi approaching. Samui had watched Kurama work out for the past hour. She didn't know why, but she found herself content to just watch the spectacle. Okay, she did know why. What teenage girl could be blamed for watching the stunningly toned muscle that was dripping with sweat? Plus, that tan just made it look that much yummier, and the feral sexiness of his whiskers made Samui shiver. She shivered in pleasure as daydreams of her and her future husband filled her mind. Maybe this whole mission thing wouldn't be so bad. Once Kurama's workout came to a halt, Samui decided to make her move. It would be really awkward if she didn't talk to him after gawking at him for the last hour. She shook out her nerves, made sure her blouse was smoothed out, and even adjusted her sizable bust to make sure it was perfectly on display. She didn't care much for the two voluptuous mounts for most of her life, but she was grateful for them now. Before this, all they did was give her back pain. Now, they were assets, and they may help her accomplish her mission and woo her future husband. Are you done with your warm-up, Kurama-san? Samui asked glibly. Kurama chuckled and took another spray of his drink before he turned to look at Samui. She was undoubtedly a beautiful young woman. He would have admitted so even in his bijou form. Now that he was a full-blooded young man, that fact resonated even more strongly. Despite that, Danzo beat control over his emotions into him, and he would never let a potential adversary have the upper hand. He had no delusions. At this point Samui was an adversary, not a potential mate. That fact was made even more clear when Kurama felt Samui out. She was beautiful, she held an earnest attraction for him, she was nervous, she was insecure, and Kurama could tell those were all foreign feelings for him. It was what was under those feelings that let Kurama know that she wasn't being genuine. The determination, resolve and dedication to her village were all too strong for her to hide those feelings from Kurama. With this in mind, Kurama played the game and returned her casual greeting. Yup, Kurama said lightly, and no need for the formalities. It sounds like our leaders are bound and determined to have us married. May as well get used to each other. Samui blushed lightly and nodded, and how do you feel about that? Kurama chuckled wryly, like I am a pawn on some old man's shogi board. You? Kurama saw Samui's shoulders relax at the honest statement. Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, you seem cool, but it is all a lot to take in. Kurama chuckled earnestly at that. Let me ask you this then. Before you heard about any of this, did you have a first love? Ever have a boyfriend? He wanted to exchange some information and earn some rapport with her. Regardless of the situation, there was no need for him to make this harder on her. He resonated with the powerlessness she was feeling in the situation. He would never forget the feeling that was most prevalent during his time in capture. Samui blushed at the question and looked down at the floor. No. She shuddered at some memory and seemed to clam up. I have never thought about love or sex like that. Kurama felt the pause and he couldn't suppress the growl that was rumbling in his chest. He knew what that self-loathing and sudden anxiety meant. Before he knew it, he had pulled her into a hug. He felt her stiffen and he wanted to make her know that it was okay. The vibrant chakra he felt from Naruto that formed up in his chest transferred naturally into Samui, and it was then that he felt her sink into the embrace. Kurama maintained the hug and spoke softly. All I want to say is that I am a powerful sensor. I can sense emotions because of my connection to the QB. I will not dig on this, and I know that we are not at the point that you will tell me. I just want you to know that when the time comes, I will not judge you. Samui was a calm, cool and composed kunoichi. She had always comported herself as such, and it gave her a reputation in Kumo as an ice queen. That suited her just fine because she couldn't touch a man without flashbacks. She could never drop her guard because her soul couldn't take that happening to her again. Despite that, she couldn't help but sink into the first embrace from a man in nearly 3 years. Thank you, she whispered back softly. Sure thing. So, did you come here to work out or did you just come to peep? Kurama asked while still embracing her to lighten the mood. Samui gave a half-hearted chuckle with her head still in his chest. I came to work out, but you were already using the arena. Kurama looked around and couldn't stop the smirk from spreading on his face. It is a pretty big arena. More than enough. Samui slapped his shoulder playfully. Don't ruin a good moment, baka. She pushed away from his chest and her ice blue eyes locked onto the crimson orbs. You were a pretty cool guy until then. Kurama laughed and scratched the back of his neck. Well, just wanted to lighten the mood. So, how do you like your teammates? They seem like interesting characters. Samui smiled fondly. They are cool. I have been with them for 2 years now. Cool, huh? That's high praise coming from you if I got a proper beat on you. Samui nodded. They are, and you do. What about you? What is it like to be a jonin over kids your own age? Kurama shrugged playfully. It is just my life. Got over it a while ago. Why? Samui asked and elaborate when Kurama looked at her. Why did you get in so deep when you were young? It is pretty obvious that you were working before the approved age, Kurama sighed and gestured to the bench. Samui nodded and the two took a seat. Kurama controlled anything that would be too revealing, and he filtered out the confidential stuff, but he told Samui Naruto's story. He told of his early childhood, fox hunts and abuse. That was pretty difficult, but it was necessary to explain why finding a shelter en route was a blessing. Then, he explained how he wanted to make the world a better place for his future children. That last part was genuine if not fully revealing. Wow, Samui said after breaking her enrapturement to the story. You are pretty cool. To think that you went through all of that and still want to serve your village. Internally, she was asking why he would remain loyal to a village that treated him that way. Kurama read the internal question and decided to get ahead of it. If you are wondering why I remain loyal, then I would say that it is my birthright and duty. The fact that I would be hunted to the ends of the earth if I left also played a factor. Instead of stewing in the past and letting it control me, I took control of my own destiny. Like I said, pretty cool, Samui said before she got contemplative again. How did you get over your past? How did you deal with all of that pain? Day by day, Kurama answered earnestly. He had plenty of his experience to pull on and he knew it was the truth for Kurama as well. When he sensed that she needed more, he continued, you realize that it is a part of your past, but it isn't a part of you. When things out of our control happen, the important thing is not what happened, but how we reacted to it. Samui nodded with her head down. Despite enjoying the conversation, she realized that she had a long way to go to deal with her past trauma. You are a pretty cool guy, Kurama. Preliminaries, the Chunin exams were started in a cooperative effort between the various shinobi hidden villages. The idea came from setting a universal standard. Hiruzen droned on with his speech to the Jinan from his position on the VIP balcony. Kurama toned him out long ago and was only waiting for his cue. He thought the idea of making kids fight, potentially to the death, in the name of peace was crazy. That was some Hunger Games level shit. The rich and influential entertaining themselves while watching children fight with their lives on the line. That damned manga was crazy, but this whole shinobi system was just as crazy. He looked around at the teams present. 7 teams, 21 Jinan, managed to make it to the central tower and pass the exams. 7 teams out of 32 managed to pass through the forest of death. That was a good crop of Jinan, and it demanded that the numbers be culled before the finals. Thus, the Hokage spouting on and on while the Jinan protest the unfairness of not getting through to the finals. Kurama smiled as his eyes scanned Teams 7, 8, 9 and 10. They had performed admirably and Team 7 was the last one to check in and they did so on the 3rd day. Team 9 managed to bring in 2 extra sets of scrolls and Team 10 had an extra set as well. That made Kurama proud. Then he scanned the other teams that managed to make it in. Kumo, Suna and Otto rounded out the remaining teams and would be the foreign representation in the finals. I will let the proctor for the preliminaries take over from here. Kurama-kun, if you would. Hiruzen finished while maintaining his grandfatherly appearance. Before we get started, is there anyone that is unable to continue? Kurama asked while hoping that somebody would back out and even up the numbers. Nobody took the bait. Alrighty then, since there is an uneven amount of Jinan, the final 3 will fight in a 3-way battle. He pointed up at the screen that appeared on the wall. Your names will be drawn at random and will announce your fights. As the 2 sections of the screen started spinning, all Jinan watched with bated breath. The first match was set to be Sasuke vs Kankuro. The 2 jumped down from the balcony with excited looks on their faces. Kurama eyed the sealed mark and sensed that it was contained for the most part. That was good because part of the mating mark is an exchange of chakra and a syncing of personalities. Sasuke was ambitious enough, Kurama didn't need him adding Orochi's sadistic personality to that. Kurama looked at the 2, this fight is a no-holds-barred match. Killing is authorized but discouraged. If I call the fight, then you will stop with no objections. Failure to do so will earn my ire and intervention. If your opponent submits, then you will halt all offensive actions and respect the surrender. Am I understood? Both Genins nodded. Ready, fight. Zaku pulled up his sleeves as he started rotating around the arena. So, you are the vaunted Uchiha that we have heard so much about. Don't look so special to me. HN, Sasuke responded as he kept his Sharingan deactivated. He didn't want to become dependent on it and he respected Kurama-sensei's lessons. Upon grunting back, everyone saw Sasuke's flinch and all of the rookies looked to Kurama to see how he would react. Sasuke visibly relaxed when he saw Kurama's smirk with no water whip in hand. So, you think you're a big shot then? Take this, Zaku exclaimed as he raised his arms and channeled chakra into them. The devices that were surgically embedded by Orochimaru integrated with the chakra circulatory system and converted the raw chakra into a channeled wind chakra. Decapitating air waves. Sasuke saw the ripple in the air that was in the rough shape of a blade. His eyes were sharp enough to see that it wasn't really a blade so much as it was a blunt force wind. As he dodged, he thought that it was a boisterous and stupid name. He managed to dodge the attack and his hands lashed out and loosed a brace of shuriken at his opponent. They weren't meant to hit, but they would definitely give him time to take the advantage. As Sasuke moved around the arena and dodged the obvious attacks, he thought about how to close the distance. One lesson he took from his mother, Mikoto no Kawarimi, was how to utilize the substitution better than 99% of shinobi. His eyes locked onto their target, and he just had to get his opponent riled up. He skidded to a halt and plastered the Uchiha smirk on his face. "Is that all you got? Are you just a one-trick pony?" Zaku growled, "I will show you. You are just a dodging monkey." Supreme decapitating airwaves. Zaku overloaded the chakra in his arms and this version of the attack was much broader, more potent and some of the air actually formed into blades. Sasuke waited until the last second. He needed his opponent to believe victory was already in hand. He activated the Kawarimi as the wind chakra collided into the wall and floor. The explosion of chakra scattered dust and bit of the arena everywhere. Zaku was wearing a maniacal look on his face, thinking that he bested the shinobi that Orochi-sama had chosen. Now she would recognize his talent and choose him instead. "Idiot," Sasuke whispered into Zaku's ear before the hilt of his Kadachi slammed into the back of Zaku's head. There was an audible crack and smack. The cracking of Zaku's skull and the fleshy smacking sound of Zaku's face on the arena floor. Sasuke calmly held the tip of his Kadachi to the back of Zaku's head and he was pronounced the winner. He got a proud nod from Kurama before he sheathed his blade and walked back up to the balcony. "Good job, Sasuke-kun," Sakura shouted excitedly before her face paled and her eyes darted to Kurama. Kurama just chuckled and waved her off. "Good job, Suke." Kiba met Sasuke with a high five. "That was quick and clean. I was hoping you would show off a little more." His loud voice echoed around the arena. Sasuke shrugged, still early in the competition. "Don't want to give too much away." Sasuke returned the head nod from Neji, and he even gave Lee a high five. He regretted that decision and shook out the numbness in his hand that resulted from Lee's powerful high five. The next match was between Yakumo Kurama and Kuji. Kuji paled as he walked down to the arena. He towered over the girl, but Yakumo already held two of her paintings in her head. Kuji knew very well what Kurama could do with those paintings. His nerves got the best of him because he couldn't think of how to counter a power that made genjutsu a reality. He had learned a lot, but how were you supposed to counter that? "Poor Kuji," Ino lamented. Shikamaru nodded, "The only way to counter Yakumo is speed. Very few of us have been able to deal with her prepared cards." "She won't hurt Kuji, will she?" Sakura asked in concern. "Kuji-san is a comrade," Shino said matter-of-factly. "I have sparred with Kurama-san multiple times, and I have never been severely hurt." "Didn't she kill 5 guys with one painting in wave?" Kiba said dubiously. Shino nodded, "Indeed she did, however, Kiba-san, those men were enemies, and she was protected by Kurama-sensei's barrier." "How do her cards even work?" Ino asked Kurenai, who worked with Yakumo the most. Kurenai shrugged. "Kurama helped her develop a new delivery system. She has pre-made cards just like you guys carry explosive tags. She has to have a clear image of what she wants to happen and then she has to maintain her chakra flow and concentration. The larger the deviation from the natural order, the more chakra it takes." "So, how much chakra does it take to make Kuji sleep in the middle of an exam?" Asuma asked while shaking his head. His student was now asleep in the middle of the arena during his combat exam. Kurenai looked down at the arena then at Asuma. I don't know. Probably a little more chakra than if it were Shikamaru." This earned laughs from the rookie teams. With the Kumo team, they were discussing the potential future opponent. "That is so bothersome." To quote Daru-sensei, Amoe said as his paranoia was close to overwhelming him. "That's not cool. How would you fight against that, Daru-sensei?" Samui asked with her eyes narrowed at Yakumo. Daru was in a thinking pose. "I will have to think on that. She needs a clear mental image and focus, so you would have to disrupt and distract her long enough to land an attack." That boy's hesitation gave her the opportunity. With Tamari, she was panicking. If that girl could put people to sleep so easily, then she could potentially unleash Shukaku if she put Gaara to sleep. That thought was scary. It also made her look at her little brother, and she didn't like what she saw. Ever since they entered the arena, Gaara had been glaring at Kurama and muttering. This was even more psychotic behavior than normal. She just hoped that Gaara could keep it reeled in long enough for them to accomplish their mission. Shikamaru, Nara and Kinsuchi, please report to the arena. Kurama called out. Shikamaru suppressed his groan and his eyes started analyzing his opponent. This girl was overly confident, much like her teammate. She also had a dubious feel to her, and Shikamaru's brain was working overtime to calculate the potential paths to victory. After the battle started, Shikamaru dodged a volley of senbon that had bells on them. He fought through the genjutsu and guided Kin towards the balcony. Once close enough, Shikamaru used the balcony's shadow to extend his reach and capture Kin. Kin growled, "What are you going to do now? I won't give up that easy." Shikamaru scratched his head lazily, which was mirrored by Kin. He then weaved through 3 separate hand signs and sat down in a meditative pose. Kin did not mirror this action. Instead, she reached into a kunai pouch and placed the kunai at her own neck. Her eyes widened in fear, especially when Shikamaru opened his eyes and spoke in a lazy drawl. "Do you still wish to continue fighting? The only thing left from here is..." He paused and Kin moved the kunai she was holding with her right hand over her left wrist. "Unpleasant." Shikamaru finished. "I surrender," Kin exclaimed in terror. She couldn't fight against the shadow suppression and manipulation. "Winner, Shikamaru Nara," Kurama said proudly as he watched the young man he had dumped a considerable amount of time and effort into. He gave Shika a nod and watched as the young, previously lazy genius walked out of the arena. "Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka, please report to the arena." Kurama called out to keep the procession moving. "Who do you think will win, Sasuke?" Kiba asked as he leaned over the railing with Akamaru jumping up next to him on his hind legs. Sasuke looked down on the arena floor. Sakura has come a long way, but she is still a weak frontline fighter. She has put most of her time into genjutsu and healing jutsu. But her and Ino both use tantos. Maybe it will be a kenjutsu battle? Yakumo suggested from next to Sasuke. Sasuke shook his head. They are pretty even in kenjutsu and neither of them would be willing to land a crippling or killing blow on the other. I think it will come down to clan jutsu or taijutsu. Tenten was listening in and looked disappointed. Yeah, they aren't far enough along in their kenjutsu to stop from making a mistake. Let's see how it plays out. The most youthful Sakura-chan will win, Lee exclaimed passionately. The fight played out as Sasuke guessed. Both girls started with their tantos, but it was a draw. There were minor cuts on their garments, but neither one could nor would take advantage of the openings the other provided. After a couple minutes, both girls agreed to sheath their blades, and it turned into a taijutsu battle. They both displayed skills worthy of the kunoichi title and they were very evenly matched. Kurama watched on with pride. If he hadn't intervened, this would have been a totally different fight. Now, they were putting on a display that he could be proud of. It was nothing special nor over the top, but it was definitely above Genon level combat. If these two came this far, then his other kids would definitely put on a good showing. He allowed himself to indulge in the play-by-play commenting that Naruto and Kushina were providing. "Oh. A narrow dodge by Bubblegum. Watch out," Naruto said in a commentator voice. Blondie managed to dodge the counter blow. "Look at them go," Kushina continued. "They are trading blow for blow. I don't know how much longer they can keep this up." Naruto added a grave tone. "They are quite scuffed up and they are starting to huff. Looks like they have decided to end it. Each kunoichi is readying herself for a final clash." Naruto was really getting into his role as a commentator, and it highly amused Kurama. "Look out. They each landed their decisive blow simultaneously," Kushina exclaimed. 1, 2, 3, ding, ding, ding. Mutual knockout. Kushina lost her composure and started laughing. "Oh, Sochi, that was fun. To think it would end in a double knockout. Seeing as neither kunoichi is capable of continuing, the match will be called a draw," Kurama announced as the medics came out to recover the two kunoichi. Lee was bouncing up and down on his heels. "That was such a youthful battle. I can't wait for my turn to fight." "Calm down, Lee, you are making a scene," Neji said calmly while stomaching his disdain. He then noticed that the Kumo shinobi were still up for grabs, and he couldn't stop himself from hoping that he got one of the three. "Hinata, Hyuga and Karu of Kumo, please come to the arena," Kurama called out while hoping that Hinata could keep it reeled. He really didn't want her anger spilling over into this battle. All rookies were looking at Hinata, who was making her way down the stairs. Her face was like fixed granite and her expression was emotionless. Despite that, Kurama easily felt her rage, anger, hatred, despair that was boiling under the surface. He felt her excitement and a foreign trickle of sadism as she eyed Karu. Kurama would need to intervene if she took this too far. "Careful, Rama," Kushina cautioned. If she is anything like Hitomi-chan, then she will turn into a tigress when her loved ones are threatened. There is no way she will let this go. Kurama kept his eyes on the two contestants. I know, Sheena. I will handle it. He thought back. He then looked to the two and noticed that Kaoru had caught on to the uneasy feelings in the air. Contestants ready? Begin. Hinata didn't hesitate for a second. In a puff of chakra smoke, her bow was in her hand and she was already drawing her first arrow. The arrow was sailing through the air in a hiss directly towards Kaoru's head before the Kumo Kunoichi even took her first step forward. It seems like the Kunoichi was caught off guard by the fact that a Hyuga was using a ranged weapon. Furthermore, the chakra reloading aspect of the bow was something she had never seen before. The second arrow was already sailing at her head despite the fact that she just dodged the first one. Kaoru unsheathed her katana and used it to block the second arrow. She spun out of the way of the third arrow and dashed forward. The 4th and 5th arrows were threatening to pierce her torso now. She cursed as she rolled under the arrow and sacrificed her forward momentum to dodge the onslaught. As she recovered from her roll, she noticed that Hinata was now running towards her and there was a final arrow coming at her. Kaoru held her sword vertically to block the final arrow and she winced as the arrow clanged off the flat of her blade. That wince cost her. Hinata slid into position and lashed out with her bow at the Kunoichi's head. Kaoru blocked the attack while still down on one knee in a crouched position. Hinata slid the bow down the blade until she trapped the blade in her arrow catch. With a vicious snarl, she twisted her bow and disarmed Kaoru of her katana. The blade flew across the ground of the arena and clanked multiple times until it ground to a stop. The audience held their breaths as they watched Hinata sink into her Juken stance. Nobody could recognize this vicious and relentless Kunoichi. Nobody had ever seen all of the suppressed wrath that Hinata carried. They had never seen her unleash it, nor had they seen her unshackled by the restraints of civility. The fierce look in the clear, lavender eyes made the rookies shiver, and the Jonin sensei hoped that she wouldn't lose herself to this rage. Kaoru looked up helpless as the Hyuga Kunoichi towered over her. She had never felt so helpless as she did in that moment. As Hinata's stance widened and an 8 trigram chakra symbol appeared below them, Kaoru resigned herself to her fate and closed her eyes after raising her arms up to protect her vital areas. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Hinata called out in a cold tone as her body blurred into motion. The next 5 seconds were occupied with 64 strikes that were laced with chakra. The soft palm style of the Hyuga was a misnomer because the chakra imbued in each strike made it severely painful. Kaoru's scream stopped after the 11th strike was adjusted to hit her larynx. Hinata twirled and prepared to deliver the double-palmed finishing blow to her opponent's heart. Kurama knew what came next and he felt that Hinata was going to go through with it. That was the most vicious version of the 64 palms that Kurama had ever seen. Blows that were meant to close tenketsu were instead deviated slightly to inflict pain and damage internal organs. Kurama acted swiftly to stop the killing blow. He appeared in between the two Kunoichi and he matched his palms to Hinata's palms. He winced in pain as the chakra was injected into his system and stopped the proper flow of chakra into his hands. Despite the pain, Kurama's fingers closed over Hinata's, and his crimson eyes dug into her narrowed lavender slits. He spoke calmly as Kaoru was gasping for breath behind him. "That is enough, Hinata," he whispered before raising his voice and exclaiming, "Winner, Hyuga Hinata." Hinata was frozen after the delivery of her final strike. Her brain hadn't caught up to the fact that she was moments away from killing her opponent. As reality kicked back in, Hinata went weak at the knees and would have fallen to the arena floor had Kurama not caught her. Moments later, he handed her off to Kurenai and turned to help the medics address Kaoru. Everyone marveled as a golden chakra hummed lightly over her hands and he placed one of his hands over the damaged throat and the other hand over Kaoru's heart. He channeled Naruto's invigorating chakra into Kaoru and altered it slightly to make it more attuned to healing in nature. It was supremely effective, and he saw Kaoru relaxing after she was able to take her first pain-free breath. He was grateful that he learned medical ninjutsu at Naruto's persistence. It really wasn't all that difficult for him. Even if this human body was supremely powerful in contrast to other mortals, it still paled in comparison to the amount of chakra that Kurama had before. He had far more time to synchronize and familiarize himself with the nature of chakra than any human ninja. His aptitude for medical jutsu and chakra control were largely due to his vast experience as a chakra entity. Kurama pulled back his hands and the golden green glow dispersed. Kaoru had fallen into a deep sleep, and she would recover from the damage done by Hinata in time. Kurama turned away from the medics to see Kurenai was consoling Hinata on the balcony. He turned his head to see Daru with a stoic look while Samui and Amoi were frowning with their eyes glued onto their teammate. Kurama could feel that Daru knew exactly why that just happened. Kurama suppressed the growl and took comfort in knowing that Danzo's best would be scouting out the location that Matatabi had shared with him. If that location were confirmed, then he would have no need to disguise himself as a Kumo shinobi. He wouldn't need to put himself at risk or harm Samui in any way. He would be able to focus in on Hanabai's location and rescue her from her life of imprisonment. It wasn't too late. It wouldn't be too late. Kurama had to drop that line of thought as Tenten and Tamari appeared in front of him. Kurama maintained his impassive gaze as he looked between the two kunoichi. Ready? They nodded. Begin. Tenten's situation was the inverse of the Hinata's own. She couldn't close the distance to Tamari, who was a strategic and practiced wind ninjutsu fighter. The ranged weapons she threw were beat aside blunt winds, and it appeared as though Tamari had great control of the air around her. Despite the hundreds of ninja tools thrown, not a single one of them had made it through Tamari's wind barrier. Tenten started changing things up after that. She used ninja wire attached to her weapons to spring a trap. She used fire jutsu to counter Tamari's wind. This nearly worked, but the disparity in the power of their jutsus made it so Tenten's fireball was sent back at her. Tamari's training against wind's weakness paid off, especially when supplemented by the massive battle fan she wielded. The end result, Tenten's final play was swept aside, and she ate a sickle weasel jutsu to the face. As Tenten was falling from the devastating wind attack, Tamari was holding her fan out to add one final, disrespectful blow to her opponent. It was then that Kurama made his move, swatted the fan so hard out of her hand that it spun into the wall, and then the chamber was filled with a clang as the open fan slammed into the wall. Kurama's aura flared and the ki leveled on the daughter on Tamari made her knees shake. The girl whimpered lightly as her emerald eyes saw death in the eyes of Kurama. Kurama snapped his eyes away from Tamari and inspected the cut-up form of Tenten. She was one of his students and he wouldn't stand for needless injury or disrespect. After a couple seconds, Kurama looked up at the audience and announced, "Winner, Subaku no Tamari." Hiruzen looked down on the arena floor with a small smile on his face. He saw the will of fire in Kurama, and that was a pleasing thought to him. He simply wished that the boy would be loyal to him. He couldn't let his rival take credit for it. He needed this boy, the heir and prince of Konoha, to be loyal to him. He needed Naruto, or Kurama now, to be his legacy. Jiraiya was watching next to Hiruzen and thinking along similar lines. The child of prophecy was too strong and independent for him to control. He hated the boy's new name. He was supposed to be named Naruto after the character from his books. He was supposed to be one of the Genin that would have worshipped him as a hero. He was supposed to be so many things, but he was never supposed to be this. Jiraiya suppressed the scowl that wanted to emerge. He needed to find a way to influence the boy. The toads demanded it, and he begrudgingly admitted that he owed it to Minato. He could care less about Kushina, but he still dearly loved Minato. He was supposed to be able to raise and train the boy. He would have shaped him into the mirror image of Minato and crafted the sword and shield of Konoha. He needed to form the boy into the legacy of his father. After Tenten was carted off by the medical ninjas, Kurama called for Samui and Kiba to report to the stadium floor. Kurama suppressed the groan that wanted to escape as he watched his pup strut down to the floor. Despite his training and guidance, Kiba was still a hot-blooded teenage Inuzuka male. Kurama instantly saw that Kiba's alpha male instincts were getting the better of him as the boy eyed the shapely body of Samui. Samui walked calmly down to the floor while thinking over the upcoming battle. She was the best Genin Kumo had to offer, and she wasn't going to lose. She had more than a few cards up her sleeve, and she could instantly feel the leer of the Inuzuka boy on her. She instinctively knew that he was leering at her chest. As the professional kunoichi she was, she shoved down her discomfort and took solace in her hand palming the hilt of her katana. Samui locked eyes with Kurama and a light blush worked its way onto her cheeks. Those crimson eyes were so enthralling and held so much power behind them. The young man was incredibly good-looking, and everything she had seen so far made her believe that he would be a good husband. Of course, regardless of the finals, they were set to be engaged. Of course, that was a pretense to get a hold of his genetics. Of course, Samui had a terrible gut feeling that that plan would fail miserably. Despite all of the obvious feelings coursing through her, Samui took a deep breath and stopped in the middle of the arena. "Both contestants ready?" Kurama asked and received nods in return. "Begin." Kiba couldn't resist this opportunity. He saw the kunoichi sink into a ready position with her hand on her katana, but he wanted to chat. He sank into a ready position with Akamaru at his side before a cocky smirk fixed itself on his face. "Hey there, sweet thing." Samui recoiled at the obvious and inappropriate attempt at flirting. She stifled her surprise and affixed her cold tone. "I do not know you, Shinobi-san. I recommend we get to the fight." Kiba waved her off with a tone that made all the kunoichi in the stadium recoil and the males groan. What's the rush, sweetheart? We can make love before we indulge in war. Samui scoffed, I think not, Shinobi-san. I am promised to another, and I am afraid you just don't measure up. It was Kiba's turn to scoff, I am an alpha male of the Inuzuka clan. Whoever you are with can't measure up to me, he exclaimed with his chest puffed out. This earned a small groan from Kurama, who was dealing with two rabble-rousers in his head that were laughing uproariously. Samui's eyes flickered to Kurama and was amused to see his reaction. She looked back at Kiba, you shouldn't disrespect those you don't know. I assure you that he is a shinobi of much greater power and prestige than yourself. In fact, I doubt you can even best me. Samui sank lower into position and prepared herself and her chakra for the fight to come. Kiba was starting to get angry now, very well, tits. It seems like we'll have to put a bitch in her place. An instant later, Kiba recoiled as a water whip cracked across his back with enough force to send him tumbling forward. He picked himself up and his eyes went wide with fear as he looked into the burning red eyes of Kurama. Kiba immediately transitioned into a prostrated pose and submitted himself to Kurama. Kurama held a stop hand up to Samui and focused his attention and anger on Kiba. Inuzuka Kiba, you will apologize. I understand that you have not learned to control your instincts, but you have crossed a line. Once you apologize, you will stand up and fight without another word. Am I clear? Kurama snarled out while flexing his aura. All of the other shinobi knew that it was wrong, and potentially illegal, to interrupt an active shinobi fight. Despite that, they all inherently agreed with Kurama's intervention. Especially Jiraiya, who was animated scribbling into his notepad. Kiba kept his head bowed and his hands flat on the ground as he responded, yes, Kurama-sensei. He stood up and bowed, together with Akamaru, to Samui. I apologize for my rudeness, Samui-san. Let us have a good fight. Samui nodded with a perfect mask of indifference on her face. She was so turned on by Kurama's display that it crowded out the anger at Kiba's words. She shifted slightly deeper into her athletic stance and spoke coldly. You are forgiven. Let us fight. As the two squared off, Kurama watched with arms crossed. He was suppressing his anger while dealing with the two yahoos in his seal that were still laughing at the situation. Despite the fact that it was a diplomatic engagement, Kurama was still extremely possessive of his mates. He was surprised to realize that he had counted Samui among that bunch. Maybe not entirely, but the concept of her being his did not upset him, not even in the slightest. Kiba had used the Inuzuka style, all fours jutsu to transform himself into his more feral and agile form. He had launched an attack without thinking and he had to pull out of it to dodge the sharpness of Samui's katana. Kiba's agility allowed him to narrowly avoid the bite of the blade. He spun into a better position and had to think about his next approach. A couple of kunai were flung with Kiba's right hand, and the left hand dipped into his satchel. As Samui was deflecting the kunai, a spherical pill was tossed to Akamaru, who jumped into the air and caught it in his mouth. As Kiba put the pill into his mouth, he was forced to duck under a horizontal slash, and he rolled forward to enter Samui's guard before the pill could fully affect him. Samui processed the young boy in her guard and her knee lashed into Kiba's chin and snapped his head back. She was forced to abandon the next attack due to a dash from Akamaru. Losing the initiative didn't sit well with her, but her kunoichi instincts guided her into the next phase of this battle. Kiba recovered and stood side by side with Akamaru. He threw out two smoke bombs to buy some time, and Kurama's sensory instincts told him that Kiba and Akamaru were repositioning. Then everyone heard Kiba cry out, Inuzuka style, man-beast clone. That was when things got tough for Samui, as she was forced to dodge and endure dual assaults of the spiraling fang from Kiba and Akamaru. Kurama could tell that Samui was giving as good as she was getting. Blue flashes of lightning jutsus combined with slight yelps from Akamaru echoed around the room despite the smoke bomb obscuring vision. Kurama counted a total of 12 separate dual assaults before the smoke finally cleared enough for everyone to see. That was when Kiba, who was bleeding slightly from multiple cuts, ordered Akamaru to use dynamic marking. The horrified look on Kurama's face combined with the groans of exasperation from the audience let Samui know she wasn't going to like what was coming. Akamaru jumped into the air and began spinning horizontally while urinating. The acrid stench of the puppy's urine filled the arena and overwhelmed Kurama's sense of smell. Despite that, the horrified and infuriated look on Samui's face is what captured Kurama's attention. The beautiful blonde kunoichi's normally stoic vision shattered and she was snarling openly at Kiba and Akamaru. Dots of acrid urine could be seen on her uniform, with one particular glistening globule seeping into the delicious depths of her cleavage. Despite that, or perhaps because of it, her blue eyes flashed furiously with a deadly iciness that terrified Kiba. Akamaru whimpered as the usually cool and indifferent kunoichi weaved through a rapid series of hand signs after sheathing her katana. "Let's go, Akamaru," Kiba said as he prepared to launch into another Gatsuga. "Whimper, yip." Akamaru replied hesitantly. Kurama sensed the gathering of chakra and knew that Kiba was not going to be able to defend against it. He didn't know if he should step in, but he did know that he didn't want to shoulder the wrath of Tsume and Hana. He watched as two spiraling tornadoes soared towards Samui, who had finished her hand signs while crackling with chakra. Kurama heard her whisper, "Storm style, shockwave." He watched in fascination as lightning and water combined as she clapped her hands before it exploded outward in a powerful display of combined chakra. A dome of hybridized chakra erupted around her and slammed into Kiba and Akamaru as they came within 5 feet. Kurama's heightened senses saw the spinning halt abruptly as the chakra shocked the pups. The forward momentum carried Kiba and Akamaru forward and the stunning effect let Samui dodge the attacks easily. As they crashed into the floor, Samui moved quickly as she drew her sword. Kurama moved quicker, which surprised the Kumo Kunoichi and many of the Genin watching on. He put himself in front of Samui and his katana's sheath stopped her sword before it could be fully pulled out of the sheath. He kept a calm and slightly pleased look on his face as his crimson eyes locked with her icy blues. He smiled softly at her and spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Winner, Samui of Kumo," Kurama said while Kiba and Akamaru whimpered behind him. He could tell that they were having serious difficulty moving their muscles. Samui released the katana's hilt and watched as Kurama's sheath easily guided her katana back into its own sheath. She smiled softly at Kurama and dipped her head in respect. She smoothed out her uniform, which was frazzled and frayed from multiple glancing blows from the Inuzuka's Gatsuga. As if a switch was flipped, she winked playfully at Kurama before spinning on her heel and walking up to the balcony. "You could have done worse than her, Rama," Naruto said with a slight bit of jealousy. Kushina snickered, "Oh, I can't wait to see how she fits into your pack. Is Grandpa Rama getting turned on by a teenage girl?" "Oh, stuff it, Shina. No matter how long I have existed, I am in the body of a teenage boy. I can't do anything about that," Kurama replied internally while trying to keep a straight face externally. Samui got to the top of the balcony, leaned over enough to expose her cleavage and winked at Kurama. She simply couldn't resist when she felt his gaze on her. After that nonsense with the Inuzuka boy, she just felt great. She felt validated as a woman, and she felt like she wanted this man's eyes on her. "Amoi of Kum and Hyuga Neji," Kurama called out reluctantly. "Holy Kami, Q, it's like they are trying to start an international incident." Kushina griped into Kurama's mind. Kurama's eyes flickered to the third Hokage, who was puffing on his pipe with his eyes in full analysis mode. He saw that Neji had closed up and closed off his emotions. He saw anger and resentment bubbling up from the surface. He locked eyes with Neji and the boy only gave him a curt nod in reply. Here's to hoping that Neji could keep himself contained better than Hinata did. Amoi was nervous as he walked down into the arena. His sensei looked nervous, Karu looked panicked and Samui looked like she was not cool. The worst case scenarios in his brain constantly showed his death and then he saw the world burning. He couldn't stop the mania, he couldn't stop the panic and he just bit through his lollipop due to his jaw clenching. "I will remind you too that you are to obey my orders at all times," Kurama said with a commanding presence that dared defiance. He then cracked a water whip and made Neji flinch. "Am I clear?" he asked deliberately. "Yes, Kurama-sensei," Neji replied with a hint of fear in his words. Amoi nodded, "Yes, Kurama-sama." "Good, now, take your starting positions," Kurama ordered while raising his hand into the air. "Fight!" Neji pressed his left hand to his right bicep and his bow appeared in his hands. Even though Amoi saw this before, he didn't have enough time to come up with a counter to the Hyuga suddenly having range. He knew that he would only win in mid-range and mid-range combat with the Hyuga was supremely dangerous. It would only take one minor misstep to let the Hyuga transition to short-range combat where he would be truly and totally fucked. Amoi started to close the distance before he was made to roll to the right by an air palm. He didn't know that the Hyuga had a ranged jutsu and he wasn't ready for the volley of 3 arrows that was now heading at him. He used the gum from the center of his sucker to create a sticky shield that stopped the arrows in place. It was an unconventional bloodline, but Amoi could manipulate sugar to a certain extent. He used that manipulation to turn the sugary gum in his mouth into a bubble that protected him. Neji narrowed his eyes at the display, but he didn't think that his opponent could continue with such a bizarre jutsu. Sure enough though, Amoi was able to make 3 more bubbles that each blocked arrows. After the third volley, Neji changed things up. He weaved through hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground as he crouched into a sprinting position. Amoe was surprised to see the Hyuga using even more jutsu, and he was trapped in between his gum and two earth walls that were now closing in on either side. Amoe saw Neji sprint towards him, so he leapt backwards before the earth walls could trap him anymore. He looked around to identify his opponent and lashed out in a horizontal slash with his sword as Neji approached his weak flank. Neji slid under the blade and lashed up with a chakra-reinforced palm at the center of the blade. The blade careened into the ceiling, and by the time it fell back down to the ground, Amoe was already out of the fight. After the first chakra palm, Neji spun while sliding and caught Amoe in his gut with an elbow. Neji spun as he rose and loaded a bunch of chakra into the strike he earned by surprising Amoe. Neji's palm collided with Amoe's diaphragm, and the Kumo shinobi could no longer attempt to breath or do anything really. Neji immediately transitioned into a 64 palm stance and began his assault. He didn't even call it out because now that he was in the fight, he didn't want Kurama to deny him the small piece of vengeance. Neji had completed 12 strikes and continued lashing out despite Kurama appearing in front of him. Kurama's hands blurred and countered each of Neji's blows. He managed to counter the final 52 blows that crashed into his palms over the next 3 seconds. He felt the anger at the boy behind him and the resentment aimed at him for intervening. Despite that, he caught Neji's wrists after the final blow and pulled the boy into a hug. He made it impossible for Neji to escape and leaned in to whisper to him. "Enough, Neji," Kurama soothed. "1 month. Give me 1 month." Neji nodded weakly into Kurama's shoulder and the tension in his body disappeared. Then, as soon as the weakness showed itself, Neji's body regained its natural composure and he backed away from Kurama. Neji was comforted by the stern, yet understanding, look in Kurama's eyes. He bowed to his sensei and turned on his heel to return to the balcony. Amoe was still gasping on the floor behind Kurama, and he was crumpled into the fetal position with Daru crouching over him. The medics were already on their way out, but once again Kurama took the initiative to heal the white-haired boy. His hands glowed gold and he concentrated on healing the blows to the gut and diaphragm. After Amoe took a full, shaky breath, Kurama handed him off to the medics. "Thank you, Kurama-san," Daru said with a small bow. Kurama didn't return the bow. Instead, he leaned into Daru and whispered, "You tell your Raikage that I offer peace. But if he puts one toe out of line, one fricking toe, Daru, then I will rain down my wrath upon him. Do I make myself clear?" Daru, a veteran of 2 shinobi wars, gulped and nodded. He was young when legendary units like the Ginkaku squad went out to fight the second Hokage. He was a teen fighting alongside I throughout the whole 3rd Shinobi War. Despite that, despite being there when Killer Bee transformed into Juki, he had never felt such power. He never felt as if death hovered over him and had him at its mercy like he currently felt. Daru nodded shakily, "Crystal." As Daru walked away, Kurama looked up to the board to see Kankuro and Shino were the next matchup. Kurama waited for the two and called the fight. Unfortunately for the Suna puppeteer, Shino's bugs were extremely sensitive to chakra. They sniffed out his play right away. Despite that, it appeared as if Shino's bugs enjoyed devouring the young puppeteer's puppet and chakra. It took the Kikaiku less than a minute to devour the chakra rich with that constructed Kankuro's puppet. At the same time, a swarm of Kikaiku were all over the wrapping that Kankuro was hidden in. The body fell to the ground limply, completely exhausted of his chakra, before Shino walked up and placed a kunai at his neck. Kurama called the fight and Shino pushed up his glasses with a dismissive hum before returning to the balcony. "That was embarrassing," Tamari said simply while dispassionately watching her brother get carted off the arena floor. Gaara growled before disappearing in a sand sunshine. He was followed shortly after by a blur that settled into an excited Lee, who was jumping up and down excitedly. Finally, the hunchbacked and bandaged Otoga Corps ninja arrived on the floor. Kurama explained the rules to the three, got nods of affirmation or a grunt of agreement and then started the fight. Lee blurred immediately and attacked Gaara, who he accurately assessed as the greater threat. Dosu did the same by raising his arm and blasting a sound wave at Gaara. 2 walls of sand halted each attempt without Gaara even needing to move. His sand lashed out in a counterattack that was easily dodged by Lee and less gracefully dodged by Dosu. The next 3 minutes of the fight followed along similar veins. After attacking Gaara, both shinobi recognized the threat he posed. Unfortunately, neither of them realized what it meant to fight against a Junchuriki. Dosu kept blasting with his gauntlet, or he would try to use it to augment his taijutsu. It was the latter method that nearly cost Dosu his life. After blocking a punch with a sand wall, Gaara's sand plugged the surgically implanted ninja tool, snaked up his arm and crushed it. Kurama saw Gaara's hand clenching into a fist and he was too late to intervene. The spray of blood and cry of agonizing pain informed him that he was much too late to save Dosu's arm. That being said, He wasn't too late to blur forward and remove Dosu from the fight. Gaara sent Sand chasing after Kurama, not wanting to be denied his kill, until he took a Konoha Senpu to the back of his head that sent him flying forward. The kick was enough to crack the innate layer of sand armor that always protected him, and it caused a variety of reactions. Tamari gasped and covered her mouth with her hands, Baki's lone visible eye widened dramatically and Kankuro gaped. While the three Suna shinobi were in disbelief, the Konoha Jinan were cheering Lee on. "That's my most youthful student." Guy cheered while thrusting his fist into the air. Kakashi's eye narrowed as he saw Gaara standing up. He could feel the explosion of chakra that was saturated with malice. "Guy, this isn't over yet. That boy is not normal." Guy mellowed out quickly and squinted his eyes to look down into the arena. "What is this feeling?" "I don't like this, sensei," Jiraiya whispered into Hiruzen's ear. "That boy is unstable." Hiruzen nodded and nibbled on the end of his pipe. "Indeed, that boy is the Jinchuriki of the Ichibi no Shukaku. I don't think that he would let it out here though. And we can't afford for Kurama to show his cards this early," Jiraiya said nervously. "He won't," Hiruzen replied dismissively. "He won't need to. Take them off, Lee," Guy shouted, and Lee proceeded to retreat to the head of Hashirama's statue to undo the weight and resistance seals. Kurama groaned, "Guy." The Jonin looked down at Kurama sheepishly. They were supposed to be off this whole time. Lee and Guy looked at their feet, not wanting to meet the disappointed sensei's eyes. Lee was touching his two-pointer fingers together. He was barely able to undo the seals in time to dodge a volley of sand shuriken that shredded the visage of Hashirama. Lee jumped down and continued the fight with gusto. His speed without the restrictive seals was somewhere between twice or three times as fast. This made Lee a blur to most, and only the automatic defense of Gaara kept him in the fight. With each blow his sand blocked, the insanity drew closer and closer to the surface. With each miss, Gaara started growling louder and louder. Finally, Lee was about to unleash the inner gates as his last resort. Kurama glared at the pleading eyes of Might Guy and relented. 2. He called out to Lee, who understood the limitation that was just imposed upon him. Lee nodded and shouted, "Yes, Kurama-sensei." "Gate of opening." "Open," Lee shouted with crossed arms and bent legs. A minor explosion of chakra preceded a light green sheen encompassing Lee's body. "Gate of healing." "Open," Lee shouted, and the chakra took a bluer, more of a teal tinge to it. Lee proceeded to whoop Gaara up, down and around the arena, much to the amazement of the Jinan watching. Sasuke's Sharingan was activated, Neji and Hinata's Byakugan were on, the sensei were each leaning forward to track the green blur, and the other Jinan were trying to keep up. Finally, Lee was able to make a decisive move. Lee appeared under Gaara and lashed upwards in a vertical kick. He caught Gaara under the chin and sent him soaring into the air. He appeared behind Gaara and wrapped him up in the bandages that usually protected his hands. He began spinning violently with his package until he released him at the last minute. Gaara's body cratered into the ground and a dust cloud covered the arena. Lee was panting heavily and dealing with the recoil of the technique that he just used. The front lotus into the reverse lotus put an extremely high demand on Lee's young body. The fact that Lee could even perform the reverse lotus with only 2 gates open was amazing. That being said, it was all Lee could do after such a prolonged fight. Sadly, Kurama knew that it wasn't enough, and the rest of the arena knew it too. A couple seconds later, an explosion of yokai, which is tailed beast chakra, surged through the arena. Kurama stepped forward. Rock Lee is no longer able to continue. The winner is Subaku no Gaara of Tsunagakure. "No!" An insane voice shouted before a thick arm made of sand lashed out at Lee. Kurama blurred into motion and was able to deal with the sand easily. He simply pulled on the water in the atmosphere and used a water-style, water trumpet. The sand fell to the ground limply as water saturated it. Then, Kurama's water trumpet won out and splashed into the face of Gaara. The insane kid was not ready for a mouthful of water, and it only served to enrage him further. Kurama blurred forward and got up close and personal with Gaara. He made it behind Gaara's defense and then placed his hand on Gaara's shoulder. The direct contact allowed Kurama to forcibly enter the shoddy mindscape of Gaara and Shukaku. So, while the rest of the room watched 2 people stand together in a frozen state, Kurama got to have some fun within Gaara's seal. "What are you doing here, Kyubi?" A shrill voice shrieked as the ground rumbled from a giant sand tanuki with cursed markings running the length of its body forming out of the sandy dunes. Naruto growled with a maniacal grin on his foxy snout, "Well, hello, big brother." Naruto blurred forward and lashed out with 2 tails at the same time. The sand tanuki blocked one of Naruto's tails, but the other one crashed down upon his back and made the tanuki collapse onto the sandy dunes. Naruto then hopped back and yipped in laughter at the dumbstruck look on Shukaku's face. Kurama. What is going on? Shukaku screeched, which made Gaara grab his head in pain. Kurama jumped onto Naruto's snout. Because Naruto was still growing, Shukaku was a similar size to the juvenile kitsune. I guess that you could say a lot has happened, brother. What is going on? Where is mother? Gaara said while clasping his head in pain. Kurama disappeared in a blur and looked Gaara in the eye with his Sharingan. Sleep. That stopped the insane yelling or a tortured child. The sand caught Gaara, and the boy settled onto the dunes silently. You just freed me. Shukaku shrieked in glee before confusion settled upon the Tanuki's visage. What have you done? Why can't I take over? Naruto stepped forward and growled menacingly, You are going to listen to me, Shukaku. You are going to calm down, stop yelling and listen. Am I clear? Shukaku's beady eyes constricted as he processed the primal fear from a being that used to be his older brother. Despite that, he could feel the difference in power and knew that it would probably be better to submit. That being said, Shukaku had been insane for quite some time, and when the voice of the priest entered his mind, he shrieked loudly and attacked. An impromptu sandstorm began lashing out at Kurama and Naruto. Kurama spoke quickly to Naruto before he disappeared from the fight. Naruto then rose to the challenge and formed 9 blades of wind chakra on his tails. 9 translucent blades the size of Gamabunta's sword tore through the sandstorm and slammed into Shukaku's side. The Ichibi no Shukaku was many things. It was tough, stubborn, resilient, defensive, territorial, and it could heal by using sand. That being said, Shukaku was not a highly mobile entity. The weight of his body was greater than any of his brethren despite his status as the one-tailed Tanuki. So, 9 wind blades crashed into his being and diced him up pretty good. The result was Shukaku shrieking in pain while sand fell to the ground through massive gaps in his being. Naruto felt guilty for that, but the sandstorm subsided. Naruto ran forward, lashed out at the sand walls that were forming with his front claws, and then he hovered with his maw gaping over Shukaku's throat. He pinned Shukaku's legs down with his own legs, and Shukaku's tail was wrapped up in his own tail. It wasn't until the beady, golden eyes of Shukaku locked onto the slitted blue orbs that the Tanuki stilled itself. What happened to you, brother? Shukaku asked in a whisper. Naruto yipped in remorse before he lapped out with his tongue and licked Shukaku's face. I am Naruto. It is nice to meet you, Shuka. Naruto was interrupted by a shrill voice echoing around the mindscape. He saw Kurama appear out of a distant cave with a man in priest robes wrapped up in wooden bindings. Kurama marched the man forward as both Bijou watched on in curiosity. He set the man down in front of Shukaku and growled at him. You have let this man share your seal, brother? Kurama sneered condescendingly. Shukaku, who was still laid up on his back, nodded sadly. I cannot rid myself of that insane priest. He has driven me crazy over the past century. And why did you call me brother? Kit, Kurama addressed Naruto because he didn't have time to deal with his insane brother. Devour this fool and cleanse him with your chakra. Then my little brother should be far easier to deal with. Do I have to? Naruto asked nervously. Yes, Kit. Devour him and cleanse him. Do it for me, please, Kurama said. Naruto moaned pitifully before he opened his jaws to reveal rows of sharpened teeth. He crunched down on the man, chewed a couple of times while screams escaped his mouth, and then swallowed. He focused his chakra and purged the being from his body, and the mindscape went silent. Shukaku watched on in confusion for a full minute before he finally lost his patience. Will somebody tell me what in father's name is going on? Kurama turned to Shukaku, and the Tanuki stilled when he saw the blood-red irises of his brother transition into the Sharingan. Kurama then transferred the relevant memories into Shukaku's chakra, and he let the Tanuki process things. He hopped up on Naruto's snout and pet his Kit. You did good, Kit. Really good. Naruto yipped in happiness. Thanks, Papa Rama. That was yucky. Kurama belted out a laugh. Ah ha ha, oh ho ho, I know, Kit. Evil tastes that way, but it will be your job to cleanse taint like that from this world. How? Shukaku asked weakly. How are you free? Kurama turned to look his brother in the eyes. I don't know, Shukaku. I don't know the specifics, but if you are willing to work with us, then I will promise you freedom. What do you mean? Shukaku asked before rolling up onto his haunches. I mean that now that I am human, I will free my brothers and sisters. I will create a world that will never allow you to be subjugated and imprisoned again. Then, when my job is done, my Kit will take over. Kurama answered resolutely. You would free me? Shukaku asked in disbelief. Of course, little brother, Kurama answered with a grin. And you will be one of the first, although I don't know how yet. What do you mean? Kill this human and set me free. Shukaku shrieked. Kurama shook his head. If I did that right now, then you would be caught again and imprisoned. The world isn't ready yet and I don't know how to truly free you yet. Lies. Shukaku shrieked before he backed down due to the growling and flailing tails coming from Naruto. Shukaku sighed and spoke more humbly. Fine, then how long must I wait? I should be able to develop father's eyes. That was the potential that this body was born with. Kurama answered. And you stole it. Well done, brother, Shukaku said gleefully. Kurama growled and his chakra flared. No. This strong statement subdued Shukaku once more. It was an accident. It was a twist of fate or some whim of the gods. There is not a single day that I don't wish that I could free my kit. You keep saying your kit. Shukaku trailed off. That's me, Naruto said proudly. I am Naruto Uzumaki Senju Uchiha, the new Kyuubi no Kitsune and kit of Kurama, son of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Senju. Oh, Shukaku said before staring blankly at Naruto. Suddenly, the look on Shukaku's face changed and he began dancing. The ground shook under his awkward victory dance. Yes. 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 I am no longer the youngest. Yes. I have an Ototo. Kurama watched on in amusement before he facepalmed himself. Shu, please stop. Please. Just stop. You're embarrassing me. Shukaku lunged forward and slung a sandy arm over Naruto's shoulder. Don't worry, Ototo. Once we are free, I will show you the ropes. I know all of the best sandy dunes and comfy caves. I even know how to peek on all of the lovely women. I mean, sure, they are human, but you get used to them in time. Kurama formed 9 chakra chains that stopped and flailed just in front of Shukaku's face. This got the Tanuki's attention. Look, little brother, time moves slower in here but it doesn't stop. For the time being, just attack Konoha as planned. Give the kid a break and attack the stupid village. Do some damage, cause some chaos and I will fight you off. If you want a real fight, then I will give you a real fight. But when I win, you submit. You want me to attack your village? Shukaku asked in confusion. Yup, Naruto yipped. Don't do too much damage, but it is part of the plan. Trust me, little brother. Trust me and don't tell your container of this. When the battle is over, I will bring you in on the plan, Kurama said while peering into Shukaku's eyes. Can you do that for me? Lay low for a bit and then unleash some destruction? Yeah, I can do that. I look forward to our fight, Kurama, Shukaku said with a maniacal grin and a glint in his beady eyes. Naruto held out a paw. It was nice to meet you, big brother. Let's have another good fight and then we can help Papa Rama take over the world. Shukaku cackled insanely before a sand paw slammed into Naruto's kitsune fist. Let's do it, Ototo. In the outside world, Gaara's body collapsed into Kurama's chest. Only 5 seconds had passed in tension, but the room was already in motion. Baki was being restrained by Anbu and the Hokage was standing behind Kurama. Kurama caught the limp body and turned around to address Hiruzen. It is okay, Hokage-sama, Kurama said loudly enough to be heard. It was just his final, desperate attack before his body gave out. Hiruzen nodded hesitantly. Very well, Kurama. Thank you for intervening in a timely and gentle manner. Kurama nodded and looked up at Baki. Let him go. Baki-sensei, collect your charge and return to your hotel. You will be notified of his matchup and the order in which he will fight. Baki nodded down to Kurama and sighed in relief when the Anbu removed their tantos from his neck. He jumped down into the arena and hesitantly collected Gaara's limp form. He gave Kurama a wary look before he walked out of the arena. Kurama let his chakra disperse and his body relaxed before he called for the contestants. No way, there is no way. Kankuro was murmuring under his breath while his sister was white-knuckled and wide-eyed from what just happened. There is no way, Tamari. Shh, Tamari shushed him. Not here, Kankuro snapped out of his muttering and looked at her with shaky eyes. How did that, kid, how did he stop Shukaku from coming out? How is Gaara sleeping? Shh, Tamari hissed and pulled her brother in. I don't know. But I do know that this isn't the place to talk about it. Let's go get our matchups before we go find Baki-sensei. Tamari pushed Kankuro away from herself and jumped down into the arena with the other winners. She suppressed her shaking and firmed her resolve to get through this crazy night. When she looked into the powerful, crimson eyes of Kurama, she shook violently. He knew. And he knew that she knew. This wasn't good. Okay, so you all are going to draw numbers. With the number of contestants reduced, you will have 1 month to prepare for your matchups in the finals. 3 wins would make you the champion of these Chunin exams. Any questions? Is the champion the only one who can be promoted? Shikamaru asked. Kurama shook his head. No, you will be evaluated on your performance and the cage will select Chunin. You could lose in the first round and still earn a promotion. So, use this month to prepare and we will see you for the finals. Sensei? Why is there a 1-month break? Hinata asked and Neji's eyes widened. Kurama's promise of 1 month made more sense to him now. Kurama shrugged, these exams are about publicity and showing off for the nobles that hire us. They need warning and time to get here. So, use that time to prepare yourselves. Now, scram. They all drew numbers and got their matchups without too much happening. After that, the Jinan linked up with their Jonin sensei and went to gather their wounded before they retreated to their homes. Kurama still had something to do, so he blew off Jiraiya and appeared in a sunshine next to Samui and Daru. The two looked at him confused, but their faces eased when he spoke. I offered you room, board and an area to train. I figured that I could escort you to my home, Kurama said in a charming manner that made Samui blush and Daru relax slightly. Daru nodded and yawned, that would be appreciated. It has been a long day. Before we do that though, I must collect. Those two wills be taken to Konoha Hospital. The gentle fist isn't so gentle, and I am only a decent medic. I couldn't heal all of the damage. Kurama answered apologetically after cutting Daru off. Daru sighed, that's bothersome. Kurama shrugged, why don't you get a good night's rest at my place? The medics won't allow them to wake up until tomorrow. Daru shook his head, take Samui with you. I will head to the hospital and watch over them. Sensei. Samui protested. Daru held up his hand, get acquainted with your fiancé. You can come to the hospital first thing in the morning, and they probably won't even be awake yet. Samui blushed and looked down at her feet. Of course, she had her mission and the sooner she completed it, the better. Yes, sensei. Kurama offered an understanding smile, don't worry, Samui-chan, I am an early riser. Come and get some rest then you can wallow away in the hospital. Kurama shivered visibly. Bleh, I hate that Kami-damned place. Fine, Samui said weakly before following Kurama out of the central tower. Exam intermission, wow, you live here? Samui asked while looking around the humble, yet elegant, home that Kurama's parents left him. Kurama shrugged, it ain't much, but it's home. Mai, you here? Mai? Samui asked. That's me, Mai's sensual, quiet voice entered their ears as she rounded the corner in a bathing robe. I was about to hop in the hot tub, I don't suppose you two want to join? Didn't bring a bathing suit. Samui answered. Mai shrugged and took Samui's hand, we need to get to know each other, and I am sure I have something that can fit around that magnificent bust. Rama-kun, we will be down in a minute. Why don't you grab a beer and relax? She pulled a blushing, stammering Samui up the steps. Kurama chuckled ruefully before opening the fridge and grabbing a beer, sure thing, Mai. Before collapsing down onto the couch, a wood clone formed out of his back, and it disappeared. The clone arrived outside of the Inuzuka compound, and it could already sense the presence of his boss's 3 lovers. The clone knew what the women would want, so it divided its chakra and 3 Narutos went to the back porch of Tsume's home. Took you long enough, Hana pouted as a Kurama clone picked her up, took her seat and then placed her on his lap. Tsume growled, pulled her clone into a kiss and then slapped it. Does that mean you are the real one? The clone shrugged, I told you that you will never know. What was the slap for though? It was for my son, Mikado said before standing up, slapping her clone in the face and then pulling it into a hug. Human women are crazy. The clone muttered and rubbed out the handprint on its cheek. Tsume laughed loudly, you know it. So, how did things go? The clone under Hana sighed, other than the Hyugas being matched up with the Kumo kids and the Ichibi Jinchuriki nearly losing his shit, now bad. Hinata and Neji fought Kumo Jinan? Mikoto asked in concern. Her clone nodded, yeah, and I had to stop both of them from killing their opponents. I truly saw a different side of Hinata today. Tsume whistled, well I'll be damned, I didn't think the little princess had it in her. Tsume's clone nibbled on her neck and earned a snogging session, which left the other 4 to talk. Hana took over, so, what's the plan? It's better if you don't know. For now, I have to play host to the Kumo team and Mai already has her claws in Samui. The clone under Mikado chuckled. What do you mean? Isn't Mai just your roommate? Mikoto asked. Her clone chuckled awkwardly, sigh, Mai was my childhood partner en route. She was appointed as mine by Danzo and she was my training partner. Training in what? Hana asked after catching the nervous slip. All 3 Kurama clones sighed, she was my partner in everything, even in jutsu training. If Mistress Mel didn't break me in, then it would have been Mai. So, she is your lover? Mikoto asked, not liking where this conversation was going. How many of us are there going to be, Rama? Sume challenged. And why are we just now hearing about it? Hana added. The Kurama clones sighed before they firmed their resolves. Look, ladies, we can take care of you. Sadly, I was raised to use my status and sexuality for the benefit of the plan. Danzo plans on using that as much as is reasonable to secure alliances and cement our future. Then why do you need us? Mikoto asked meekly. Her clone pulled her in tight, despite her resistance, because you were the ones I chose for myself. I chose to love you, which I doubt you will ever know how much that means. Sume's growl faded at that, and for some unknown reason, I love you, but we need to be brought in on this process. You can't just keep dropping women on us and expect us to be okay with it. All clones nodded, agreed. Mai was a young love that formed out of unusual circumstances. Unusual? Hana jibed. You mean even a former bijou thinks it's weird for old men to determine mates? Kurama chuckled, it was weird. That being said, I went through a lot with Mai. Root life wasn't easy and it still isn't. Finding something to ground you in that life is necessary and Mai grounded me. She loved me despite my lack of humanity. She has loved me enough to respect you three, despite how much it has hurt her. What do you mean? Mikoto asked. She was always a sucker for those in pain. She was also a sucker for a genuine romance. I mean that Mai hasn't been with me since I started courting you three, the clone under Mikoto answered. She respects me and the three of you enough to deny herself. Sume nodded in appreciation. I think we need to talk to this girl. I already like her, Hana sighed. So, any other lovers in your closet? Nope, Kurama said happily. Only the Kumo girl staying at my house. Although, she is technically a fiancé. What do you mean technically? Mikoto asked. Were those not the terms of the agreement? Kurama chuckled. Oh, they were. But as with everything Kumo, there is more to it. Let's just say that the real me will never sleep in the same room as that lovely young lady. If I woke up to her pleasuring me, it would be more likely that she is collecting samples than selflessly loving me. So, she is on a seduction mission? Sume growled. Kurama nodded, indeed. Don't get me wrong, she is honestly attracted to me, and she is conflicted about it, but she is on a mission. So, what are you going to do? Hana asked. Well, I can't raise flags and let them know that I am onto them. You three know about my trip to Kumo coming up. You know what that means. She will be my alibi, and she is the reason that I need to ask your understanding. Our understanding? Hana challenged. Kurama nodded. She is on a seduction mission, and I want a clone to be seduced. I want her to believe that it is working. You know that my clones don't carry my seed, no matter how much it feels like it. Sume giggled perversely. Yeah. When they splooge inside, it feels amazing. Mikoto blushed but nodded. I agree, but back to the point. You want a clone to sleep with her? Kurama nodded. I am about to piss the rakeage off to the point of insanity. Assuming I can do it without leaving clues, he will immediately suspect us. Despite that, it is not like he can lodge a formal complaint about the Hyuga girl he kidnapped going missing. Hana questioned, then why sleep with the Kumo bimbo? It's a good alibi, Mikoto said sadly. In fact, it is the perfect alibi. The girl reports that she is succeeding in her mission and the Raikage thinks that he will get a kid from Kurama. It will also temper the hot-blooded Raikage's reaction, Kurama added. He will suspect us, but there should be no proof. So, when he comes and checks things out here, he will talk to Daru and Samui. Neither of them knows about my Makuten nor do they know about my wood clones. The Raikage will hear that his little ploy is working and that will cushion the blow. Sume sighed. Just a clone? Just a clone, the three answered. And you will treat her respectfully? Mikoto asked. A true gentleman, Mikoto's Kurama answered. That girl deserves at least that much. She didn't come out and say it, but I will bet my tails that she has been sexually abused. As has Yugito. Gah, Sume roared. And here I thought that I couldn't hate Kumo even more. And there it is, Mikoto said ruefully, which made the others look at her. Our Rama-kun can't ignore someone in pain. He is a sucker for a tragic past. Hana saw where Mikoto was going and nodded along. Indeed. I'll bet one of the triplets that he turns this Kumo Kunoichi. She will be truly head over heels for him. Okay, Kurama said while holding up his hands. I don't plan on it, ladies. It is true that I want to be nice to her, but the rest is up in the air. Unless I feel her sincerity, it will never be more than an act from me. Sume raised her glass. Well, I propose a new rule. A new rule? Mikoto asked with her wine glass raised. Sume nodded with a lustful smirk. For every girl this baka adds to our family, He has to bend us over and make us submit. This makes 5? 6, Mikado replied saucily. You, Hana, me, Tsunami, Mai and now this Samui. So, Rama, I won't forgive you until you make me howl 6 times, Sume said through a predatory grin. I want double that, Hana whispered into her clone's ear. Mikado pulled her clone in, licked its ear and said, if you stop at 6, I will trap you into that Tsukiyomi and Mommy will get hers. Each clone looked at the other before a single thought reverberated through their minds, I love being the boss's clone. As the wood clones were laying into Kurama's mates, Samui and Mai were relaxing back in the hot tub with the genuine article. Kushina was in a separate room watching the show Kurama's clones were putting on and Naruto was paying attention to the conversation with Mai and Samui. When memories from the clones came through, Kurama prepared himself mentally for what was to come. He had no aversion to seducing Samui, nor did he have any issues reconnecting with Mai. Mai was a truly beautiful girl. She wore a light brown bikini that contrasted nicely with her milky white skin. Her pale skin was a natural side effect of working for Root since not even the underground UV light could compensate for spending most of her life in full uniform underground. Mai's muscles were toned and her mid-C cup bust filled out the bathing suit nicely. Samui managed to stuff her sizable bust into a blue bikini top. She sank below the water to obscure her nearly perfect body, but her breasts sensually crested at the top of the bubbling water. Her eyes shimmered in uncertainty and a bit of anxiety thanks to the sensual tension. She really wasn't expecting to spend a night with a girl that was already bonded with Kurama. So, Samui, how are you liking Konoha? Kurama asked to break the ice. Samui looked at Kurama with a bit of dubiousness, other than being in a hostile environment where most ninja want to kill me and my friends? Kurama shrugged, Rome wasn't built in a day, and hostile feelings can't just disappear overnight. That is why our arrangement is so important. It is the first step towards resolving those feelings. Samui nodded sheepishly, well, it's cool when you put it that way, Mai giggled and sidled over to Kurama's side. She cuddled in and laid her head on his left shoulder, it is cool. She then turned to Kurama and whispered, so, Kurama, what did they say? Kurama grinned foxily down at Mai, they approved. Mai was normally a stoic, professional, badass kunoichi. That being said, she couldn't contain her excitement, and she squealed excitedly and hugged Kurama. Kurama returned the embrace and turned to see that Samui was blushing. He whispered into Mai's ear and the little lady separated from him. He hopped out of the tub to go get some drinks after a wink to Samui. What was that about? Samui asked shyly. Mai grinned and turned to Samui, well, Rama and I grew up together. I can't tell you much about that, but I can tell you that we are very close. He requested approval for our relationship, which had been on hold due to, well, you. Oh, Samui said before sinking further into the hot tub. Mai grinned, oh, don't worry, sweetie. Trust me when I say that I won't get in between you two. How? Samui asked dubiously, not sure how she should feel about this. Mai giggled like a true nymphomaniac, a side that she normally kept hidden. Well, let's just say that Rama has his ways. He was raised being told that he would need to partake in the CRA. Danzo-sama was rather insistent about that bit. So? Samui asked, trying to wrap her mind around that. So, he developed a technique that will help him keep us all happy, Mai said with a grin as 2 Kuramas walked out of the back door holding a bottle of sake apiece along with 2 saucers. Oh, Samui murmured before her face turned a brilliant shade of red. Kurama chuckled, don't worry, Samui-chan. I just wanted a chance to get to know you while taking care of Mai. The other Kurama offered a hand to Mai, who squealed excitedly as he pulled her out of the hot tub. The two disappeared into the house before the clone settled into the hot tub next to Samui. He offered her a sake saucer before sipping on his own. They sat in an awkward silence before Kurama polished off his 3rd saucer of sake and turned to Samui. He looked the young woman in her eyes. He watched the blush creep onto her face as crimson locked with icy blue. He smiled softly at her and said, please trust me and turn around. Then, just relax and enjoy. Samui raised a blonde eyebrow in challenge, what are you going to do? Kurama shrugged and grinned playfully, something you will like. Just trust me, Samui relented and turned around in the hot tub. She felt Kurama's hands on her shoulders, and she felt his thumbs begin moving in a rhythmic, calming fashion. Then chakra started infusing her muscles and forcing them to relax as Kurama got into his rhythm. Samui had never felt such a welcome relief from her ever-present back pain. She started moaning contentedly before she slacked over the edge of the hot tub. Kurama easily guided Samui to the edge of the tub and he realized the very moment that she became putty in his hands. The clone had its mission, and it knew what it needed to do. It even admitted to itself that it would greatly enjoy its task, even if it were slightly deceptive. That being said, that small feeling of guilt was immediately vanquished by the knowledge that Samui was likely on a seduction mission herself. Kurama worked his thumbs and hands in a well-practiced pattern. It didn't take long for the massage to migrate from the shoulders to the middle and lower back. Kurama fought against the strap of the bikini for a couple minutes before Samui released the clasp herself. Rather than turn around, Samui sank back onto the side of the tub and enjoyed the rub. She moaned contentedly when Kurama's hands traced her bust and teased her into a state of arousal. Kurama contented himself with teasing her breasts before he descended lower onto her back. These downward strokes almost always ended by tracing Samui's shapely ass and turning her on bit by bit. Kurama continued this until Samui's body tightened, then quivered and then slacked. He smirked to himself and continued the massage as if nothing happened. Samui was horrified, or was she turned on? She just came in front of a man she met less than a week ago. That being said, she didn't have the will to resist any longer. She was reluctant to accept a seduction mission, and she was more than a little hesitant to get pregnant and betray the contract. However, after that massage and after seeing his body, she no longer wanted to resist. Samui spun around and locked eyes with Kurama with her front laid bare to him. She was pleased to see the way that his eyes were dragged downwards, and she licked her lips lustfully before aggressing on him. She pushed him gently back to the other side of the hot tub and climbed upon his lap. When she settled on him, she felt the full size of his blessing and knew that this mission would feel good. She crashed her lips into his with minimal hesitation and began an intense make-out session. The Kurama clone broke the kiss after a minute and looked up into her blue eyes that had thawed out, thanks to her lustful passion. He smiled softly at her and asked, "Are you sure that you want to do this?" Samui shrugged casually, which made her chest bounce in a distracting fashion. "If you win, I am your wife. If you lose without dying, I am your wife. So, the way I see it, I am your wife. Why delay the benefits if our future is decided?" The Kurama clone chuckled huskily, "Makes enough sense to me. And you're not bothered with sharing me?" Samui shrugged again and leaned in for a kiss. "If you can treat me like this, then I don't see a problem with it." In truth, Samui didn't like the thought of sharing, but it was just the reality of the situation. Her rakeage gave her a difficult mission that could only be accomplished by going along to get along. She knew that a part of that was sharing him, at least for the time being. Kurama's clone growled huskily into her ear, "Oh, I can take care of you, Samui-chan. And I will take great pleasure in doing so." And so, Kurama's clone enjoyed completing its mission and Samui truly enjoyed her given assignment. Yes, she could commit to riding this stud for as many times as it took for Seed to take. She only hoped that it wouldn't take too quickly now. For the first time since her abusive, dickhead of a father abused her, Samui actually enjoyed the feeling of a man's touch. Operation Rapunzel, Part 1. As Kurama traveled the expanse between Kumagakure and Kanahagakure, he thought back on the last 2 days while placing a Hiraishin kunai every couple kilometers. He had 200 kunai made for this mission alone and he intended on using them. He placed each kunai high up in the trees or in some sort of cover that would give him the second he needed to collect his bearings. So, with the most recent kunai placed, Kurama reflected upon the situation he left behind in the village. Sume, Mikoto and Hana were playing nicely with Samui. They weren't pleased to discover that Kurama's clone had taken liberties, but they were comforted by the fact that Samui only got one clone for each night. The real Kurama spent his nights in bed with Sume and Mikoto or Hana herself. That made Kurama think about the unique relationship between the two future matriarchs of his clan. Sume was fierce, sensual, passionate and surprisingly attentive. She had submitted to Kurama in her entirety and that seemed to mellow her out a bit, at least by Inazuma standards. Sume had thrown herself into a sort of partnership with Mikoto and was more than eager to partake of the finer sex. Mikoto was reluctant at first. She was so sexually repressed for most of her life that it was all a bit overwhelming, especially when Sume was involved. Despite that, or perhaps because of it, Mikoto felt comfortable with herself around Sume. She even started to like Sume, and it didn't take long for her to initiate a kiss with Sume. She hadn't kissed another female since the days that she used to fool around with Kushina, a secret that she enjoyed teasing Kurama with. Last night, both mature women jumped his bones. He made sure that he fucked them both into submission since he would be gone for the next couple of weeks. He felt guilty about leaving them alone, especially when Samui would get to have her time with his clone. That was a tough pill for the two to swallow, but they relented when he promised to make it up to them. Then, along came Samui. They both had their ulterior motivations, but both of them were actually enjoying the excuse to bond with one another. Funnily enough, for the 2 days, that Meant checking on the Kumo shinobi in the hospital before training for a little bit. Each training session ended with Samui's eyes rolling into the back of her head in various forms of undress. It turned out that even Kurama could appreciate the 15 sessions over the 2-day period, despite all of the nonsense that was hidden behind it. Kurama could tell that Daru was watching him. He could also tell that Daru was spurring Samui forward, even though it wasn't needed. The Kumo-sensei could always be sensed on the fringes of the training ground, or he would be in a separate room at night. Kurama could tell that he cared for Samui, which was nice, but he was also taking notes for the Reikage. It wasn't hard to tell that Daru was left behind for this express purpose. The wood clone was able to sustain itself with Senjutsu chakra and maintain its deception of the Kumo shinobi. They could hardly be blamed for being deceived. After all, how many shinobi could maintain a clone for weeks at a time? The answer? Probably only Hashirama, but there were no notes in his journal about him doing so. Kurama ducked into the shadows on the border and watched the patrols that scanned the passage. The area between the Land of Fire and the Land of Lightning was extremely treacherous and mountainous. That left Raijin Pass, which was a mile-long bridge that spanned 2 mountains. The bridge was constantly guarded by shinobi and samurai from the Lands of Lightning and Fire, which made it nearly impossible to cross unnoticed. That left the alternate route or the roundabout way through the Hoshigakure or the Land of Frost. Both roundabout options would add days to Kurama's travel time, which wasn't acceptable. Thus, Kurama was attempting to navigate the steep mountain slopes and hazardous terrain. It wasn't uncommon, and the route shinobi had actually figured out a way through the border. No surprises there. Kurama used his increased night vision to maneuver down the slope without drawing attention to himself. The small path that his fellow route members used wasn't exactly safe, and he was maintaining a cloaking jutsu to make sure that he could not be detected. He finally made it to the bottom of the canyon at 2 a.m. and then used the next 3 hours to climb up the Kumo side of the slope. Kurama tucked into a cave just inside the Land of Lightning to get some rest and to allow the sun to set. It was standard procedure for route to travel by night when conducting black ops with an extremely high risk, and this was most definitely one of those ops. So, Kurama placed some basic alarm seals and closed his eyes to get some rest. Kurama's eyes snapped open a couple hours later. He didn't know what time it was or how much sleep he had gotten. He couldn't see the sun or do anything else to get a point of reference. Nor did he care to do so. No, the only thing he cared about was the vibrating seal in his glove that informed him that somebody had activated his alarm wards. Kurama kipped up silently, activated his cloaking jutsu and prepared himself for combat. "Are you sure that someone crossed the border?" The voice of a Bolt shinobi echoed around the cave. Footsteps filled the silence before the Bolt commander replied, "That is what was reported. Someone crossed the border on the Land of Frost 2 days ago and we were ordered to be on high alert." "Who would come through that border?" a third voice asked. "Don't know. Command didn't feel like sharing that information. We were just ordered to complete full patrols." The commander replied before stopping in place. "Spread out and search this cave. That print looks like someone slept in here recently." Kurama held his breath as the guards inspected the cave. Luckily, Danzo always emphasized the importance of sleeping with all items on one's being. He knew better than most how important it was to be able to pick up and move quickly at a moment's notice. That being said, these were the Kumo equivalent of Onbu. They would be able to detect him, and he knew that it was only a matter of time. Kurama also knew the Bolt squads were always 4 people. That meant that there were the 3 Bolt shinobi here and there was one waiting somewhere outside. Then there was the fact that this cave wasn't that big. He could kill all 3 easily enough, but that would alert the 4th. What to do? What to do? "Rama, why don't you frame Iwa?" Kushina suggested while Kurama was holding his breath. "Sure, they could probably see through it, given enough time, but it would be enough misdirection to get you out of here. I am more worried about them going on high alert and locking Hanabi-chan down. I can't let the 4th member get away." Kurama thought back. "How about a distraction then?" Naruto suggested with his prankster side showing. Kurama listened to Naruto's rough plan, made some alterations and then took action. The Bolt shinobi were still scanning the cave and one of them was near the wall where Kurama was hiding. Kurama activated his Sharingan when the Bolt shinobi was within arm's reach. He locked eyes with the shinobi and immediately cast a powerful genjutsu. The Bolt shinobi turned around and shouted, "Iwa shinobi. Get him." The Bolt shinobi drew his katana and charged his commander. The man was so surprised to be attacked by his own man that he was barely able to avoid a death blow. Despite avoiding the worst of the attack, the commander was bleeding out on the floor. The 3rd Bolt shinobi blocked his comrade's attack and started fighting back. When his back was turned, Kurama appeared out of the wall and drove kunai into his back. Kurama didn't stop there. He moved quickly to slit the throat of the bolt shinobi that he had trapped in a genjutsu before he slit the throat of the commander who was bleeding out. He took the commander's uniform for himself and then had 2 wood clones steal the uniforms and henge into the other 2 bolt shinobi. He picked their pockets and cleaned out their seals to make sure that he didn't miss any intelligence. After pickpocketing the corpses, Kurama used an earth jutsu to bury the bodies. He then created a 3rd wood clone that henged into an Iwa shinobi. The clone used a genjutsu to make itself look beat up, and then Kurama walked out of the cave with the 2 bolt clones frog marching the Iwa clone. Kurama sensed the 4th member, and it didn't take long for that member to appear. "Commander, what happened?" the scout asked. Kurama growled and did his best to imitate the commander. "We found this dirtbag hiding in the cave. Send a message to command and let them know we caught an Iwa intruder." "Yes, Commander." The scout replied back. While he was writing the note, he asked, "I thought I heard you scream, gee." One of Kurama's clones answered in an ambiguous form, "He gave us a scare, but Iwa scum could never stand up against the might of Kumo." "Too true," the scout replied before letting a raven out of a scroll and attaching the message to its leg. As soon as the raven flew off, Kurama used the bolt commander's sword to deprive the scout of his head. He then dragged the body back into the cave while one of the clones collected the guy's head. Once again, he picked the pockets of the bolt scout and buried the body in evidence with an earth jutsu. He stood up and dropped the transformation of the bolt commander. He turned to face his clones, the last of whom had now taken on the visage of the scout. "Are you sure that was wise, boss?" one of the clones asked. Kurama shrugged. "It was a deviation in the plan. We will move back to Kumo after we read what we picked up from this squad. We need to at least get our identities down. I want you guys to report in with the henged clone trapped in a stasis scroll. When we get into Kumo, the clone will detonate itself with the Iwa suicide jutsu before it can be interrogated. That will allow us to get into the Raikage's tower and we can complete a side mission." "What side mission?" one of the clones asked. "We will locate Yugito Ni's mother. If we can do that, then we can get Yugito on our side and remove the leverage the Raikage has on her," Kurama replied while listening to Kushina's plan in his mind and pacing back and forth in the cave. It was actually a good plan with a moderate chance of success. It will also put the focus on Iwa rather than Konoha. Kurama stripped off the commander's uniform and handed it to one of the clones. He changed back into his uniform and created a clone to adorn the commander's uniform. He issued orders to the clones and then set off with them while hanging into a bolt shinobi. They were able to move by day now, and the 2 bolt squads they encountered didn't stop them. They simply conveyed follow-on orders from the Raikage, which was to return to Kumo immediately. Kurama split from the clones a couple of miles away from Kumo. He split off and made his way into the root safehouse, which was a small hatch that led into a bunker. He disarmed the seals and dropped into the bunker to find Sai and Shin with their weapons drawn. He offered them a cheeky smile complete with a wave. As Kakashi would say, "Yo." Shin clasped Kurama's forearm and pulled him into an embrace while Sai just stayed on the side and smiled. After exchanging greetings, Kurama got down to business. He informed the 2 of his impromptu plan, which Sai then communicated to Danzo with an ink bird. He then listened to the 2 explain what they were able to find. "The mountain you designated is heavily guarded, Rama. Sai has mice that can get in, but the security on that place is intense." Shin summarized after Sai's report. "How would you recommend infiltrating, Sai?" Kurama asked the best infiltration specialist that Root had at its disposal. Sai sank into a thinking pose and tapped his brush on his lips. "I wouldn't be able to, but I believe you could. We know where they enter and exit the facility. Only a couple of their elites even have access to the place. You would need to do what you did with your wood clones. Kill someone with access and then transform into them. You should be able to pass since your transformation is nearly undetectable. I didn't see any blood seals that would stop you from doing that. Were you able to locate where they are keeping Hanabi?" Kurama asked while nodding along. "No," Sai answered, "but I do know that she is in there. My creatures could not get past the 3rd security checkpoint without raising suspicion. Were you able to identify anyone with access to her?" Kurama changed approaches. Sai shrugged. "They are tight-lipped about her. They do not talk about her on the surface at all. That being said, I have a suggestion." "I am listening," Kurama replied. "You get as far as you can passively. Then, when you can't progress further, you just use brute force. Raise the alarms, take on the image of a golem officer or Iwa spy. Then, when you reach Hanabi, you flash her out." Sai suggested. Kurama shook his head. "That would direct Ai's wrath at Konoha. He is one of the few that fought against the 4th and lived. He would be able to recognize the flying Raijin. What about taking a more destructive approach then to cover up your footprints?" Shin suggested with a maniacal grin. Kurama nodded to him. Well, I agree that you will probably have to go loud. So, why not make a bunch of Earth clones and have them apply explosive tags around the base? The real you can find Hanabi and flash out with her. Then, you can have a clone henge into the girl and attempt to escape with her. Naturally, when you fail, you detonate the explosive tags and bring the mountain down around you, so to speak. Kurama matched Shin's grin. Brilliant. What else do they do in that mountain? A bunch of research, from what we can tell. Genetic research focused on bloodlines, supplements and other body enhancements. Their weapons facility is on a different mountain, and they also use a different mountain for their prison. So, it would pretty much be a hit on their research and development division. Sai answered. Alright, I want you two to get out of the country once you help me secure my entry. We can't leave any indication that we were here, Kurama ordered. Sai, I want a picture of my target and your suggested method of ambushing. Operation Rapunzel, Part 2. After 2 days of scoping the facility out, Kurama made his move. He followed an important-looking male researcher home, disabled his security seals and killed the man in his sleep. He stored the body in a scroll, looted the man's house and then got ready to act his part the next day. Kurama waited until 5:30 am to leave his house, which was the exact time the man left his house each day. Kurama followed the route that he saw the man use and did his best to imitate the researcher's regular routine. He stopped at the same coffee shop, ordered the same cup of coffee, grabbed the same bag of bagels that he brought into the office each day and then continued on his path. He walked past the same patrols, down into a matrix of tunnels and followed those tunnels to the first checkpoint that allowed entry into Mountain 4. He presented his badge to the guards and they scanned it without looking too closely. They all knew Ito and they allowed the man to pass without too many questions. He was stopped before he was allowed to get clear of the checkpoint though. Hey, Ito, do you have any updates on that Iwa bastard? The guard asked. Kurama turned around and shrugged, I know what everyone else know. A Bolt squad caught an Iwa shinobi sneaking around, captured him and put him in a scroll. As soon as the bastard was out of the scroll, he used some suicide jutsu. I heard that the prison guards and interrogators were still in the hospital, but not much else. Damned bastards, the other guard growled. The first guard chuckled, relax, the rakeage will have the old fence sitter's ass for that. Too true, Kurama said before turning around and offering a wave over his shoulder. Kurama listened to the guards grumbling for a while before he was out of earshot. He walked to an elevator, scanned his badge and then clicked the number 5. The elevator began moving downwards and Kurama was stopped again by the guards on the 5th floor. These guards were even more starved for information, so Kurama offered the update. His reason for doing this was simple. Ito was a high-ranking researcher in this place and Sai put together a personality profile for him. Sai suggested that Ito would be friendly and talk to those he worked with. So, Kurama did his best to imitate that. Evidently, his efforts and attention to detail weren't for naught. He was able to make it into the underground cavern that was decked out with the latest and greatest laboratory equipment. Kurama moved through the floor and finally found an office with Ito's name on it. He settled down inside and closed the door. He immediately went to work by entering Sage mode. It took him much longer to do so in the mountain, but his sensory ability would be necessary to locate Hanabi. He didn't know her chakra signature, but he was familiar with the Hyuga clan, Hyashi and Hinata. Hers should be close to theirs. Kurama finally was able to pull in enough natural energy after 10 minutes. That was 3 times longer than it normally took him. Within the safety of the office, Kurama began his dastardly plan. First, he stored as much as he could in storage scrolls. Second, he created several wood clones and gave them orders. They were going to be doing a lot of killing, so he assigned sectors that they were responsible for. These clones would also be responsible for setting the explosive tags as well, so he handed those out. Third, he created a clone team that was responsible for collecting as much data as possible. When shit started truly hitting the fan, they were ordered to flash to the rally kunai that was 5 miles away. Finally, he created a wood clone and tossed it a scroll. The scroll contained the typical uniform worn by Iwa spooks. Kurama earned those clothes by killing an Iwa spook, so it was fitting that he used it now. With all things prepared, Kurama focused on the strange chakra signature that he felt a couple of floors below. It was clear to Kurama that something had been done because it was not the chakra signature of a little girl, despite him recognizing the Hyuga elements. He sensed that. There were 5 Kumo people on that floor and he sensed that 2 of them were shinobi. He gave his clones a final look and sank into the floor. Kurama was surprised that he was able to bypass the floors with earth jutsu. There were protections against it on the surface, but not here? Why? Overconfidence? Who knew, but Kurama was grateful for the easy mode of travel. He found a safe room and created another 5 clones to create chaos, complete with a 6th clone to gather intelligence. With that done, Kurama sank into the lowest level while moving towards the Hyuga princess. "Hey man, when do you think the Raikage will let us have a piece of that girl?" "I don't know, you idiotic pedophile. Why do you ask that every day?" "Hey man, you can't blame me for asking. That girl is fine. Dude, she is 11. So what? With all those hormones, she sure doesn't look 11. You are sick. Just stay here and don't go in there. I am going to take a leak." Sure. Act like you're not going for a quick spank. "Kemi, you are sick," the Kumo shinobi said before leaving to use the restroom. Kurama agreed with that statement, and he was going to take great enjoyment in killing this sick fuck. Since he couldn't enter the room due to protective seals, Kurama realized that he would have to use this door. He appeared out of the wall and grabbed the Kumo shinobi by his throat. He turned the flailing shinobi to face him, and the shinobi stilled when he saw the Mangekyo Sharingan of Kurama and heard him whisper, "Tsukiyomi." Kurama tortured the man in the best way he knew how for such a sick fuck. He imagined up hundreds of men and had them rape him into submission. He set that on repeat and allowed the man to believe that he was raped for 72 hours straight before he was finally offered the sweet release of death. Kurama ensured the man's death with a kunai that was buried into the man's heart. With that done, it was only a matter of time until he was discovered. He moved silently to the bathroom, killed the man there while he was on the pod and moved on. At least that man didn't deserve the slow and painful death. He moved to find the remaining 3 chakra signatures on the floor and saw 3 female researchers. He was able to tell that they were studying genetics, and they were looking at documents related to ovary extraction and preservation. Normally, Kurama doesn't like killing females. That being said, these women were conducting testing on little girls, and they planned to take their eggs. Kurama moved in and killed them with no hesitation. Their knowledge couldn't be allowed to escape this mountain, and he knew that they deserved death for their many sins. The 3rd woman was able to scream, but that was irrelevant because everyone on this floor was dead. Kurama created a small horde of clones to collect and store the data. He didn't know if he wanted to hand this off, but he did know that it couldn't stay here. He also wanted to see if there was any relevant data on Hanabi. He could only imagine the kind of life that poor girl lived, and he wanted to do everything that he could to help her recover from this. Kurama turned his attention to the steel door that was his last remaining obstacle to his primary goal. He calmed down and adjusted his eyes to his kitsune vision with the help of Naruto. With Kushina's help, he was able to decipher the seals that were protecting the Hyuga girl. Sadly, entry beyond this point required a blood seal. Well, that wasn't beyond his expectations, so he prepared to do this the fun way. Kurama created a shadow clone and dispelled it to let his clones know that it was time to go wild. He then ordered his clones to set the explosive tags and turned his attention to the door. This was risky, but he knew that only his Makuten would be able to get through these doors. He weaved through the signs, channeled his chakra in a controlled fashion and grew a series of roots that dug into the sides of the door. The steel groaned as the reinforced earth fought against his jutsu. After a minute, it all gave way, and the steel door crashed to the ground and created a giant cloud of dust. Alarms blared around the underground lab and obscured the sound of rushing footsteps. Kurama was then forced to dodge as a girl with long, sleek, black hair charged at him. She attacked gracefully while she attempted to kill or incapacitate Kurama. Sadly, for her, she was no match for Kurama. Kurama knew that it would be no use talking to her in this situation. So, he didn't hold back or let her continue to attack. He locked one of her arms into his side, wrapped her in chakra chains and then placed a chakra suppression seal on the back of her neck. Once she was denied her chakra, Kurama placed a sleep seal on her forehead, and she crumpled in his chains. Kurama let the chains go, formed a wood clone to imitate Hanabi and then stripped the girl of her clothes. The clone protested mildly even as it adorned the Hyuga captive's clothes. Despite its protest, it was clear in its task. The clone hinged into Hanabi and the clone hinged into an ambiguous form made their way towards the surface. It was a journey that was always destined to fail, but it was a journey that would be sure to leave its impact on Kumagakure. Kurama took a minute to scan Hanabi's bedroom. She didn't have much and what she had was clearly controlled by Kumo. It was meant to brainwash her, make her subservient or instill some twisted sense of loyalty to Kumo. Kurama left all of it except for a well-worn teddy bear, a small baby blanket and a journal. He quickly stowed those items before the mountain began shaking. Which clones were detonating their tags early? Or was that just jutsu? Kurama looked to his clones and gave the order, "When you feel the big finale coming, light it up." "Sure thing, boss." The clones answered animatedly while they began wreaking havoc. Kurama rolled his eyes. Why did his clones revert to Naruto's childish mentality when they weren't in mission mode? He scooped Hanabi into his arms and focused on finding the small ping that was the closest Hiraishin kunai. In a flash of yellow, Kurama vanished from the underground depths of Mountain 4 and began his escape from Kumaga Core. I was in a rage as the alarms blared around the village. He was already in his lightning armor, stage 3, and he was blurring towards the sounds of explosions and combat. He skidded to a halt outside of the entrance to Mountain 4 to get a report from his bold commander. Report. Knelt and bowed his head to the wreckage. There have been very few survivors from inside the base. There have been a number of explosions and we have deployed several bolt teams into the base. Who is attacking my village, I growled. We don't know for sure, Reikage-sama, but they are using mainly earth jutsu. If we disable them, they are detonating with the suicide jutsu commonly used by Iwagakure special forces. Answered. No, I growled. Onoki wouldn't do this. He doesn't have the balls to do this. Remained bowed. Then I don't know, Reikage-sama. We have yet to capture any of the infiltrators. What of Project Blind Eye? That was the alarm seal that alerted us, Reikage-sama. Nobody has escaped the mountain though, Reikage-sama. Reported. Good, I growled as Killer Bee and Yugito Ni landed beside him. You two, be ready for a fight. Whoever did this to my village is going to die. B didn't even rap in response. He knew that the situation was far too serious for him to push his brother's buttons. Yugito remained silent and in a combat-ready stance. Within Yugito, Matatabi stirred as she realized what was going on. To think that Kurama would act so swiftly. She knew that she couldn't tell Yugito what was happening, so she rested her head on her paws and watched the show. It didn't take long for figures to emerge from the main entrance. However, when the Reikage saw what was going on, his lightning armor flared to full power in rage. The Hyuga girl was covered in explosive tags and the intruder had a number of explosive tags on his as well. There were two squads of bolt following behind the pair at a safe distance. I locked eyes with the intruder and looked into the brown eyes of the bastard that dared to ruin his plans. Who are you? I growled while holding a hand up to his shinobi. The imposter shrugged, someone you are going to let walk away if you don't want to get blown sky high. No, I growled. The intruder laughed maniacally, then I think we are at an impasse. I knew this was a suicide mission. I told that crazy fucker that this was suicide. Who sent you? Tell me that, let the girl go and I may let you live, I shouted. The intruder shook his head sadly, no, I can't do that. If I fail, then my family dies. Either you let me go, or the girl dies with me. A bolt officer was taking a position on the intruder's blind spot and I nodded discreetly at him. A kunai was thrown at high speeds from the intruder's blind spot and it nearly struck the back of his head. The intruder tilted his head to the side before he channeled chakra into the half-rat seal that he was holding with his left hand. A massive explosion rocked the entrance of Mountain 4, but what followed was far more devastating, especially for I. Explosions rang out repeatedly and the ground shook as explosive tag after explosive tag detonated. It didn't take long for the hollowed-out mountain to implode on itself. The shinobi that were still alive retreated to a safe distance and watched the collapse of Mountain 4, known at the Research and Development Division to Kumo Shinobi. I was so furious that he began lashing out with lightning-covered fists. Each punch sent a shockwave of lightning through boulder after boulder. He shattered the debris that represented the remains of decades of work. He didn't stop for over an hour until his lightning armor finally fizzled out and he collapsed to his knees in anger that gave way to despair. While the whole incident was going on, Kurama's clone, in the personage of G, the bolt captain he killed, was searching through the Reikage's office. The three clones that composed his squad were helping him after the tower emptied out in response to the alarms. The clone was digging through the Reikage's desk when he sensed someone approaching. He gave up on the search, smoothed things over and returned to the overwatch position expected of the squad. A truly beautiful woman with silver hair, a magnificent bust, and enchanting blue eyes entered the office in a hurry. She was worried about many things and didn't seem to notice the few items that were out of place. Kurama dropped down in front of her and spoke calmly. How can I help you, Mabui-san? Nobody is supposed to enter the Reikage's office when he is absent. Mabui was startled by the sudden appearance, but she relaxed slightly. Oh, gee, you scared me. There is a critical situation going on in Mountain 4 and the Reikage requested that I retrieve the summoning scroll for the Hyuga girl. Kurama's clone stepped aside with a look of concern on its face. In the corner, one of the clones dispelled silently to alert its creator of this most recent development. Very well, Mabui-san. Do you need help locating the scroll? No, thank you, Mabui said briefly before removing a key that was hidden in the valley of her breasts. She inserted it into a slot on the floor and a hidden safe emerged from the floor. She removed a summoning scroll and was then knocked unconscious by the Kurama clone. He couldn't risk the summoning scroll working. He felt sorry for Mabui, but this was the break that he was waiting for. He made a quick alteration to make the summoning scroll ineffective and then placed the summoning scroll back in Mabui's hands. Kurama then took a moment to look through the safe that was just open for him. If he took everything, then it is likely that Mabui would die. So, showing his developing humanity, the 3 Kurama clones searched through the safe rather than just ransacking the whole thing. They found a file named Yu-Gi-Do and they divided it up to read through it. What they found wasn't pleasant, but it was no worse than they expected. That being said, they copied down the relevant information and entrusted it to the clone that was acting as G. Since the clones were already a couple days old, they were too weak with the remaining chakra. They had to make it too far. So, after skimming through the documents with the Sharingan active, Kurama replaced the documents, locked the safe and returned the key to Mabui. He then absorbed the 2 remaining clones to take their chakra for his own. He would need it to join his original in his escape. The Kurama clone woke Mabui up and instantly used the Sharingan to place her in a genjutsu. She would think that she tripped and fell, but nothing else. She would take the summoning scroll to the Reikage, and he would think that the summoning failed because the Hyuga girl was dead. Win, win, win. Operation Rapunzel, Part 3, Kurama appeared in a yellow flash tucked into a rock outcropping that was a couple of miles out from Kumo. He adjusted the girl in his arms and flashed a couple more times to create some distance. He took a moment to steady himself and realized that he was carrying a naked and passed out girl in his arms. He adjusted the young girl, who looked older than her sister, and prepared himself for another flash. After that flash, he realized that his body was starting to get fatigued. He gave each of those wood clones a lot of chakra when he created them. He sighed and took cover the treetops. As he was sitting Hanabi down, he froze as a couple of days' worth of memories crashed into his brain. He got the information and sat down to process it. It didn't take him long to process the memory of the girl having a summoning seal on her body. Q. You have to get that off of her. Even if they mess with the scroll, they could fix it quickly. Kushina shouted into his mind while Naruto focused on topping off Kurama's chakra. I know, Kushina. Help me locate it and I will disable it, Kurama thought back while activating his Sharingan to inspect the young woman. This would be easier if I weren't on top of the damn trees in the dark. Calm down, Rama. We will be fine. Where would he put the seal? Probably some place that she couldn't see it. Start by looking on her back, Rama. Kushina said with a forced calm. Kurama looked and saw a series of 4 seals on Hanabi's back. He created a clone to help hold and maneuver the girl so that he could get a better look. The seals were inked on, which made them an absolute bitch to remove. That being said, Naruto's chakra would be more than powerful enough so long as Kurama had applied the counter seal. So, Kurama set to work and hoped that the delaying action his clone took would be enough to buy him time. Kushina helped him identify which seal was the summoning seal. The problem was that the summoning scroll was bound to Hanabi by blood. Even when the formula was messed with, Hanabi could be summoned because of her blood. Damned bastard Reikage and his evil fucking schemes. Kurama took a deep breath and thought about it. Rama. Kushina said sheepishly, which drew Kurama's full attention because Kushina was never sheepish. What is it, Shina? Kurama said wearily. You could simply overpower it with a more powerful mark. Kurama thought for a minute and shook his head. No way am I doing that. I have my pride in this little girl, survived a lifetime of captivity and has never known love. Goodness knows how deep the brainwashing goes and you still haven't dealt with the loyalty and other alteration seals. The way that she attacked you in the facility makes me think that she underwent some form of programming. Kushina broke it down as rationally as she could. Kurama ran a hand down his face and thought about it. If he simply injected the mark and overpowered the seals, then all he would have to do is avoid letting Hanabi reciprocate the mark. It could complicate things for a while, but it would give him the opportunity to begin the girl's recovery. Rama, Naruto spoke up sheepishly and Kurama asked him what he wanted. What if you used my chakra to do it? What if you applied a mating mark for me? Sochi. Kushina screeched. No. Kachan. She was abused and raised in the darkness like me. She deserves better. I can save her like Rama and Danzo saved me. Kurama was stunned by the thought. It was theoretically doable, especially for 3 seal masters all trapped in the same body. After a minute, he nodded to himself. All right, kid, I support you so long as your mother doesn't kill me. Do it, Kushina said resignedly. I was going to arrange a marriage for Naruto with either Mikoto or Hitomi's child anyway. This is all crazy. Kurama nodded and then called on a bit of Naruto's chakra. Rather than guide the chakra with his own consciousness, Kurama let Naruto take control. The thin sheen of yellow yokai covered Kurama's body and channeled into his lips and teeth. He felt Naruto's will supersede his own, and then he rode passenger in his own body. He saw Hanabai's thin, pale collarbone coming closer, and he could even taste her blood as Naruto applied the mating mark just below her left collarbone. Kurama was attuned enough to chakra to feel 3 of the 4 seals on Hanabai's back fall apart. He encouraged his kit to pour a little more chakra in, and he told him to guide it to the base of her spine where the final seal was. The seal glowed vibrantly before it, too, shattered and disappeared from underneath Hanabai's skin. Kurama. You gotta get out of there. A good sensor would have felt that chakra flare. Kushina said urgently into Kurama's mind, which snapped him out of his daze and spurred him into motion. Kurama flashed 8 more times and collected each kunai that he left on the trail. The 8 flashes put him inside of a root safe house, and Kurama collapsed on the bed with the still naked Hanabai. He passed out completely, despite the snickering of Kushina and Naruto at the compromising position. He slept soundly through the night, the next day and the next night. He would wake up to a completely different world. Kurama awoke in a weary mess after his great escape. He used a metric crap ton of chakra and allowing Naruto to channel his yokai strangest and Ketsu further. Despite that, Kurama awoke with a weight on his chest, and he opened his eyes to see the very naked Hanabai sleeping on his chest. He had grown accustomed to sleeping with naked women, but this was a little girl. He recoiled from her and was glad to see the sleep seal was still applied to her forehead. He ignored the snickers of Kushina and Naruto as he dressed the young girl. He looked around the small, root-safe house and found a couple of ready-to-eat meals. He prepared the meals and then carefully removed the sleep seal from Hanabai's forehead. The girl woke up slowly, but it didn't take her long to realize that she was in a strange room, and she was looking at a stranger. She looked down and saw that she was dressed in weird clothes that were much too big for her. She recoiled on the bed and curled up by the wall. She looked at Kurama over her knees, and one of her hands subconsciously went to the mating mark on her collarbone. Her eyes wavered with fear and uncertainty as she looked at Kurama. Who are you?" she whispered. Kurama offered a soft smile in return, and he pointed to the food he prepared. "For now, let's say that I am a friend. Why don't we get some food in our bellies before we have this talk?" He slowly set the tray of food down on the bed in front of Hanabai and began eating his own. "What do you mean a friend?" Hanabai asked without making a move for the food. Kurama kept eating and gestured at the food. She looked at it and cautiously took the tray. She nibbled cautiously on the bland food but never removed her gaze from Kurama. Kurama smiled and set his tray down after polishing off the rations. He waited patiently for Hanabai to finish, which didn't take long. "My name is Kurama Uzumaki. I am a friend of your father, and I am from Konoha, the village you were born in and kidnapped from." "Me? Kidnapped?" Hanabai asked dubiously. "I have always lived in Kumo." "No," Kurama answered softly. "Your name is Hanabai Hyuga, and you were taken when you were still a baby. They attacked your home on the same night that they signed a peace treaty. They killed your uncle and took you before our shinobi could stop them. For the past 10 years, your father has been searching for you, and I finally found you. Your sister, cousin and clan are all waiting for you to return." Hanabai was struggling with the new information, and she was shaking her head with tears spilling out of her lavender eyes. "Me? No way. I was raised as a special soldier for Kumo. They trained me, gave me food, and I had people come every day to prepare me." "Prepare you for what, Hanabai?" Kurama asked softly. Hanabai shook her head violently. "Why are you calling me Hanabai? My name is H. I was going to become a Kumo shinobi. Do you remember why you wanted to become a Kumo shinobi? Did they ever let you out to see the sun, Hanabai-chan?" Kurama asked softly while he heard Kushina crying within the seal. Hanabai was struggling and on the verge of overload. That was until Kurama activated his Sharingan and brought her into the seal with Naruto and Kushina. Hanabai flinched violently when Kushina embraced her in a hug, but she relaxed when Naruto's tail started rubbing her back. Kurama watched the scene with a sad smile on his face. This girl was not beyond saving, but what she had gone through was beyond mortifying. Naruto yipped sadly and rubbed his massive snout into Hanabai's cheek. The fluffy feeling of his fur seemed to enthrall her, and the feeling of Naruto's chakra made her relax substantially. She felt a calming sensation permeate her body through the mating mark that was pulsing on her collarbone. Kushina separated from the young girl and let Naruto wrap her in his tails. She watched on in amazement as the young girl threw herself into Naruto's fur and cried it out. Then, to her amazement, the mating mark on her collar glowed brilliantly and changed. She looked to Kurama, who was in the process of facepalming himself. Oh, Kami, this was going to be hard to explain to Hiashi. Kushina realized what Kurama's reaction meant and she couldn't help but let out a little giggle. Kurama saw her look up and he heard her whisper, "How do you like that, Hitomi-chan?" After a while, Hanabi broke out of the comfy embrace of Naruto's fur and she looked up into the brilliant, azure, blue eyes. Naruto cocked his head to the side to get a better view of Hanabi and he yipped happily before he licked the little girl on her face. The girl giggled and seemed to settle down. She sat down on the grassy prairie and looked up at Naruto. "Who are you and why do I feel like I know you?" she asked the kitsune. "That, Hanabi-chan, is a long story," Naruto replied. "Will you trust my partner Kurama to show you?" Hanabi looked over at the blonde man and nodded cautiously. "Will it explain why he took me?" Naruto nodded, "It will. At the end, you will understand why it feels like you know me." Hanabi nodded slowly, "Okay." Kurama placed his hands on Hanabi's forehead and just decided to trust her. He showed her the memories of Naruto's early life, the transition, growing up en route, some of his missions, returning to the light of Konoha, his time with Hinata and Neji, the conversations with her father, the mission to save her and finally Naruto using the mating mark to break the summoning contract. She was completely overwhelmed from it all and it took her a while to process things. "Are you okay, Hanabi-chan?" Kushina asked softly. "So, the fox used to be a kid and now the fox is a human? And I have a family?" Hanabi asked slowly. Kurama chuckled, "That is a pretty simple summary of things." Naruto laid down on all fours and slowly crawled towards Hanabi. The young woman leaned back into his paw and looked up his snout and into his eyes. "And you placed a mating mark on me?" Naruto nodded, "Yes, I did it to save you." "How did it save me?" She asked this question calmly, as if it didn't bother her at all. "Because it was the only way that we could think of to overwrite the summoning contract that you were bonded to by blood." Kushina answered. Hanabi turned her head to Kushina, "And you are supposed to be dead but the fourth Hokage found a way for your chakra imprint to survive inside the seal?" Kushina shrugged, "It could be worse. At least I get to spend time with my Sochi." Hanabi shrugged nonchalantly again and looked at Kurama, "And you used to be the QB. Now you are some super powerful human that is going to change the world?" "Yup, so how do you feel about that?" Kurama asked cautiously. Hanabi shrugged, "It is all a lot to take in. Can I get back to you on that?" A quiet return. "You did what?" Hiashi asked in stunned disbelief. Kurama sighed, "I destroyed their facility, saved your daughter and I found out that they had her bound to a summoning contract. So, I overwrote that contract by binding her to myself." Hiruzen frowned, "So, you used the same mark as Orochimaru?" Kurama shook his head and lied slightly. In truth, Naruto's mating mark was far more potent than anything Orochimaru could ever hope to create because it was formed with yokai. No, it is different. It is an Uzumaki binding mark. She is linked to me now. "What kind of binding mark?" Hiashi growled. "What aren't you saying?" "It is a Fuinjutsu creation typically shared between husband and wife," Danzo answered simply to cover for Kurama. "It is a miracle that it overwrote all of the control seals on her." "Husband and wife?" Hiashi said distractedly. "Husband and wife?" Hiruzen placed a hand on Hyashi's shoulder. "Now is not the time, Hiashi. What is important is that you have your daughter back." Hyashi's head snapped up and his Byakugan activated. He growled once more, "Husband and wife?" Kurama nodded, "She is bound to my chakra and I hers." "You bastard." Hiashi lunged forward with a chakra-loaded palm. Kurama was willing to take the blame, but he wasn't going to let that hit him. The amount of chakra in that palm could kill or cripple him. He dodged out of the way and the wall exploded behind him. Kurama took action and called upon his chains. He parried a couple of blows that made his hands hurt and then he created an opening that allowed him to wrap the Hyuga Patriarch up in chains. "Look, Hiashi, I didn't want to do it. I didn't choose this, but I didn't want your daughter to disappear. I didn't go through all of that to let her disappear," Kurama shouted as Anbu poured in through the hole in the Hokage's office. "All of you. Out. Now," Hiruzen shouted after realizing that the room was no longer secured. He looked to Kurama, who erected a privacy barrier that would protect the secrets being discussed. Hiashi was subdued by the chains and his chin fell into his chest. Was that the only way? Kurama wasn't going to tell him that he had the summoning contract in hand. No way was he going to admit that. So, Kurama shook his head in the negative, "Not that I am aware of, and I am the greatest seal master alive." Danzo backed Kurama up and put a hand on his shoulder. "Hiashi, Kurama is right. This may be inconvenient, but it will give you a chance to know your daughter." "When can I see her?" Hiashi asked. "After this dies down," Hiruzen answered forcefully. There are Kumo shinobi in the village and they are going to be watching us carefully now. Kurama, are you sure that you didn't leave any evidence behind? Kurama shrugged, everything that I left behind would be traceable to Iwa. I don't think I will believe it, but there is nothing linking it to Konoha. They had a border intrusion a day before I made the crossing. That was why I killed that Bolt squad. Hiruzen nodded, very well, we will be in full denial mode. Your clone is still active, so find a way to substitute with it and blend in. Where is Hanabi now? Hyashi asked desperately. She is safe, Kurama answered. The fewer people that know her true location the better. He is right, once again, Hyashi, Danzo said calmly. Let's get through the Chunin exams and then Kurama-kun can take you to see her, Hiruzen added and Hyashi nodded. He turned to Kurama, while I understand your actions, I think that you provoke the Raikage too much. Destroying his whole facility will put I on the warpath. In Kumo, I was indeed on the warpath. Every single one of his shinobi was scouring the country and any suspected spy was being brought into his cells. He had ordered no restrictions on torture and quite a few of the people he brought in were spies. Of course, there were a number of innocent people as well, but they were casualties of war. All I wanted was a finger to be pointed. All he wanted was a little bit of evidence to justify a war. It was only his close confidants that stopped him from storming into Konoha. He couldn't just outright accuse them of kidnapping his kunoichi. The girl was a Hyuga. Plus, according to Daru's letter, Samui was excelling at her mission. When she and B pointed out that a kid from Kurama's genes would be worth 1,000 Hyuga, he calmed down a bit. Plus, the only thing possibly linking this attack to Konoha was the Hyuga girl and the girl was blown to bits now. Konoha would have no reason to attack his facility unprovoked, and I didn't think that the old monkey had it in him. That being said, I would most definitely be upgrading the number of spies in Konoha. He needed to support Samui in her mission and keep the village under close scrutiny. That brought I to the letters exchanged with Iwa. Of course, the old fence-sitter denied having any part in this attack. He adamantly declared that he didn't even know Kumo was attacked. The cherry on top was that Onoki suggested meeting to discuss an alliance. He told I about the information his daughter and captured kunoichi returned to the village with. He said that I was right to be concerned about the Uzumaki boy and he said that he was wary of the power the boy wielded. I believed in Onoki. The old Tsuchikage had no reason to provoke him, and misdirection was the standard for shinobi. Plus, the misdirection was so deliberate that it was obviously fake. He suspected that Konoha was responsible, but there was nothing that he could do officially. No, he couldn't move right now, but he would move in time. Bolt, I roared and a Bolt officer appeared. Take this to Konoha and give it directly to Daru. Take a squad with you and give this to the Hokage. You are to observe his reactions and stay there for his response to this message. Yes, Raikage-sama, the Bolt commander responded obediently before departing with his squad. Mabui. Get Killer B, Yugito and C in my office, I shouted and heard his secretary's affirmations through the door. 10 minutes later, all three were in his office and I was glaring at them all. You three are the strongest shinobi remaining in my village. You are to speak freely and tell me what you think. He looked sad as he spoke, that little girl didn't deserve that. If you want to fight, big bro, Juki and I are with you. C nodded, I think it was Konoha but there is no proof whatsoever. The summoning scroll didn't work, and her name is grayed out, so the girl is dead. Yugito spoke softly, H was a good girl. She would have been a brilliant kunoichi. When you find out who killed her, I want you to let me know and send me on that mission, Raikage-sama. I saw a flicker of passion in Yugito's eyes and nodded, very well, Yugito. I will be sure to do so. When you are in Konoha, I want you to use your senses to search for the girl. Nothing overt, but I want a full scan. Why don't we just take the fight to the leaf, bro? B asked. I sighed and settled his chin on his clenched fists, because we gain more by working with them for now. If they didn't do this, then we stand to gain from our arrangement. If they did do this, then they will play along with us, and we will still win. The Uzumaki boy is hiding something, and I think we will see what he is hiding at the Chunin exams. So, you think Samui's mission is more important than revenge? C asked and the Raikage nodded. I agree, Raikage-sama. I don't trust them with Samui-chan, Raikage-sama, Yugito said with yet another flicker of passion. I chuckled into his fists, well, from Daru's report, Kurama is treating her well and they are getting along. Who knows? By the time we return, she could already be carrying. Is the boy not using a jutsu to protect against such things? C asked. I shook his head, not that we can tell. According to Samui, he is spilling inside her too. She seems to think that the kid is into her. Little Sammy is fine, He would be insane if he didn't think with like mind. If the little lady is having fun, then I say that we are done. For now, we sit and wait. When the time comes, I will let them feel the wrath of 8. Be wrapped, which strangely relieved those in the room. It was a real downer seeing B acting so seriously for them. I chuckled, all right. Help with the cleanup. See, I want the best censors we have as part of my entourage to the finals. I believe that the girl is dead, but I want to do some snooping while I am in Konoha. Back in Konoha, Kurama was easily able to swap out with his clone. He watched Samui train and admitted that he was beautiful. The memories of the clone were a lot to deal with, and it was yet another complicating factor. Sure, there was a game at play, but the girl didn't deserve to be hurt like that. He sighed resignedly because that would just be the reality for the time being. Care for a sparring partner? Kurama asked as he approached the 3 Kumo Jinan and their sensei. Samui raised an eyebrow and cocked her hips. What happened to I need to recover from last night? Kurama chuckled, shrugged and then stretched, which was more than enough to distract the 2 Kumo Kunoichi. He looked at Daru. I was thinking that I could take your 3 students on at once while you and I enjoyed a good kenjutsu match. Or is that cleaver just for show? How would you fight us all at once? Kaoru asked with her hands on her hips. Kurama formed the shadow clone jutsu and 3 shadow clones smirked as they approached the Kumo Jinan. Kurama remained facing Daru. What do you say? Daru sighed. You are bothersome, but I am in. Daru unslung his cleaver and the other Jinan removed their katanas from their sheaths. Kurama grinned maniacally as he gave the Kumo Jinan the bootcamp treatment. The real spar with Daru was actually quite enjoyable. There was a good reason that Daru was rated the 4th strongest shinobi of Kumaga Corps. His skills with the blade were admirable and his movements were highly efficient. Clang, wang, bang, so, you bested Momochi Zabuza? Daru asked casually while moving at full speed and countering a few of Kurama's blows. Clang, screech, whip, bang sure did, Kurama replied in a similarly casual tone. Zip, swish, clang, swish, screech, that's impressive. So, did you hear about what happened to my village? Swish, swish, clang, 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 screech. Kurama looked over the swords that were locked in tension and sparking. What happened to your village? Daru broke the lock and hopped back. He narrowed his eyes at Kurama and spoke seriously with his sword at his side. Somebody attacked us and killed quite a few people. Oh, Kurama replied blandly. When did that happen? Daru sighed because he couldn't get anything out of this stoic shinobi. A couple of days ago. So, tell me, Kurama, if you marry Samui, then would you fight alongside us? There is nothing I wouldn't do to protect my mates, Kurama answered with conviction. And is Samui your mate? Daru asked. Kurama cocked his head to the side. That is the plan, but we both know that nothing is official yet. Daru chuckled and ran a hand through his hair. So, you are just taking her for a test drive? Kurama growled at the insinuation. We both chose to embrace our reality. Unlike that damned agreement, we chose this for ourselves. Kurama blurred forward and re-engaged Daru, except he didn't hold back this time. He showed enough of his talent to make it clear to Daru that he was not Kurama's equal with the blade. That fact blew Daru's mind, but it also made him realize that he pushed it too far. In a strange way, it comforted Daru to know that Kurama actually cared about Samui. Samui watched the battle between Kurama and Daru with her peripheral vision. Her distraction cost her with a series of shallow cuts before a water whip cracked her on her shapely ass. She yelped and glared playfully at the Kurama clone. She was surprised to realize that she was struggling to land a single blow on a mere clone. What was that for? She hissed while rubbing her backside. Kurama smirked. My future mate will not be weak. Focus on our fight. Your mate? Samui asked saucily. Kurama's clone shrugged. I don't just hop into bed with anyone, Sammy. So, is my your mate? Yes, the Kurama clone answered honestly. And you will be too once the treaty is signed, should you choose to be. Samui's eyes shimmered with a mixture of delight and remorse. Of course, Kurama felt the mixed emotions, but he didn't say anything about it. He just lunged forward and re-engaged the fight. If he developed this relationship, and she accepted the mating mark, then she would never betray him. Not even for her home village. That thought actually seemed appealing to Kurama, but he would need a lot more from the kunoichi before he offered her that. Holy, pant, shit, pant, you are evil, Kaoru said with her back on the ground. Amoe nodded tiredly. Now I see why the Konoha Jinan are so strong. Samui giggled as she sat down next to her 2 friends. Yup. This is the secret to their strength. Kurama-kun repeatedly tries to kill them and they somehow manage to survive. Kurama's clone chuckled and tossed them each a bottle with an energy drink in it. They all sipped on it contentedly as Kurama spoke. "Look, you three, I will train you if that is what you want. We have just under 3 weeks and I want my potential fiancé to shine." "Potential fiancé? I thought that was pretty much locked in," Karu countered in defense of her friend. "It is," Daru said while approaching the group stiffly and leaking blood from a series of shallow cuts. "But you will all realize how fickle these things can be. Until it is official, nothing is official." Samui seemed sad at that thought. "Then what would happen if it falls through? Kurama-kun and I have gotten close." "That is one way of saying that he screwed your brains out," Karu quipped before she yelped as a water whip cracked into her thigh. She glared up at Kurama. "What the bloody hell was that for?" Kurama smirked at her. "You will watch your mouth in his presence, or I will remind you to do so. Or do you need another taste of the whip?" Karu rubbed out her thigh and shook her head before muttering, "He trains us once and thinks he is our sensei." Kurama laughed heartily. "Trust me, Karu-chan, it is far more preferable than the way I was trained. Plus, I didn't have all that cushion to take the blow. When whips cracked into my back, I was still a scrawny, malnourished kid." "Why?" Amoe asked and everyone went silent. "I mean, I know you're the Jinchuriki, but why did you have to go through that?" Kurama sighed and took a seat after dispelling his clones. He looked at the group seriously. "How does Kumo treat their Jinchuriki?" "Killer B is our hero and Yugito-sensei is super strong," Samui answered passionately. Kurama nodded sadly. He knew that these kids knew nothing about the seals on Yugito, but he could feel the guilt in Daru. He looked up and let the pain shimmer in his eyes. "It wasn't like that for me." After listening to a very abbreviated and censored version of Kurama's story, the whole Kumo group was shocked. Samui had heard some of it, but even she didn't know most of what Kurama shared. Daru was frowning as he rested his chin on his hand. He looked at Kurama with a deliberate focus in his eyes. "Why would you go through all that for a village that hated you?" Kurama shrugged. "Where else would I go? What else could I have done as a kid? Getting beaten in training was far preferable to my treatment before that." Daru frowned but nodded his agreement. "Then why wouldn't you want to come to Kumo?" Kurama shook his head. "I understand where you are coming from, Daru, but I won't betray my village. I came up from nothing and I built a life and family for myself here. I made myself into someone and something that could never be abused again." That's pretty cool," Samui said softly. Amoe nodded his head. "Even when things were tough, I knew that they could always be worse. Now I know that I was right. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Kurama-sensei. I look forward to your training." Mates, a couple days later, Kurama left a wood clone with the Kumo group and snuck off for some quality time with his mates. He also created a wood clone and sent it to spend time with Hanabi, who was enjoying her recovery at a seaside cottage that Danzo arranged. She was being watched by Mai, who Kurama introduced her to on the first night they arrived. Since Mai was a medic, she also helped tend to Hanabi's treatment and recovery, so it was a good matchup and they seemed to get along. Tonight was about the women of Konoha though, and Kurama intended to give them his full attention. He borrowed Mikoto's kitchen, cooked dinner, set the mood with candles and had their favorite flowers laid out. He also prepared an oil massage and had the whole night arranged. It was convenient that Sasuke was out training with Kakashi, so they had the house to themselves. Kurama sent a clone out to the hot springs to collect the women. That was how he started the night. He arranged a VIP package at Konoha's best hot spring and gave it to his women. By the time they arrived at Mikoto's house, all three were in fantastic moods. When they opened the door and heard romantic music playing, saw the candles lit and smelled the delicious dinner, all three women were smiling broadly. "Damn, Rama is pulling out all the stops tonight," Sume said with a grin. Hana giggled, "I am so lucky. I get to skip all of the boyish disappointments and find my mate early in life." "Oi! Up! You calling your mom old? I will have you know that I squeezed you out when I was 15. Sume protested playfully before snuggling her pup into her bust. "So that would make you," Hana said playfully before Mikoto swatted her on the head. "That would make it unwise to break the taboo, Hana-chan. Let's just enjoy the night," she said with a smile before looking around and spotting the massage tables. She giggled in a girly fashion and continued to follow the rose petals into the dining room. "Welcome, ladies," one of Kurama's clones in a formal yukata said. "Please have a seat and dinner will be served shortly." "Thank you, Clone-kun," Mikoto replied before taking her seat. Shortly after, 4 clones and Kurama himself appeared carrying the opening course. The girls enjoyed a nice chicken Caesar salad while sipping on some wine. They listened to Kurama share the story of Hanabi's rescue and they listened to his plan for the Kumo team. The women didn't like that plan, but they agreed after hearing him out. They also got another concession out of Kurama. Clones would individually train all of the rookies for the rest of the month to prepare them for the impending invasion. "So, Raka-kun, this girl thinks that you're smitten? Hana asked shyly. Isn't that kind of mean? I mean, you said that she was sexually abused. Tsume reached over and grabbed Hana's hand softly. That is just the reality of the shinobi world, pup. Think of all the good Rama-kun did with this. He saved our lost Hyuga, dealt a blow to Kumo, and all he must do is treat Samui with a bit of love and affection. Kurama nodded. I am not mistreating her. In fact, my clones are spoiling her a bit. He held his hands up defensively and gestured around at the dinner on the table. Not half as much as I am spoiling you, though. Mikoto's tension laxed and she picked up her glass of wine. She raised it and spoke in a sultry voice, well then, here's to being spoiled. Amen. Cheers, Kurama chuckled as he clinked his glasses with the three beautiful kunoichi. He treated them to a creme brulee for dessert before taking them to the massage tables. The kunoichi stripped eagerly and enjoyed a full-body, two-sided oil massage from the Kuramas. The frontal massage got them all revved up, and then Kurama took each kunoichi into a separate room to treat them to a night that they would never forget. Tsume was taken into Itachi's room that was equipped with soundproof seals. Kurama dominated her thoroughly and made her howl. He took her ass and made Tsume squeal in delight while she submitted to her alpha. She crumpled onto Itachi's bed with trickles from 2 holes and a contented grin on her 3rd hole. Hana was taken into Sasuke's room, which was also equipped with privacy seals, and the room was decorated in drapes. Kurama had changed the bed sheets to satin covers and there were pink handcuffs on each corner of the bed. Hana was locked into position where Kurama made her endure a round of sensual foreplay. When Kurama collared her, ball-gagged her, bound her hands to the bedpost and flipped her over, Hana was already approaching cloud 9. The many sessions that filled Hana up left her face down and ass up with the biggest smile on her face. Mikoto always loved making love. She liked it slow and sensual with a lot of intimate touching and eye contact. She was more than warmed up by the time they got to her room, so Kurama just slid right in and set to work. He didn't stop working until his Miko-chan's eyes rolled into the back of her head. Even then, he cuddled up next to her and let her feel his love and appreciation for her. She pulled his arms into her and enjoyed the pleasant hum of the mating mark as her mate spooned her. Kurama enjoyed a solid night's sleep, and he applauded himself for his performance last night. He managed to go around with each of his mates without them even realizing the clone shuffle. It was the least that he could do for them, and it wasn't that difficult to manage. So, with a pleased grin, Kurama slid out of bed and hopped in the shower to get ready for the day. Kurama-sensei, Hiruzen watched through his crystal ball as Kurama joined each of the Jinan for morning workouts. The shadow clone jutsu was truly a marvelous thing, and it enabled Kurama to achieve the impossible every day. He switched the crystal ball from Hinata Hyuga to Shino Aburame. He watched as Kurama addressed the boy's specific needs in a way that nobody had thought of before. He saw Kurama using a jar with seals on it to create and maintain a habitat. Hiruzen leaned into the crystal ball and manipulated it to get a better look. Unfortunately, his telescopic jutsu had its limitations, so he wasn't able to understand exactly what was at work. Despite that, the possibilities presented by carrying a sealed environment caught Hiruzen's attention, and he made a note to follow up on it later. With a frustrated grunt, Kurama switched the view again to see another Kurama clone blurring in high-speed taijutsu with Rock Lee. The so-called dead last was truly frightening when Hiruzen thought about it. Especially now that Kurama was giving him lethality. Speed, punches and kicks were great, but they lacked that killing factor. That was what Kurama focused on, and Hiruzen saw the exuberant youth pull out a pair of bladed tonfa. Sparks showered at random intervals all over the training ground for a solid 5 minutes before the two stilled. Then Hiruzen was surprised to see the youthful boy sink into a meditative posture. 10 minutes later, the boy was up and fighting against Kurama again. Hiruzen watched, completely transfixed, as they alternated back and forth. He understood the meaning of the lesson. Meditation couldn't always be done in ideal conditions. This training would give the boy the ability to calm his mind in combat, and that alone would give him focus. The real Kurama approached Kakashi and Sasuke, who was clutching his right wrist. Kurama watched as electricity sparked to life and surrounded Sasuke's hand. He saw the strain it put on Sasuke even as the chirping of birds filled his ears. It was the downside of an overloaded lightning jutsu, and it made it impractical for use in stealthy combat. Despite that, it was an effective technique in head-to-head combat, and Kurama thought it was worth nurturing. Kurama watched Sasuke dash, and she saw Sasuke lunge forward with his fist crackling with lightning. Kurama appeared 5 meters in front of Sasuke, and he enjoyed the look of panic in the young man's eyes. Sasuke was unable to control or alter his path, so his fist made contact with Kurama before he was able to cancel the lightning on it. His eyes widened at the thought that he had hurt Kurama, and two tomoe spun wildly in his eyes. You need to work on your reaction time, Kurama said calmly while holding Sasuke's wrist. Sasuke blinked a couple of times and cancelled the chakra that he was channeling to his forearm. The lightning faded and Sasuke looked at Kurama in disbelief. How did he just catch his most powerful jutsu like it was nothing special? Kurama-sensei? Kurama chuckled and ruffled Sasuke's hair. In addition to Kakashi, I thought that I could help train you for the month. You still have one tomoe in each eye to go and I have a plan to help you there. Sasuke got a gleam in his eye and nodded excitedly. What plan? Kurama shook his head. You will see, Janan. For now, meditate and recover your chakra. The Chidori is too draining for you to rely on it in combat. You will eat lunch, meditate and get ready for an intense afternoon. Hi, Kurama-sensei. Kakashi walked up to Kurama and stopped next to him. He looked at his sensei's son out the side of his eye. So, how'd it go? Better than planned, Kurama answered vaguely. What have you done with him so far? Kakashi handed over the training schedule that explained Sasuke's first week of training. Kurama nodded for a bit before shaking his head. I wouldn't focus too much on the Chidori. Focus on expanding his chakra pathways. Have him hold the power in his hand for as long as he can. Get him to do it with both hands and give him the level 2 lightning control exercise. Show it to him with his Sharingan activated only once, give him some clues and have him figure it out himself. Why hold the jutsu in his hand? Kakashi asked, genuinely interested in understanding Kurama's thought process. Kurama sighed, it amazes me how many senior shinobi lack the basic understanding of chakra and how it works in our bodies. Tell me, Kakashi, when you are doing push-ups, do you always just go as fast as you can? Yes, Kakashi answered in confusion. So, you don't pause and feel the burn, you don't alter your rhythm to gain better control over your body? No, not really. What does this have to do with chakra though? The tenketsu are like muscles. You flex them, work them out, test them, push their limits and break them so they heal stronger. Most of the time the strength comes in the form of growth, which means that each tenketsu can handle more chakra at one time. You know this instinctively, but you don't adapt your exercises to train a child from the ground up. That is why I am disappointed, Kakashi. Kakashi nodded and closed his lone visible eye to focus his thoughts. That is a different approach. Even Minato-sensei just had me repeat my jutsu or do chakra control exercises. Kurama nodded, but when you just repeatedly do the same jutsu, the tenketsu just stretches minutely to repeat the same old action. Change the way you interact with chakra, and you will expand the possibilities of chakra. Sasuke had stopped eating to give his complete focus to Kurama. The way he saw chakra was just so much more intricate than anyone else he had ever known. Can you teach me to do that? Kurama laughed before a water whip formed in his hand. I gave you an order, Janan Uchiha. He lashed out with the whip that cracked on Sasuke's thigh. But that is why I am here. We will train for the next 2 weeks before you return to the village for some rest. Sasuke nodded excitedly with a controlled smile on his face. Hi, Kurama-sensei. Neji regained his footing after using his clan's jutsu for the last 20 seconds. His equilibrium was off, and he was struggling to regain his footing. The damned kaiden, also known as 8 trigrams, palms revolving heaven, was a demanding technique. It was normally not taught to branch members of the Hyuga family, but Kurama-sensei had gone and done the impossible again. So, for the past week, Neji had committed himself to mastering the technique. Neji, what are you focusing on when you are spinning? Kurama asked as he approached the unsteady boy. Neji put his hands on his knees and spit on the ground to deal with the nausea. I don't have to focus on anything, Kurama-sensei. The Byakugan sees all. Kurama formed a water whip and cracked it on the ground, which made Neji stand to attention. Care to revise your statement, Janan Hyuga? Neji flinched and nodded. What should I be focusing on, Kurama-sensei? Kurama smiled. Better. To-san, Hinata whispered from the sidelines of the Hyuga training ground. Kurama-sensei is scary. Hyashi nodded stoically with his hands folded into his sleeves. Indeed, but his words are wise. You should listen to him. Hi, To-san, Hinata said with a bow before she ran to join Neji. Hyashi watched from the sidelines along with the Hyuga elders. Each of them was skeptical of Kurama a week ago when he showed up on the compound. That being said, their skepticism was tamed by Kurama's insights over the week. The training methods he employed were completely different than the traditional Hyuga approach. As he watched the two spar against Kurama, he thought about the meeting with his long-lost daughter. Kurama had visited his compound at night and used a couple Hiraishin jumps to take him to a cottage that was settled on the edge of the elemental ocean. He was disoriented from the trip, but his excitement had helped to clear his mind. Nothing could have prepared him for what happened next though. His daughter, his darling Hanabi-chan, ran out of the house with an excited look on her face. She ran straight towards the two and Hiyashi opened his arms to greet his little girl. It didn't matter that she looked like a young woman. That was his baby girl, and he hadn't seen her in almost 11 years. So, when Hanabi jumped excitedly into Kurama's arms, Hiyashi's heart shattered into little bits. He watched his daughter snuggle into Kurama's chest and he saw something weird. Kurama's eyes were blue and slitted as he returned the hug. That didn't seem right to him, but it wasn't important now. What was important was that he was going to juken this boy to death to protect his daughter's innocence. Naruto felt Hiyashi's emotions and set Hanabi down. He relinquished control to Kurama and Kurama looked at her with a soft smile. "It is good to see you again, Hanabi-chan. As promised, I brought someone new for you to meet." Hanabi just seemed to process the presence of the second man standing next to Kurama. "So, this guy is my dad?" Kurama nodded and replied softly, "Yes, this is your father, Hyuga Hiyashi. He has been waiting to meet you for a long time." Hanabi looked dubiously at the man and scanned him up and down. She took a slight step back before a hand from Kurama guided her forward into Hiyashi's arms. She hugged him awkwardly, which is to say that Hiyashi hugged her, and she stood there. After an awkward minute, Hiyashi let her go and looked at her again. The tears falling from his eyes were genuine, as was the tortured smile on his face. "I am sorry, Hanabi-chan," Hiyashi said repentantly with a choked voice. Hanabi looked at Kurama with a look of confusion on her face. Despite Kurama's intervention and memories, she felt no real bonds to this man. She saw Kurama's imploring look and stepped forward to comfort her father. She patted him on the shoulder and guided him into the cottage that she was staying in. Kurama made himself scarce and sat on the beach with Mai to give the father and daughter a chance to reunite. Hiyashi appreciated the gesture and took some time to get to know his daughter. She was standoffish, cautious, mistrusting and cold overall, but his baby girl was finally free from Kumo. So, he spent the night breaking through the many walls and icy layers of his estranged daughter. 8 trigrams, palms revolving heaven. His daughter's voice snapped him out of his memories. Hiyashi watched, as did the elders, as a thin blue dome encompassed his daughter's form. She spun gracefully, but the chitin looked different. There were waves in the dome and Hinata's hands were flowing gracefully. Hiyashi wasn't the only one to notice if the mutterings of the elders were taken into consideration. "How dare that brat change our clan's jutsu? This shouldn't be allowed. This is sacrilege." Kurama stopped Hinata and turned to face down the elders that were watching. He walked forward calmly and tucked his arms behind him. He looked to Hiyashi, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. He then faced the elders and let his chakra loose, which was combined with some from Naruto. It was a powerful display that sent dust flying and ruffled the robes of the elders. "You all are so fixed on your tradition that your eyes fail to see the world around you," Kurama began with a forcibly calm tone. "Your eyes are amazing tools, but they are not all that you are. I fail to see the need to limit yourself in your clan jutsu. I fail to comprehend why you would force a style based on earth affinity onto those with different affinities. I detest the fact that the enemies of Konoha know of your weaknesses and you choose to do nothing about it. All in the name of tradition. The Hyuga have no weakness. Our eyes see all and our taijutsu style is supreme." An elder named Otaru shouted. Kurama gestured to the sparring area. "Care to prove your words, Elder Otaru? I will be your opponent." The Hyuga pride made it impossible for Otaru to back down. He was a Hyuga elder, after all. He could destroy any child in straight-up combat. "Very well," he growled in acceptance of Kurama's challenge. Kurama turned calmly to Hinata and Neji. "Go and stand with your father. Hinata, I want you to watch how I use the style I'm showing you." Hinata knew better than to question Kurama by now. She bowed formally and went to the side with Neji. She watched Kurama sink into the Juho stance, as he called it. It was very similar to the Juken, but it was much more graceful and fluid. Even the opening stance was much more relaxed than the fixed and rigid posture of Otaru. Kurama's stance also inspired outrage from the Hyuga clan. Hiyashi squashed it by saying that Kurama had his permission to learn this variant of the Juken and he had sworn not to share the clan's secrets. It didn't erase the dissension entirely, but it quieted the grumbling. Thus, all elders of the Hyuga clan watched the demon brat square off against one of their own. Otaru dashed forward in a straight line and his palms were already blurring as he launched one chakra-loaded attack after another to attack Kurama. Kurama swayed, danced and spun around Otaru while blocking each strike by hitting the back of the hand or wrist, which would divert the blow. He managed to keep this up for 4 minutes before he was forced to deal with the 64 palms attack. Hinata's eyes widened as Kurama spread his base stance and crashed into Otaru's 64 palms with equal and opposite intensity. Kurama's hands blurred and it was clear to Hinata, who could see the symbol of the 8 trigoms below him, that he was using an official, high-level Hyuga technique. He matched the elder blow for blow and the double palm thrust at the end caused both combatants to crash their palms into one another. The explosion of chakra flung Otaru back and he rolled on the ground. Kurama remained fixed in his position with both of his palms extended. He let out a deep breath and rose to his full height calmly. He walked towards Otaru and cocked an arm to prepare for the finishing blow. Otaru was still recovering, so he was unable to defend himself. Yet, the final blow never came. "Do you wish to admit defeat?" Kurama asked with his arm poised. Otaru was on all fours and there was defiance in his eyes. He spun up and into a kaiten, which was countered simply by Kurama forming a Rasengan and countering the spinning attack of the Hyuga. He outlasted Otaru and held the spinning ball of chakra at Otaru's head level. The elder looked defeated now and he admitted defeat. Kurama absorbed the Rasengan before turning to face the elder council once more. "I assume that I have your permission to continue training my Jinan?" Hyashi nodded and spoke for the council. "Of course, Kurama-san. You may continue your instruction. We look forward to seeing the results during the finals." 3 days before Chunin exam finals, I approached the front gates of Konoha and suppressed the growl that was rumbling lowly in his throat. He was still extremely enraged by the attack on Kumagakure. Iwa denied it outright, Suna was oblivious and irrelevant, Kiri was in its own civil war and the minor villages didn't have the shinobi to complete such an attack. The investigation showed that the shinobis that attacked his village were highly skilled, and they were supremely effective infiltration specialists. I knew in his gut that it was Konoha, and he knew that there was very little he could do about it. It was a tough, massive, bitter pill to swallow and the Raikage didn't appreciate having to do so. I grunted at his bolt officer and watched the bolt squad disappear to announce him to the gate guards. He looked to his left and saw Yugito with a fixed look of concentration on her face. "Are you ready for this, Yugito?" Yugito nodded, "Yes, Raikage-sama." I grunted to finish the short exchange and thought about his plans. If Samui was pregnant and the samples she collected checked out, then Yugito would get the order to kill the boy if possible. If Samui wasn't carrying yet, then Yugito would be told to win without killing the brat. After all, when Yugito won, the brat would be helping his village, and his follow-on plans could start. He checked in at the front gate and went to visit Hiruzen. Today was the day that he was going to sign the agreement. He swallowed the bile that rose into his throat at the thought of allying with Konoha. It is all for the mission and the good of Kumo. Hiruzen waited in his office with Kurama, Samui, Daru, and Danzo. He had watched Kurama over the month and was extremely pleased with the progress the rookie class of Jinan was showing. Each of the sensei had provided reports and every one of them was grateful for Kurama's support. Even Kakashi went out of his way to praise Kurama and informed the Hokage that he had increased the power of his jutsu just by training with him. Increased combat strength was a good thing and Hiruzen could appreciate that about the boy. Sure, he may not be under his direct control, but Konoha would prosper under his reign. Hiruzen could accept that, even if Jiraiya was off pouting. So, Hiruzen prepared himself to welcome the Raikage back to Konoha. He would need to keep his mask firmly in place for this meeting. I entered Hiruzen's office without knocking and immediately looked at Samui, who was standing close to the boy. That was good, he wanted her to get him under her control. According to Daru's reports, the two were going at it like bunny rabbits over the past month. And hopefully that yielded some results. He looked to Daru, who shook his head slightly in the negative. Well, it was too bad that seed hadn't taken yet, but there was nothing he could do about it. "Good afternoon, Hokage Dono," I grunted out a greeting with his arms crossed over his chest. Hiruzen rose and offered a hand. "Good afternoon, Raikage Dono. Welcome back to my village." I shook the hand and then dropped the pretenses. "Hokage, I want to get down to business. The attack on my village and the trip here have left me in a foul mood." Yes, Hiruzen said before taking his seat and gesturing to a chair in front of his desk. "I heard about that dreadful business. To think that someone would attack one of the Great Five." I grunted, "Yes, well, rest assured that I will find those responsible and they will pray for the sweet release of the Shinigami by the time I am done with them." "Naturally," Hiruzen said before he pushed a scroll to I. "This is the agreement for marriage between our shinobi. The terms are laid out clearly and it was ratified by my council before I signed it. All that needs to be done is to add your signature." I nodded and scanned the document. "I will take this back to the hotel and look over it tonight." "Actually, Raikage Dono," Kurama said while stepping forward. "I have worked hard to prepare lodgings for you. I wish to welcome you into the home of my father for the duration of our stay." I have also prepared guest quarters that could fit your entourage. I looked at Kurama. Why go so far, Kurama-san? Kurama shrugged and offered a cheeky smile. From what I heard, you took over the role of Samui's father after you castrated and beheaded that piece of shit. I saw Samui blush and look down in shame while Kurama stood protectively in front of her. Was his plan actually working that well? Sure, Samui was a fine kunoichi and a drop-dead gorgeous woman. Who was he to look a gift horse in the mouth? I nodded. That is generous, and I accept. It will be better than stuffing into some fancy hotel. Kurama bowed and stepped back. It is my honor, Reikage Dono. I turned his attention back to Hiruzen. So, the exhibition match will be held at the intermission after the first round. Samui's fighting second. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed? Hiruzen chuckled in his signature, grandfatherly way. No, not right now. Please get some rest and let us know if you need anything. Kurama will escort you to his home and I shall see you for the finals. I grunted and looked to Kurama, who led the way out of the Hokage's office while holding Samui's hand. Those two look like they have grown really close. Humph. Go figure. Oh well, at least he would get to see the home of the last man he respected. If this boy was half the man Namikaze Minato was, then it would pay to have him in his good graces. After they left, Hiruzen turned to Danzo and raised a privacy barrier. Is he really that close to the girl? Danzo chuckled. Oh, they are intimate, but his mind is clear. What's the latest on the Reikage? He has had talks with Iwagakure, and they are not adversarial. I would say that I has cleared them of suspicion. It is likely that he suspects us, but he has no proof. The asset is being guarded carefully, and they will not find her. Kurama has seen to that. And what of Kurama's relationship with Hanabi? Danzo actually sighed at this. He was grateful that Naruto bonded with the girl to break the seal, but he would have preferred another option. It is developing. My operative reports that they are close, and she is coming around. The girl is committed to her studies, and we have managed to wean her off of the drug treatments that she was subjugated to. What have our medical teams decided about those treatments? They are not recommended. They speed up the body's natural growth, but that comes at a price. It shortens the body's lifespan, and they predict that prolonged use would be cancerous. Danzo replied simply. Hiruzen rubbed his temples. And the other data Kurama collected? I don't think that you truly want to know, Hiruzen, Danzo replied with a disgruntled edge to his normally neutral tone. That bad? Orochimaru level kind of bad, Danzo answered. Hiruzen sighed wearily and grabbed his pipe. He took a long puff on his pipe and let it out slowly. That is not good. Part of me is glad that Kurama destroyed that facility. I would have punished him if he didn't, Danzo countered. Sure, it created a storm, but it also prevented many tragedies on its own. What have you heard about Orochimaru and Tsunagakure? Jiraiya reported that they were both mobilizing, but he didn't know why. Hiruzen asked with his eyes in the analytical mode. Danzo nodded. Indeed, they are both active. Our borders are secure, and we have increased the patrols on the border of River Country and Rice Country. No reports have come from those outposts. Hiruzen waved Danzo out. With the fire daimyo coming tomorrow, I need to chip away at this demon. The stupid, insipid, self-replicating demon, Danzo chuckled and said, have you ever thought about using shadow clones to handle the extra paperwork? Danzo laughed his way out of the door as Hiruzen beat his head on his desk. It was the final gift he planned on giving his old rival. There were only a few days left for the old monkey to live, so Danzo could throw him that bone. Plus, it was a great way to spurn the old monkey, and Danzo would remember that self-deprecating look on Hiruzen's face for the rest of his life. At the Uzumaki Namikaze compound, I let out a low whistle in appreciation. He let Kurama show him around the house, to his room, then he went and saw the backyard, jacuzzi and training grounds. He saw seals everywhere and couldn't begin to fathom what they did. He simply enjoyed the home and even offered his respects to the picture of Minato and Kushina on their wedding day. So, Kurama, Samui told me about this girl named Mai. She said that she was one of your mates. Interesting word, mates. Why do you call them that? I asked before lounging in a chair on the porch. Kurama set a glass of lemonade down for the Reikage and then took his own seat. Blame it on the fox's influence. I nodded. Any other mates you feel like sharing with us? Kurama shrugged. Sign that little document and maybe I would be more willing to share. For now, Reikage Dono, I must confess that I still see you as foreign shinobi. I grunted but waved Kurama off. I get it. I will review this damnable agreement. So, I heard that you and Samui are getting along quite well. Kurama nodded. She is a wonderful young woman. I leaned in. So, why are you stopping Seed from taking? Kurama answered, eyes stared dispassionately, because the agreement has yet to be formalized. I am a seal master. I simply wanted to make her feel welcome and begin our relationship. I sat back in his chair and grunted, very well. Can't blame a cage for trying. Kurama flared his chakra to get eyes full attention. Of course, this grabbed the attention of the rest of the Kumo shinobi as well. Kurama let Naruto's chakra into his eyes, and he growled, I want to make something very clear, Reikage. Any kits I have, any blessing that forms from the bond between me and Samui-chan, they are mine. Not Konoha's, not Kumo's and not anyone else's. They are mine and anyone that touches them will deal with me. I was a strong man that could respect other strong men. Rather than get insulted, I grinned at Kurama. Sounds like you are mighty protective of your family. I can respect that. Kurama sucked the chakra back in and muted the link that was filled with the shouts of Kushina. He nodded stiffly at indeed I am. The Uzumaki had a saying, or rather, a way of life. Do you know what that was? I shook his head, I can't say that I do. I was still a babe when the island was sunk. Family above all, always and forever, Kurama said firmly. Make no mistake, Reikage, as soon as that agreement is signed, Samui is mine. Then what is Kumo to you? I asked while leaning forward again. Kurama grinned, the homeland of my mate. Should this agreement develop into more, or maybe even if it doesn't, I would protect her home. There are still many people that Samui-chan cares for in Kumo, after all. I let a toothy smile spread upon his face. Sure, he suffered a great loss, but if he had a stud like this, then it would definitely benefit Kumo. In time, he could find a way to ensure this powerful young man's allegiance. I raised his glass to Kurama, who answered the toast. To family and alliances. Kurama nodded and clinked the glass, to family and alliances. Later that night, I pulled Samui aside. He looked down at the girl and let a little bit of care show on his face. Are you happy with him or do I need to remove him from the equation? Samui blushed and broke eye contact. He treats me very well, Reikage-sama. I am happy. I ruffled her hair. Good, then I will sign this stupid agreement. For now, forget about your orders. Stay close to him and try to tell him about Kumo. Get him to visit, if you can. We will need him on our side. Samui dipped her head. Hi, Reikage-sama. I clapped her proudly on the shoulder. I know this might be a mission, but I am happy for you, Samui-chan. Samui hugged the Reikage, the man that saved her from the abusive demon that haunts her past. She genuinely appreciated this massive man, despite his many faults. Thank you, I won't let you down. I chuckled and ruffled her hair again and teased her a bit. I am sure you will enjoy doing that. The only thing I ask is that you figure out what is stopping the pregnancy. Earn his trust and love because only a child can secure a true treaty between our villages. Samui nodded and went to rejoin Kurama. I went to his room and called Daru, C and Yugito to his side to review the treaty. The document was pretty straightforward and only summarized the agreement struck. The willingness of Konoha to enter this agreement made all parties nervous. I was nervous because the boy was undoubtedly powerful, even though Yugito losing wouldn't be a deal breaker. It would still be a setback. Reikage-sama, I don't mean to disrespect Yugito, but I am certain that Kurama is hiding his true strength. Even the strength that he is willing to show is exceptional, Daru said while they were talking about the impending fight. Explain, I said. Daru nodded. He creates shadow clones every day. He uses them to offer one-on-one training with the genin of his age group. The way he understands chakra is on a deeper level than any expert I have seen before. He was able to casually observe my storm style, and he offered training tips to help me improve it. And they worked? I asked while leaning forward in his chair and resting his elbows on his knees. They worked very well. Given a couple of months or a year, I could probably double my jutsu's potency. I could also use it quicker and faster. Daru answered earnestly. C shook his head. How is that possible? He is just a kid. I held his hand up to stop C. He is not just a kid. He is the child of the two strongest shinobi I ever fought against. If he had access to their knowledge and someone like Danzo to train him, then it would be foolish to consider him a child. If these clones are sentient, then does he use them to train? Daru nodded. That is what I have observed. They don't last long, but he uses them to train, and he leaves them to do random tasks. I believe that he is able to retain the memories of the clones, Reikage-sama. Eyes widened. You mean? No way. Daru nodded. It is the only logical conclusion. I don't see anyone else using them like he does, so it is likely something unique to him. We will have Samui look into this, I said while nodding to himself. He turned to Yugito. Don't hold back. Make him show all of his secrets. Yugito dipped her head in submission. Hi, Reikage-sama. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.